The action took place in one of the luxurious mansions of the Yunlu district in the city of Donghai. Elder Fang explained to those present that, from the point of view of Chinese medicine, little sister cannot wake up due to the virus. The old man was furious when Hu Ji, a follower of Western medicine, called his methods pseudoscientific quackery and suggested sending his sister to his hospital for examination. Chairman of the board of directors of Ding Sheng Group Yang Ding, frowning, looked at the doctors and wondered why they were arguing for so long and could not come to a common conclusion. The heated argument between two doctors was interrupted when a guy in black trousers and white sneakers entered the room. Without knocking, the guy walked into the room and unceremoniously asked if Yang Ding was here. The stranger raised his hand to introduce himself, but everyone immediately shouted asking who he was and how he got here. Yang Lin began to loudly complain to the guards, saying that they didn't know what they were doing because they allowed a stranger to get here. The guy interrupted the chairman, saying that he was far from an outsider and introduced himself as Fung Liu, adding that he could also be called handsome brother. The man looked to the side, squinted and thought, because he had already heard the name Liu Feng somewhere before. Yang Lin remembered how he knew this guy, so he loudly ordered the guards to stop and not attack the stranger. However, the stocky guards in dark glasses no longer heard the boss's words and ran at the guy with their fists, shouting that now he would know how to get into other people's houses. Fung Liu put his hand in front of him, and two sharp spikes appeared from his glove. He threatened the guards to teach them a lesson for being rude towards the guests. The guy began to move deftly around the room, dodging blows from men in black business suits. The young man left his opponents behind and closed his eyes, and they wondered why they suddenly lost the ability to move. Yang Ling sighed heavily and covered his face with his hand, repeating the order to the guards to stop the fight. Plopping down on the sofa, the guy reassured Lin, saying that he just decided to warm up, and then added that he simply sealed the guards' acupuncture points. The chairman showed respect to the guest and introduced himself, asking if the guy was invited here by Senior Liu Jinglong. Feng replied that the old man had called him and said that he had heard that his help was required because of a strange illness of some girl. The guy immediately got up from the couch and proudly declared that he was the best at both killing people and treating people, and saying to take him to the patient right away. Elder Fang tried to stop them, shouting that his sister was now in a very serious condition and could not be entrusted to some child. Hu Ji immediately supported the old man, with whom he had recently argued so heatedly, asking what they would do if the younger sister's condition worsened. Crossing his arms over his chest, Liu Feng confidently declared that he would save even someone who is on his last legs, and accused the doctors of narrow-mindedness. The boy's words greatly angered the specialists, and the grandfather began to shout at Feng so that he would not consider himself the smartest. But the old man immediately fell silent when Liu asked him if he could correct acupuncture points. The guy cheered up because the man didn't know the answer to his question and said that this showed that the boy's skills were much better. Closing his eyes, Liu Feng waved his hands and released sharp long needles from them, which scattered in space. Old man Fang was amazed and could not believe his eyes because he saw in front of him 8-inch divine needles, which were considered long lost. Hu Ji turned to the elderly man and asked him what kind of needles these were, because the doctor did not understand traditional Chinese medicine. Fang turned to the doctor of Western medicine and began his story about what kind of divine needles Liu Feng released. According to the old man, 1-inch and 2-inch needles are usually used for acupuncture, and the better the skill of the practitioner, the larger the needle he can use. He added that the 8-inch needles are consistent with soul-searching needles and are believed to have been lost long ago. The doctor ended his story by saying that Liu Feng cannot be an ordinary person if he has the ability to use such long needles. Meanwhile, Liu was diagnosing the patient and quickly came to the conclusion that she was poisoned with sleeping poison for 9 days, which ordinary doctors cannot remove from the body. The guy stood by the bed of a girl with pink hair who was lying there unconscious and with a long needle pressed on the necessary acupuncture points. The young man inserted an 8-inch needle into a point near the patient's ear and then took another one, continuing the acupuncture procedure. The doctor, who is committed to Western medicine, was concerned and believed that the guy wanted to harm the girl with such actions. Fang accused the man of not understanding anything and began referring to traditional Chinese medicine textbooks that described the guy's actions. The protagonist's eyes lit up with a yellow light as he mentally read a spell to extend life and seal death. Wiping the sweat from his tired face, Liu Feng told the patient's father that he had stabilized her condition and now they needed to discuss some details. The hero began to explain that Yang Ding's daughter was poisoned with a dangerous sleeping poison for 9 days, in which every day the patient becomes worse and worse, and at night he plunges into unconsciousness. Chairman Yang Ding was extremely worried and excited, because he understood that today was already the 8th day since the girl's illness began. The healer tried to calm the man by sealing the girl's vital points, stabilizing her condition, but further treatment would bring discomfort to the girl. Ian began shouting that it didn't matter how the treatment was carried out, because the main thing was that his girl recovered. Liu Feng understood everything and turned to the patient again, grabbing another 8-inch needle with his hand to continue treating the girl. Adjusting his glasses, Old Man Feng, extremely interested in what was happening, shouted that he must definitely see what techniques this guy has. The young man looked at his patient with enthusiasm and announced to everyone present in the room that he was starting treatment. Meanwhile, the pink-haired girl was sleeping peacefully in her bed and was completely unconscious as her body was pierced with needles. Hu Ji got angry and hurried the boy when he stopped and thoughtfully said that his sister had large breasts, which would sway during treatment, and he might accidentally make a mistake. Finally, the main character began to heal the patient, sharply waved his palm and made a loud sound, preparing to strike in the right place. Liu Feng hit the girl's chest with his palm as hard as he could, and then raised his right hand to strike again. Hu Ji thought the guy was a real madman because he thought that the guy stopped using needles to publicly try to touch the patient's chest. Continuing the treatment process, Liu Feng had vulgar thoughts in his head, but he immediately stopped himself and took the needle in his hands. Through the fabric, he inserted an 8-inch acupuncture needle into the girl's chest, which was needed to treat her. Fang was simply delighted, because the hero managed to pass the needle through Sister Yang's heart muscle in an instant and even out the pulse. At this moment, the patient began to show signs of life. She was still sleeping, but those around her heard the girl snoring. Liu Feng was sweating from fatigue, and after completing the procedure, he exhaled loudly, wiping the sweat from his face with his fist. He turned to the girl's father and asked him to order the maids to prepare clean clothes for the patient because she would soon need them. Suddenly, the main character looked over, thinking that things were bad when he suspected something was wrong, and a red dot from a laser sight appeared on his cheek. It turned out that Liu Feng was being targeted by an unknown man in glasses who was watching him from the street, saying that this stupid boy should prepare to die. A stranger in black clothes stood on a tree branch not far from Chairman Yang's mansion and held the main character at gunpoint. Suddenly, a loud sound was heard and all the birds immediately became alarmed, scattering in different directions, losing their feathers. The killer fired a shot, intending to kill Liu Feng, and the bullet struck the window into the room where the main character stood at lightning speed. Shards of glass scattered across the room and blood dripped onto the wooden floor, indicating that the mercenary had hit his target. However, the main character managed to dodge, and the bullet only slightly grazed him, and the guy immediately realized that the shot was fired from an M4 rifle. The sniper was shocked to see how the guy managed to dodge the bullet so easily, so he concluded that this was a difficult person and he should retreat. It was not possible to retreat so easily because Liu Feng immediately jumped out of the window, shouting whether the killer intended to escape. The others tried to stop the guy, but the young man began to move with lightning speed around the mansion in big jumps, trying to catch the intruder. At this time, the chairman's daughter woke up. Rubbing her eyes, she immediately began to call her daddy. The man, having forgotten about everything that was happening around him, immediately turned to the girl and said the name of his daughter. Crying with happiness, he ran up to his daughter and hugged her tightly, saying how much she scared him, and the girl began to complain that her father's snot was already on her hand. The patient's father and doctors gathered around her, thanking Liu Feng for everything. The weather was rainy outside, and the main character continued to chase. The young man quickly moved through the forest, loudly repeating that he heard the sound of footsteps and approached his offender. Meanwhile, the killer did not give up and also quickly ran away, trying to avoid a collision with the main character. As he ran, Liu Feng took out another long needle and began shouting that the man would not be able to escape from him. The guy ordered the offender to lie on the ground and threw an 8-inch needle into the man's back, which should stop him. The mercenary immediately tripped and fell face first into the ground with a crash, his face twisted in pain and surprise. Taking the rifle, the hero said that he did not care whether he wanted to kill someone from the Yang family, but if the guy was the target of the killer, then only death awaited the killer. The young man immobilized his opponent, pinning him to the ground with his foot, and he could only helplessly glance askance at the main character, clenching his teeth. The killer let out a scream when he was suddenly hit in the face with a rifle butt, knocking out his front tooth and shattering his glasses. Lu Feng switched the growl on the sniper rifle to manual control mode. Putting the gun to the offender's forehead, the guy ordered him to give up the target and his name, otherwise he would die, after which the killer immediately split. The helpless mercenary explained that his boss ordered him to kill the doctor of the Yang family, because then the chairman's daughter would die, chaos would begin in the family, and control would be taken over her. Laughing, the main character noted the resourcefulness of his offender's boss, adding that he even became interested in what kind of person he was. The killer began to make excuses that he did not know who hired him because he was just a lone killer, but he still had a way to contact the boss. The phone vibrated in the killer's pocket, and Liu immediately took it out, realizing that his boss was calling the mercenary. The guy answered the call without saying a word into the receiver and heard a voice asking why Pu Jinshu took so long to answer. Changing his voice, Fung apologized to the boss and said that there was a problem and he would need more time because there was a strong master in the Yang family. Liu became wary, realizing that the person who ordered the murder was up to something, because he asked to kill all the doctors within 3 days for triple the commission. The young man, pretending to be Pu Jinshu, wanted to say something in response, but the mercenary's boss immediately hung up. The main character pointed the rifle at the killer's head, declaring that he was no longer useful to him, to which the helpless man said in a trembling voice that he did not want to die. Immediately after this, a loud sound of a gunshot appeared in the forest, lightning flashed in the sky, and pouring rain fell. Sometime later, at the Yang family mansion, the maid addressed the chairman, saying that Dr. Liu had returned. Yang Ding, cheerful because of his daughter's awakening, asked the main character if he managed to catch the intruder. The maid was wiping the sweat from the hero's face with a towel when he announced that he had killed the killer and asked Dean to send someone to remove the man's corpse from the site. The chairman asked Dr. Liu if he managed to find out who ordered the murder of the main character. Taking the cup of tea offered by the maids in his hand, the guy asked the man if he really wanted to discuss this right here. Pointing his hand towards the door, Yang Ding agreed with the young man and suggested discussing what happened in the office of the chairman of the board of directors. Placing the empty cup on the tray, Dr. Liu thanked the servants for the tea with a smile on his face before following the man. The sky was overcast with dark clouds. It continued to rain outside and all the windows in the Yang family mansion were on fire. The chairman was concerned that his daughter had already woken up, but the 8-inch needle was still in her body, which he told Dr. Liu. The hero reassured the man, saying that the needle was made of golden grass, and by this time it should have dissolved without a trace. Rejoicing, Yang Ding once again thanked the doctor for everything, saying that his medicine was simply amazing. In response, Liu Feng said that there was no need to thank him, and that it would be better to discuss the Yang family's problems instead. Yang Ding began to say that his Ding Sheng group recently purchased a plot in the Arab region at an auction, which was originally intended for tourism purposes. He added that during exploration they discovered a large oil deposit underground for which any country is ready to fight. Growing gloomy, Yang said that the happy days did not last long, because the wells worked for only a few days before powerful forces came for him. Liu Feng tried to calm the man down when he became angry and started shouting that he was Chinese and could not easily give the property to foreigners. The man explained that all the forces were targeting his family and daughter, which is why so many guards were hired for Wen Wen's safety. With a wink, Liu Feng suggested that Yang help him solve everything, and then his problems would not last so long. After thinking, the chairman decided to refuse, because for now he could cope on his own, and Feng was called only to help his daughter. Brother John told the hero a story that many years ago a fortune teller prophesied that his daughter would live only until she was 20 years old, and it was at this age that she was poisoned. Scratching his head, our hero asked how, in this case, Yang Ding was going to cope with all this foreign rabble on his own. After the conversation, the young man went out into the corridor and was greeted by 2 girls working as servants in the family. Walking to the door, he said that Brother Yang had told him to stay in the room next to Wen Wen to protect her in case something happened. The hero chuckled and turned back when he heard someone behind him leave the room. It was Wen Wen who came out into the corridor, drying her hair with a towel, and told the maid Nina to help her. Liu Feng stood with his back to the girl, his mouth open in amazement because he was surprised by her unexpected appearance and beauty. The heroes turned to each other and silently met their gaze as they stood in the corridor of the mansion. Giving a thumbs up, the amazed guy smiled at the girl and said that she had a beautiful figure, which made her very angry. Maddened with anger, Wen Wen began calling the young man a dirty pervert and hitting him with a towel. The girl was also angry because during treatment, the guy dared to touch her breasts, to which Liu began to make excuses that he did it unintentionally. The doctor's excuses did not calm down Wen, and she shouted that she was furious and wished that she was only holding a towel. The demonic essence awakened in her, and she announced that she would go and find someone who could teach the young man a lesson. The main character looked at his future with fear because he would have to protect this girl for the next 6 months. The guy tried to calm Wen by extending his hand to her and said that it was just an accident. Not intentionally, Liu Feng touched the towel that the young lady had wrapped herself in after her shower with his hand, trying to stop her. The towel began to fall off the body of a girl with long pink hair, which created an awkward situation between the heroes. Wen was embarrassed and shocked when she noticed this, the same emotions our protagonist had. The guy sweated from embarrassment and fear, asking in a trembling voice if she would believe him that this incident was also an accident. The heroine clearly did not forgive the young man, so more and more sounds of blows began to be heard in the Yang family mansion. The fight between the guy and the girl after the awkward incident lasted for 15 minutes. Having already changed her clothes, Wen ran towards Dr. Liu, holding a pillow in her hand and shouting various insults at him. At this time, the hero was changing clothes in his room, asking the girl why she was pursuing him, if he had already explained that it was just an accident. With an angry expression on her face, Wen began to throw all the objects she was holding in her hands at the offender. Our hero Liu Feng caught the pillow that flew at him, chuckled in surprise, and looked at it. The guy decided to take revenge on the young lady and grabbed the pillow with his fingers to tear it to shreds. Instantly, the young man tore her into 2 pieces, and feathers scattered throughout the room, while the girl watched this, speechless. She looked at Dr. Liu menacingly, warning that her father would immediately throw him out if he dared to do anything to her. The guy put his finger to his mouth, asking her to be silent. In his palm, there was a tiny gadget in the form of a black pill. Crossing her arms over her chest, the girl looked puzzled as Liu Feng did something on her phone. He started shouting that she was a simple rich girl who was nothing of herself, but at that time he showed her a text on his phone with words about the wiretapping he had found. Wen played along with the hero and started yelling back at him, showing a message on her phone, asking if she and her dad were in danger. Smirking, Liu Feng showed a text on his phone that the girl would be completely safe with him for 6 months. What the main character wrote made Wen very angry, and she stretched out her hand to snatch the guy's smartphone. Offended, she threw the phone to the side and the young man just looked at it in bewilderment. In a loud tone, the young lady said that since Liu Feng was now her bodyguard, she was forced to clarify his duties to him. The guy was clearly shocked by such daring behavior of the girl he had to protect. The young man tried to cover his ears when the girl shouted that he was forbidden to enter her room without knocking, and he was obliged to follow all her orders. He did not meekly agree with the girl's words, so he indifferently asked her to stop chatting and go to bed. Liu started pushing her out of his room, which made Wen even more angry since it was none of his business when she went to bed. The guy said that he would pay her 100 as compensation for the incident with the towel, and she could deduct this money from his salary because now the young man does not have a wallet with him. Smiling at Wen, he began to close the door in front of her, wishing the girl good night. The main character sharply and loudly slammed the door right in front of the dumbfounded heroine, who stood silently with her hands down. Clenching her hands into fists in anger, she asked herself if the young man thought he could pay her off with money. Walking around his room alone, Liu Feng thought about what a grumpy girl little Yang was. Holding a miniature wiretapping device in his hand, the hero came to the conclusion that this killer should already know that he had cured Yang Shiwen. Squeezing the bug between his thumb and forefinger, the hero crushed it into small fragments because now the wiretapping is useless anyway. At this time, the stranger in the headphones shouted that he heard tinnitus because the bug was broken, and asked to tell the boss that Wen was okay. In her room, the heroine was holding a phone in her hands and complaining to her sister that there was a person who was bullying her, and together they should find a way to punish him. She smiled ominously, turning to Liu Feng and saying that the guy would pay for all the bullying. Early in the morning, Dr. Liu and the head of the Yang family were having breakfast in the mansion and discussing something. In response to the words of praise, the main character said that he was only the 3rd among the best students of his master. Flicking her hair, Wen walked down to the 1st floor, pointed at the hero's boasting, and ordered him to take her to the university. The girl frowned and looked away resentfully when her father asked her to stop being rude to Dr. Liu. Yangding had to apologize to the hero for the behavior of his daughter, explaining that her mother died a long time ago, and it was his fault for her poor upbringing. Without even looking at the guy, the girl handed him the car keys and university enrollment documents. Looking at the documents, Liu Feng was not even surprised because for the richest man in the city, it is not so difficult to enroll in the best higher education institution. After breakfast, the main characters got into a red light sports car and left the mansion to go to the university. Wenwen looked angrily at her driver, thinking that he deserved revenge because he dared to take advantage of her when he was sleeping during his illness. As Dr. Liu and Sister Yang were approaching their destination, two cars suddenly jumped out in front of them. It was the girl's friends who greeted her and pointed out the arrogance of her new security guard, who did not even get out of the car. An interested red-haired friend, Wen, approached Liu, calling him handsome, and asked him to tell her his height and weight. With a wink, the hero said that he weighs 70 kilograms and is 180 centimeters tall, and she can see the rest for herself. The young man's insolence outraged the stranger, and she screamed loudly, casting an angry look at the main character. Turning to comrade Wen, Leo called him a big guy and said that he was protecting Miss Yang, not him, so the guy's arrogance should not bother him. Ms. Yang's friend was angry, but did not do anything because he had been warned earlier that with one move, Liu was able to beat two of the family's bodyguards. Wenwen asked her friends to help her teach the hero a lesson, because now they too were convinced of how arrogant he was. The big man turned to Dr. Liu, inviting him to organize a race in which the loser would carry out all the orders of the winner. Without answering him, Liu Feng asked the lady if her friend had masochistic tendencies, since he wanted to race with him. Wenwen started teasing the guy when he agreed to her friend's proposal to have a race, warning them to sit quietly and not cry after losing. At the starting line, the cars began to accelerate as the guy explained the route of the upcoming race to his opponent. A moment later, all three sports cars quickly took off, with the black car in the lead for now. Liu Feng and Wen were driving behind. The main character noticed how his opponent Tong Dai stuck his hand out of the window and gave him a thumbs down. The cheerful girl told Liu that Tong Lei has been driving since he was 13 years old and is now known as the mountain god of Donghai roads, and if he is ahead on the road, he cannot be defeated. In response, Liu, confident in his abilities, only laughed, saying that Sister Yang was still too young and had a limited mind. After this, our main character sharply pressed the gas pedal with his foot to increase the speed and get ahead. Liu Feng turned the steering wheel, intending to make a difficult maneuver to get ahead of his opponent. As a result, the red car stood on its side and squeezed between the cars in front on only two wheels. Noticing this, Tong Lei shouted, calling the main character a madman who apparently wants to die. The heroine's red-haired friend, who was driving in a gray car, was so shocked by Liu's behavior on the road that she was speechless. Clasping her face in her hands, the terrified Wenwen screamed, being sure that now they would definitely turn over. Seeing that the traffic light was already turning yellow, she loudly asked Liu Feng to stop because it was about to turn red, and the happy guy said that the maneuver was quite simple. The young lady continued to scream for him to stop, but the guy rushed forward while the competitors were forced to stop due to a red light. Strangers in another car noticed this, shouting that the guy would soon die if he demonstrated his skills like this, and some of them noted the youth and beauty of the driver. Initiated by friend Yang, the race ended near Dunhai University of Science and Technology. Liu tried to draw Miss Yang's attention to the fact that her friends had finally arrived while she was very sick after such a trip. Wenwen's friends arrived much later and stopped nearby, then got out of the car and approached their opponent. Encouraged, Liu asked the big guy if he was willing to pay the bet while he was experiencing strong emotions after the race. Wenwen's friends took a long time to find their words because they were surprised at their loss and did not want to carry out Liu Feng's orders as punishment. The guy and girl looked pitifully at their friend, hoping that she would convince her new guard to punish their friends. Liu asked them not to become depressed and commuted the punishment by offering to call him Big Brother in exchange for canceling the terms of the bet. Shiwen said that she did not agree to be a participant in the race, so she would not comply with her guard's conditions and call him Big Brother. Xiaoli and Tong Lei were shocked when Liu suggested that they call him Big Brother, and stood gloomily on the sidelines in despair. Feng began to make fun of the pink-haired girl, saying that she decided to escape from a burning house full of people and close the door behind her. The teenager's conversation was interrupted when an expensive white car drove up to them at high speed and stopped. He was a tall, muscular guy who immediately made a claim to Liu that the parking space belonged to him, and he had no right to park Wen's car here. The other students watched in surprise, not understanding who dared to leave the car at the main gate, because everyone knows that only Sun Chengfeng is allowed to do this. The protagonist was not afraid of Chengfeng's threatening tone, asking him if he had any problem with him parking at the main gate. The rest of the students, watching the situation from the side, were shocked, since no one had previously dared to talk to the big man's son in such a tone. Taking his sunglasses away from his eyes, Sun furrowed his brows and loudly asked Liu if he was trying to get into trouble now. His face became more welcoming when he looked at Wen standing next to him and mentally noted the beauty of the stranger's figure. The heroine noticed how Sun was looking at her and felt disgusted, as if she could read his thoughts just by his facial expression. The guy immediately began to show off in front of the stranger, introducing himself as Sun Chengfeng, and added that she could simply call him Brother Feng. Maintaining self-confidence, the main character tried to shut up the big guy, saying that he was not interested in who he was and declared that now this parking space belonged only to him. The hero took a step forward to the big man and advised him to take care of his eyes and look less in the mirror, because it wouldn't help him anyway. Wen was pleased that her new guard stood up for her, so she smiled softly as she observed the situation. The rest of the students are dumbfounded by Liu Feng's courage, declaring that Brother Feng will now definitely end his life and be severely beaten. Sun was very angry at Liu's words, so he called him a bastard, asked if he wanted to die, and threatened him with his fist. The muscular tall guy tried to punch the main character but missed, as Liu deftly dodged. Instead, our hero decided to kick his opponent's ankle to make him lose his balance. He succeeded, and the big man immediately tripped and began to fly onto the asphalt, uttering a surprised cry. However, the guy didn't let him just fall. He swung his leg and hit the offender in the stomach, causing him to widen his eyes in pain. The main character's blow was so powerful that Sun flew high into the air, despite his large build and height. The students were amazed by Liu Feng's strength. Noticing that Sun was flying from just one kick, they took out their phones and began to film what was happening. Cheng Feng landed on the hood of his car with a crash, breaking the windshield, and then vomited. The young man, pleased with himself, stood on the roof of his offender's car and publicly declared that from now on, in this educational institution, the only Brother Feng would be him, Liu Feng. The rest of the students joyfully accepted this news, surrounded the daredevil and looked at him with adoration and admiration, filming everything on their smartphones to post on the university forum. The main character then jumped into the air, doing a backflip to land back on the ground. He successfully stood on both feet right next to Brother Yang's daughter, the girl he was supposed to protect. Smiling, he suggested that the girl go to school because they need to report after what happened, to which Wen immediately agreed. The two walked towards the university building, the previously disobedient Wen walking obediently next to her guard. The girl's friends who were left behind were discussing how suddenly she had become obedient, although they had never seen her like this before. Tong Li, who was convinced of Liu Feng's strength, loudly declared to him that he was true to his word, so from now on the main character would be his boss. Liu Feng replied indifferently that in that case he would trust him to drive his car, which surprised Wen. Tong Lei was speechless after this order from his new boss, and his girlfriend began to laugh furiously. Meanwhile, the big man's son had come to his senses and was muttering to himself about how Liu had allowed him to be attacked. Tong decided to take revenge for his boss, so he swore at the beaten guy and jumped and kicked him in the face. While the two were fighting on the hood of the car, the rest of the students were discussing that Sun is a member of a famous family, and the elder of this clan is very powerful, so no one dared to mess with him before. As the boy lay helpless and beaten by Tong unconscious on the hood of his car, the students concluded that all the stories about his family's influence were lies. There was finally silence at the main gate of the university, and Tong Lei was very pleased with himself after the fight with the big guy. Half an hour had passed since this incident. The main characters were still within the walls of the educational institution. Liu Feng accompanied Sister Yang as he walked through the university courtyard, holding bags of branded items in his hands. Tong approached the guy, inviting his boss to go to the city after school and have something to drink. Brother Feng liked the offer of his new subordinate because it is difficult for him to refuse a drink if someone treats him. The company decided to choose the Dongshun International Hotel as a place to relax after a hard day at school. A whole group of hotel employees greeted Tong, asking the young master whether he wanted to occupy a small or exclusive room today. Tong Lei crossed his arms over his chest and replied in a smug tone that, of course, he was choosing the exclusive hall. He boasted to his boss that this hotel has a Roman hall on the 3rd floor, which belongs only to him and costs more than 300,000 yuan per year. Tong asked the hero if it was too expensive for him, when the guy laughed and asked about the amount. The hero replied that 300,000 is not enough for him even for a bottle of wine. but he advised his friend to save money because his parents give it to him. On sight of him. Lei, frowning, shouted that he agreed to be thrifty, but should not call him stupid, after which Liu immediately tried to calm him down and suggested that they go drink wine. After mentioning alcohol, Tong immediately cheered up, and the demon in his head began to threaten him that he would make him so drunk that he would vomit blood. The main character, while remaining friendly, whose demonic essence is much more powerful than Tong, said that he himself would call the student boss if he could outdrink him. The heroes entered an exclusive Roman hall with a large round table. Inside, they were greeted by hotel employees and invited to sit down. Tong's friend said that she liked abalone with sea cucumbers, and the guy immediately decided to order this dish for her. Wenwen was clearly unhappy when Tong Lei asked the employee to bring his company everything on the menu. The girl with pink hair expressed her dissatisfaction with the fact that they ordered so much extra food and they shouldn't have overdid it so much. Tong Lei asked her why he should be ashamed of ordering so much food since her family is the richest in the East China Sea. Even the employee turned to the young master, saying that the number of dishes was too large for such a small company, but the guy stood his ground. The main character watched this situation with interest, glanced sideways at the guy with green hair and grinned slyly. His new friend handed him the menu and asked Liu Feng what kind of alcoholic drink he would like to drink. Liu winked and said that you shouldn't drink beer with seafood because it can cause diarrhea. Tong Lei made a gesture with his fingers and suggested that his boss order 2 bottles of Mao Tai wine in this case. Wenwen was dumbfounded when Liu Feng loudly announced that 2 bottles of wine would not be enough and they would need a whole box. The rest of the company were also very surprised by Liu Feng's offer to drink a whole box of expensive wine at dinner. The hero put his hand on the shoulder of the drooping guy and said that he should not retreat in the face of fear since he entered the capital's military university. Liu Feng's manipulation had an effect on the young man, and he immediately shouted to the waitress to serve the company a whole box of wine. The guys clinked glasses and Tong loudly said that he admired his boss's recklessness and coolness and asked him to show respect to him with this cup of alcohol. The red-haired girl, who was sitting and munching on sea cucumbers, was daring her companion to drink a few more cups of wine and relax. The heroine with pink hair was quite quiet at the table. She was embarrassed by the behavior of the guys who drank wine without stopping. Tong Lei's face grimaced after another glass of alcohol. He grabbed his chopsticks and began actively snacking so as not to get drunk so quickly. However, Liu Feng did not let his comrade slow down. He again poured wine into his glass, preventing him from eating the shrimp, and offered him a drink for the fact that the guy accepted him as a boss. The big man did not contradict his older brother, and, wrying his face, emptied the glass of alcoholic drink, and this whole situation clearly amused the main character. The guys continued to drink. As a result, Tong Lei could barely stand on his feet. His head was spinning from intoxication, but the hero, remaining sober, continued to pour wine into their glasses. Shiwen shrugged and sighed heavily when her friend told her that her new bodyguard was very good at drinking. The main character laughed and offered his new friend another drink, but after these words, Tong Lei fell to the ground. The guy was unconscious after drinking so much wine. He was lying on his back in the middle of the hall and was ready to pass out. Shiwen looked at her guard with displeasure and said that he was too ruthless towards her friend. Satisfied with himself, Liu Feng, eating seafood dishes, asked how he could have eaten all this alone if he had not drunk Tong into unconsciousness. The heroine's friend asked her if her family would be able to support the new security guard, seeing how he consumes 50,000 yuan worth of wine and seafood in an evening. The question amused the main character, and she responded by asking the girl if she wanted Wenwen to give the guy to her. The red-haired student immediately began to deny and make excuses that she was not as rich as her, so she would not be able to attract Liu Feng. The friendly conversation between the students over dinner was suddenly interrupted when the door to the Roman hall opened and someone walked in. The tall, muscular guys, one of whom even had a large scar on his face, flexed their fists and asked Brother Feng if they should beat up that group. In front of them walked Brother Feng, a muscular student who had been beaten by Liu Feng and Tong Lei at the main gate of the university that morning. Before the big man had time to say a word to the offenders, a bottle of wine immediately flew into his face so that his glasses fell off his eyes. Brother Feng even lost his balance after the blow. Dumbfounded, he sat on one knee and rubbed his face where the bottle had just landed. The main character, deftly juggling a bottle of alcohol, asked Feng how his brain allowed him to even come here today. The muscular guy with a ponytail, who had once again been defeated by his attacker, was still sitting on one knee and silently angry, clenching his teeth. The young man said in a stern voice that due to the presence of ladies here, he would not beat him to a pulp, and in an amicable way suggested that Brother Feng's comrades take him away from here. Brother Feng's pumped-up friends looked at each other. Obvious fear of the main character was visible in their faces. They were timidly silent. Realizing that Liu Feng was superior to them in terms of strength, they politely said that they would leave immediately, took their friend under the shoulders, and walked towards the exit of the hall. The young man turned to Wenwen, smiled at her, and showed a finger up. Reassuring her that he had sorted everything out, the girl looked at the guy in fascination. The heroine's mood immediately changed to anger. She began to shout at the guy, asking questions why she should be afraid. The hero tried to calm Shiwen down, and then said that it was time for them all to go home, suggesting that they finish dinner at the hotel. He put his drunken new younger brother on his shoulders, and he began to mutter that he had a dream about how someone came to them and wanted to figure it out. Liu Feng smiled softly and told the guy that as soon as he dealt with them in his sleep, he could continue sleeping. The heroes were already driving in a car through a large night city. In Shiwen's head, there were thoughts that she noticed that her new guard was quite handsome and could also easily solve any problem. The heroine was sitting in the back seat and Liu Feng was driving, and through the rearview mirror, he noticed the girl looking at him. He turned to Mrs. Yang, smiled contentedly, and said that he had just noticed how she was looking at the guy. The girl immediately became worried and answered in a trembling voice that, of course, she didn't look at her, saying why did she need it at all? Madame Yang's bodyguard was distracted when a new message arrived on his phone, and he immediately picked up the smartphone to take a look. Due to the message, the hero apparently had to change plans, so he asked Xiao Xi to take Tong Lei home instead of him. The car stopped in a deserted place in the middle of the city. The red-haired Xiao Xi and Liu Feng got out of the car. Concerned, Wenwen leaned out of the car window and asked the guard where he was going to go. Holding his phone in his hand, the main character told the girl that he had something to take care of and would be back soon. At the same time, another action took place in the luxurious mansion of Brother Feng, who was beaten twice by our main character the day before. Xiao Feng sat on a chair, the nurse bandaged his bruises, and the servants poured alcohol into his glass so that he could relax after a hard day. This picture was observed by Xiao Feng's uncle, who, holding his hands behind his back, asked his nephew who dared to humiliate him like that. The young man immediately began to complain to his uncle, saying that it was a bastard named Liu Feng, who is a freshman at Donghai University, who did this and asked him to avenge him. Hearing this news, Uncle Xiao immediately became angry. He looked at his beaten nephew and promised him that this Liu Feng would not live even 3 days. The guy turned to Liu Feng, even though he was not nearby, and threatened him that now they will see how well he fights, since Uncle Yang is the master of his father's battle hall. The main character looked on his phone at a message that 1.5 billion yuan had been credited to his account to kill Dr. Liu Feng. The guy was amused that he had just ordered himself, and he asked if this was too easy money for him. Liu Feng was greatly embarrassed when his conversation with himself was interrupted by Lady Yang, who sneaked up behind him, holding a branch in her hand, and greeted him. The dissatisfied girl asked him if he considered it negligence that he left her alone in the car for such a long time. Wenwen immediately softened, winked at the young man and said that she would forgive him this time, to which the main character was very grateful. The girl became interested in what kind of thing the young man was holding in his hand when he took a white cable with an unknown device and began to insert it into the smartphone. The main character inserted the cable into the device and a key with a lock appeared on the phone screen, which meant the launch of an unknown program. When Wenwen saw this, she surprised the guy by shouting that it was Decryption software, and now they would be able to find out who was behind the sender of these messages. Battle-minded Shiwen suggested that Liu Feng catch the killer who ordered the main character and ask him why he is going against them. The protagonist asked Ms. Yang to follow her, but she was very worried, believing that the guard was not an ordinary person if he had such equipment. Screaming, she asked the guy if she was right that since Dad hired such a person to guard her, then her family was in danger. Liu Feng patted the girl on the head, reassuring her that she would always be safe as long as the guy guarded her. The girl blushed with embarrassment and visibly calmed down. Calm down, asking if her father was safe. She became angry again and began hitting the young man on the chest with her fists, calling him a bastard, when he calmly replied that he was responsible only for her. The clearly worried girl asked her bodyguard to tell her today what was happening in her family and why she was in danger. The main character was distracted again when his phone vibrated, He looked at the gadget screen and saw a map there, indicating the location of the sender of the mysterious messages. He told the girl that they would have no way of catching anyone at all if Ms. Yang continued to cause trouble. Catching up with the bodyguard, she continued to ask him questions about why the Decryption program had a location tracking function. Wen was confused when the young man explained to her that the program had been improved in the 5 years since it was borrowed from the CIA, and now it had such a function. The heroes continued to flee, and Liu explained that the code of the program ended up in his hands and his people improved it, and now he calls it Mengson software. Ms. Yang Shiwen and our young hero hurriedly ran to the red car parked nearby to go in search of the mastermind behind their murder. Unexpectedly for the guy, Wen got behind the wheel, winked at her guard and told him to get into the car because his little sister would be lucky. The hero clearly didn't like this initiative of hers, so he grabbed her in his arms and removed her from the driver's seat, which is why the girl blushed and began to ask what he was doing. When they got into the car, the young man told her not to think too much, and he would drive the car, and she asked where they would go. Concentrating on the task, Liu Feng asked if Miss Yang wanted to see something new and interesting, and invited her to show her the cruel reality. 2 hours have passed since this conversation. The action took place in the luxurious Xianghewan Love Hotel. Our hero stood at the reception desk. Liu asked the administrator to give him a room for lovers on the 6th floor, but he did not like the proposed room, and he asked for another. The girl behind the counter apologized and replied that room 608 was already occupied by another guest. Then the main character agreed to room 607. While playing a role in front of the administrator, Liu Feng asked Wen to give him some money and he would send her to heaven, which made the heroine confused. The guy and girl drew surprised glances from the other guests when Liu Feng began boldly telling Shiwen that he wanted her right now. Out of awkwardness, the girl administrator began to cough, and the doorman looked at the main characters with envy and said how good it was to be young. The young hero asked the pink-haired girl not to lose her temper now, because they were already close to the goal, and she, grabbing his clothes, asked the guy to explain to her everything was normal. He showed her the phone with the words that the one they were looking for was in room 608, and Wen asked if they should break in there and grab him. The main character spread his arms to the sides and said that they can do this, but first he wants to show Mrs. Yang something funny. These words of the bodyguard interested the girl. She looked at him with a perky smile and asked what he meant. The conversation between our main characters ended when they stopped on the desired floor and the elevator door opened. The heroine asked Liu what was wrong when they got out of the elevator, and the guy looked long and carefully at the red door leading to room 608. Liu Feng turned to the girl and replied that it was just a trifle, his face becoming more cheerful and cheerful. They entered their hotel room and Wen annoyedly asked why they were sitting here, to which she received the answer that because of the security cameras, they would be immediately caught if they simply broke into room 608. She asked the guy how they would get inside when he said that there was a surveillance camera just opposite room 608. He grinned and explained that there was a ventilation pipe in the ceiling of each room, and it was big enough to fit through. After some time, both heroes were already successfully crawling along a spacious ventilation pipe from their room to the room of their offender. When the guy crawled to his destination, he, frowning, began to carefully observe through the bars what was happening in someone else's room. He saw a man lying inside whom the unfamiliar girl called Brother Tian, saying how bad he was. Lying next to him, the girl told him that she knew that he would soon become the richest man in the East China Sea, to which Tian replied that Qidan's knowledge was quite good. Wen, who was crawling behind Liu Feng, pushed him on the thigh, causing the protagonist to lose his balance. The main character looked at his friend in shock when he realized that because of her action, they would no longer be able to quietly observe what was happening in the room. The occupants of the room were shocked when Liu Feng suddenly fell out of the grate on the ceiling and landed on the floor right in front of their bed. Young Shiwen also did not remain sitting in the pipe and quickly jumped down with an important and concentrated expression on her face. She fell into the arms of the stunned Liu and began screaming at the stranger, calling him a bastard. Did he think that an idiot would be able to carry out her plans? Brother Tian and his girlfriend were dumbfounded by what was happening. They looked with open mouths at the main characters who so unexpectedly appeared in front of them. The man with the scar on his face, not understanding what was happening, asked Wen and her bodyguard who they were. Shiwen was angry, so, still in the guard's arms, she kicked the alleged offender directly in the stomach. His girlfriend shouted his name in concern as the blow sent Brother Tian flying back several meters and landing on the bed, wincing in pain. The stranger was angry that the heroes dared to offend her loved one, so she immediately grabbed a knife and, holding the weapon in front of her, prepared to attack. Madame Yang Shiwen was confused. She looked blankly at the stranger holding a knife in her hand and was unable to react quickly. The main character did not allow the irreparable to happen. He easily grabbed the girl by the wrist and prevented her from stabbing her with a knife. He explained to the stranger that it was useless to use a knife with such a dull blade against him, and she shouldn't pick up a weapon if she didn't know how to handle it. Liu Feng looked at Tian angrily and asked if he didn't hire the hitman to kill the Yang family and if he didn't pay for the guy's elimination. Brother Tian was furious when he realized who was standing in front of him, and through his pain he looked at the guy whose murder he had ordered earlier. The man immediately revealed himself, saying that he was from the Song family who had been offended by Liu Feng, and he should not have provoked them, even though the main character was very capable. Liu Feng, remaining calm, began to ask Tian who decided to order the guy's murder, he personally or the Song family. Brother Tian explained that he was only the battle hall master of the Song family, and ordering Liu Feng's murder was his personal decision, which the protagonist believed. The interrogation from Feng did not stop, and after that, he asked the man who was behind the scenes of this whole situation. The man with a scar on his face, without resisting, answered all the guy's questions, saying that the foreign group Gaoyan was involved in this, financing his activities. Wenwen was alarmed when she heard about Gaoyang Group because it is the largest import-export company in Korea. For some reason, the main character became gloomy and silent when Liu Feng turned to her and asked if this company was familiar to her. Shiwen then began to detail that as Yang Ding's daughter, she was interested in the market, and that the Gaoyang Group was one of the largest in Southeast Asia. Liu Feng looked sternly at Brother Tian and asked who exactly gave him the money, asking for the person's full name and surname. While the stranger was comforting the man, he told Liu that this man's name was Fei Daojia. He was the general manager of Gaoyang Group, and they had only met once. Feng asked another question about who else in his battle hall was involved in this matter, to which Tian replied that he would not dare to use the power of the family. Next, the guy asked to name the name of the hall leader, to which Tian held out the phone and asked to look at the photo of Tiger Baihu. The main character silently picked up the man's phone and began to look at the photo of the man who is the leader of the Song family's battle hall. Tian smiled to Wu Lu and then asked in a trembling voice if he could let them go, since he had told everything he knew. Having released the needles from the glove, the main character asked the man if he really thought it was possible for him to let them go so easily. A moment later, Liu waved his hand. Wenwen was very scared and screamed, asking the guy if he killed Tian and his girlfriend. The man from the Song family and the stranger fell unconscious on the floor, but there was no blood around. They were just lying unconscious. The guy reassured her, saying that he would not allow people to be killed in front of her eyes, so he simply knocked them out so that their memories would be erased. Shiwen was dumbfounded by the main character's abilities, and the question in her head was how this was even possible. The main character grabbed the girl by the waist to help her climb up the ceiling into the ventilation pipe and told her to come back first, which is why the lady blushed and agreed. Wenwen sat in the ventilation pipe but did not go to her room, but asked Liu if he had finished and if they could return now. Liu Feng stayed in Brother Tian's hotel room. He looked up and told the girl that he still needed some time. The guy swung his leg, and the chair standing in the hotel room immediately flew off at an insane speed somewhere to the side. A stranger in a mask came out of the closet and put his hand in front of him, so that the chair flying into it shattered into splinters. The main character asked an unfamiliar guy with pale skin if he had suffocated because he had been hiding in the closet for so long. The blonde guy immediately put a golden revolver in front of him and pointed it at the young man, loudly ordering him to shut up right now. Wenwen watched everything that was happening from the ventilation pipe, who was worried about the main character and shouted at him to be careful. Liu Feng took a knife in his hand, prevented the stranger from firing, and tried to cut his throat, but he managed to dodge. The guy looked menacingly at the offender and said that, as an assassin, his movements were too slow. The hitman was visibly tense, as Liu Feng was able to block any of his movements and held the sharp blade of the knife directly in front of his throat. The hero grabbed the guy's weapon, immediately naming its characteristics, and then came to the conclusion that the offender belonged to the Gaoyan group. Liu then exposed the stranger, saying that he was going to kidnap Tian's girlfriend so that he would be obedient, to which the young man asked Feng in a trembling voice who he was. The main character grabbed the guy's hand and twisted it behind his back, using a painful hold, and then shouted that he was asking questions here, and he had to answer. Liu Feng invited the stranger to talk about the real reasons why the Gaoyang group was targeting the Yang family so much. After a while, Wenwen and Liu were already talking in their room. The girl was surprised that Aunt Ma turned out to be the eyes and ears of the Gaoyang group in their family. The hero told the girl that he now knows how to contact the head of the Gaoyan group, Fei Daojia, and he needs to talk to her father about this. He patted the girl on the head and said that her father did not want her to participate in this showdown, so she was ordered to remain silent. The young man closed his eyes and said that he could not answer this question when Wen asked why Aunt Ma did this to their family. Determined to deal with the offenders, Yang Shiwen asked who would then deal with the offenders. Resting on the bed, the guy told the girl not to worry, saying he would figure everything out himself, after which she suggested they return home. The day passed. The bright sun was shining in the city. Our main characters went to Donghai University. Lu Feng and Wen, wearing a new outfit, appeared together in front of the rest of the students. They parked at the university, getting out of the new sports car. The students took pictures of the heroes because they recognized the main character as the guy who managed to beat Brother Feng the other day. Shiwen said that it was because of him that the students valued them so highly, to which Feng laughed and said that most likely everyone came to see her. The friendly conversation of the main characters was interrupted when suddenly an orange basketball flew towards them at breakneck speed. Mrs. Yang noticed this and, out of helplessness, clumsily looked at this ball flying at her and screamed loudly. Her guard was not taken aback and quickly reacted, grabbing the ball with his palm on the fly while the frightened girl was hiding behind his back. Shiwen sighed heavily, and began to complain that she almost died of fright when Liu winked and reassured her, saying that everything was under control. Students playing basketball nearby shouted at Liu to hurry up and return the ball without wasting their time. The main character tensed up when they called him a handsome guy. He silently cast a stern look at the tall students. The basketball players fell silent when, instead of passing the ball, Lu Feng began to walk towards them, throwing the ball behind his back. The student became angry, clenched his fists, and shouted at the young man, asking how he dared to throw the ball. The basketball player's face turned red with anger. Wen stood awkwardly on the side as Liu asked the student to first apologize to this beauty, pointing to his friend. The stranger laughed, saying that it was Feng who should first apologize to his ball because he threw it into the grass and it got dirty. When the arrogant basketball player said that the hero was not right in the head, he got really angry and looked at the student from under his brows. His eyes lit up. To avoid conflict, Shiwen asked her guard to leave, but the guy in the red t-shirt said that they should ask him before leaving. The tall, muscular young man began to crunch his fingers threateningly. Preparing to attack the main character, he gritted his teeth in anger. In response, Lu Feng only laughed and turned around, and one of the students said that no one dared to mess with Brother Du. The angry Brother Du spat to the side and shouted to the main character that he seemed to know his place if he decided to just leave. The basketball player was about to ask something to Lu Feng, confused, when he saw the guy take his ball and put his foot on it. However, the guy did not have time to ask the question, because at that moment, our main character kicked the ball. It immediately flew straight into Brother Du's face with such force that the muscular, tall basketball player began to lose his balance. Du fell unconscious onto the field. His friends immediately surrounded him and began shouting to the others to beat Liu Feng. In this fight, the main character chose a basketball as his main weapon and again rolled it to his foot. The second student with long hair groaned when a second later, this ball flew into his neck at full speed. Liu Feng began to easily deal with the boorish basketball players with just one ball, and the next blow was taken directly to the groin by Brother Du's second friend. At this point, the showdown ended, and the main character hugged Wen, inviting her to now go to class. At this time, the basketball players were writhing in pain, and one of them with damaged teeth asked, "Who even plays football with a basketball?" Blushing, Shiwen awkwardly looked at her bodyguard and thought that she could really rely on this person. One of the beaten students turned to Brother Du and said that he remembered who this guy was, calling him Liu Feng, who had recently beaten Cheng Feng like a pork chop. In response, Brother Du told his friend to tell Wei Zixuan from the Sanda Club about this, because the guy could not allow himself to be attacked by some freshmen. The school day at the university finally started. The main character moved to the lecture hall where the lesson was being held. Instead of listening to the teacher, at first Liu Feng drew funny drawings of animals in his notebook and then completely fell asleep. Suddenly, someone decided to stir up the guy. The girl pointed her finger at his back so that he would wake up. Rubbing his eyes, the hero immediately raised his head from his desk, but not understanding who woke him up, he immediately said Shiwen's name, thinking that she did it. The guy was surprised when he saw in front of him not his girlfriend, but some unfamiliar student thinking why such a beauty needed him. She handed Liu a note saying that the classmate sitting behind them asked to give it to him, while Wen sat behind him displeased. The main character opened the note and saw there an offer to go out for a drink this evening and a drawing of a bear holding a bottle. He turned to Shiwen and made a hand gesture indicating that he agreed to her offer to drink something after university. Then Liu asked the stranger what her name was, to which she introduced herself as Peng Jiaqi and asked the name of the main character too. The young man enthusiastically replied that his name was Liu Feng, but the girl could just call him handsome brother. In response, the beautiful Peng Jiaqi did not say anything but giggled embarrassedly, covering her mouth with her hand. Wen, who was watching this, was simply furious, thinking that Liu Feng would simply die if he did not try to pick up the girl for at least a minute. The school day at the university was over. The building of the higher educational institution was illuminated by the setting rays of the sun. Tired students and their teachers left the building, heading home and other errands. Dissatisfied, Wen asked Liu to eradicate his habit of chatting with all the girls in a row, to which she received the answer that he had been busy for many years and had missed the simple pleasures of student life. Crossing her arms over her chest, Shiwen asked what Liu Feng had been doing all his life since he never had the opportunity to relax. The main character explained that he had been a soldier since childhood and wanted to continue his story but stopped. He thanked the girl for her praise when she said that the guy must have been a special soldier, knowing his special abilities. When asked which squad Liu served in, he immediately became inspired and named the squad the Heavenly Sword, destroying all enemies of China. The guy was confused when suddenly Madame Yang stopped him and stood right in front of him, looking into her bodyguard's eyes. The girl's expression immediately changed to anger as she asked Brother Feng if he thought Peng Jiaqi was a very beautiful girl. Wen's unexpected question took our protagonist by surprise. He fell silent and felt as if he had been hit with a giant sledgehammer. At this time, Brother Feng, who had previously been beaten by Liu Feng, was watching the heroes while sitting in his car and asking Uncle Yang on the phone when he would arrive. He asked if Uncle would stick around when he heard the news that another Uncle Chi had lost his memory and was suspected of murder. Finally, the big man told his uncle through the phone to take more people with him, while he would keep an eye on Liu Feng. Shiwen did not lag behind the guy, pounded him on the back with her fists, and angrily asked him to admit whether he thought that classmate was beautiful, but the young man was silent. The heroes returned to the Yang family mansion to get together and have a drink somewhere. The main character asked the young lady if she was ready yet. In a trembling voice, the guy asked Wen why she wore such a dress when she appeared before him in a black leather outfit. She asked if she was not more beautiful than Peng Jiaqi in such a dress, to which the hero replied that younger sister Yang was the most beautiful, which pleased the girl. In high spirits, the heroine said, holding the guy by the arm, that they would go to her favorite bar. It was already deep evening in the large metropolis. Skyscrapers illuminated and decorated the city. Sitting at the bar, Wen asked which of the swords in the Heavenly Sword generation he belonged to which Liu replied that he was the Long Yuan sword. Heroine. Holding a glass of wine in her hand, she looked warily at her interlocutor and asked if he had to kill someone. The guy calmly took a sip of alcohol and, with a slight smile on his face, answered, closing his eyes, that he had killed countless people. The main character was puzzled when, after his answer, Mrs. Yang turned in the other direction and remained silent. Wen's cheeks turned red and she looked awkwardly at the young man when he asked her if his words scared her. The girl admitted that she was really a little scared, but her family is going through a crisis now, so perhaps a person like Liu really is needed nearby. The main character decided to defuse the situation, winked at his friend and offered to drink more wine, because they were not drunk enough yet. Shiwen realized that the guy was up to something if he was trying to get her drunk so quickly, so she asked him directly. Liu Feng looked at the young lady, laughed evilly and said that once she got drunk, he would take her to a dark, deserted place and kill her. Wen did not react to the guy's joke, and he warned her not to look back as they were being watched, but then assured her that she was safe with him. The main character and Mrs. Yang began to leave the bar, but then they were followed by unknown men in white t-shirts. When the heroes returned home after the bar, it was already late at night. They were driving along the highway in a sports car. Noticing Wen's fatigue, Feng suggested that she sleep a little in the car for now and not pay attention if she suddenly heard strange sounds. Shiwen closed her eyes, and the young man took a golden revolver from his pocket and laughed, saying that the trophy he got yesterday would definitely be useful to him today. Without slowing down, the guy leaned out of the car window and fired a shot from a golden revolver, aiming somewhere behind him. On the first try, our hero was able to hit the wheel of the car that was chasing Liu and Shiwen, causing the tire to burst. The pursuers became frightened and screamed when they realized that Liu Feng had shot the wheel of their car, and they began to lose control of the car. The man began shouting to his partner to slow down now, but the accident could not be avoided, and their car overturned onto its roof. The main character told his worried friend that she could rest assured that those men in the white car would no longer be able to follow them. Instead of heading home after that, the guy abruptly stopped near an unknown building. Immediately, 4 masters of the Song family's battle hall ran out to meet him, among them Uncle Yang, whose nephew had recently been beaten by our hero. Liu got out of the car and ordered Yang Shiwen to lock herself from the inside and not go out anywhere. In response, the girl resignedly looked at her guard. Grandfather Yang, who had a whole team of fighters behind him, said that he did not expect that in addition to his skills in hand-to-hand combat, Liu Feng could also shoot well. Crossing his arms over his chest, the guy indifferently replied that he was not interested in hearing praise from him and asked who he was and why he was looking for a hero. Our hero took off his jacket at the moment when they shouted to him that first he needed to defeat all his subordinates before finding out the man's name. 2 muscular big men were already flying with fists at Liu Feng with a warning that now the main character would be beaten to death. Afterwards, a massive fight broke out on the street of the night metropolis. Screams and sounds of blows were heard, and all Uncle Ian's fighters took part in the skirmish. For Feng, it was a trifle to overcome all these muscular guys. After a while, they were already lying unconscious on the ground, and the guy even regretted that they were nothing of themselves. Now, young Dong Shui was ready to enter the battle with the hero, who introduced himself and said that Liu must pay for beating Brother Feng. A moment later, the head of the Song family's battle hall jumped at the main character, thrusting his arms forward like a predator, and shouted for the enemy to defend himself. The 2 engaged in hand-to-hand combat, and Liu Feng declared that out of respect for the elderly and love for martial arts, he would accompany his uncle in this sparring. The master's face grimaced when the young man managed to kick Uncle Yan's hand successfully. Liu Feng continued to successfully attack his sparring opponent and then threw a punch directly at Yang's face, which he was unable to block. The battle hall master of the Song family became even more angry. He tore off his necklace, the beads scattered in different directions. The man threatened the guy to kill him. Our young hero managed to sneak up from behind and grab his uncle's head, at which point Liu apologized to his uncle, saying that he was tired of playing. Liu Feng's last move was decisive in this sparring. He slammed Uncle Yang's head directly into the ground, which made him unable to continue the fight any longer. Realizing the hero's superior strength, the battle hall master coughed, apologized to Liu Feng, and said that he was wrong. In response, the winner ordered the master to return to the family and tell the Song leader not to pursue Liu Feng anymore. Otherwise, the entire family would leave Donghai forever. Knowing that someone else was watching him, the hero turned around and asked the guys if they liked the performance, which put the guys in a stupor. Realizing that they had been exposed, Brother Feng and his friends from the university began to run away as quickly as possible so as not to run into the main character. Afterwards, the guy got into the car and asked Wen if she was scared, to which she replied that the young man looked very cool when he fought with an entire gang alone. Leaving home, the girl decided to thank Liu, but became very angry when he asked if she wanted to thank him with her body. A new school day has arrived. Students, including our main characters, stood in line and listened to the teacher's commands. Everyone was dressed in military uniform. Liu Feng became distracted and stopped listening to the teacher. He smiled and glanced at Peng Jiaqi standing behind him, thinking that she was really beautiful. Jiaqi noticed this and told her classmate not to be distracted, because military training for freshmen is very important, to which the hero replied that military training is in his blood. The teacher got very angry that Liu was talking during class and shouted that he would give him a 0 for this subject, whether he wanted to believe it or not. The hero began to clown around, telling the teacher that usually during military training, they give the order to get out of the ranks and not to roll out of here, as the teacher ordered him. The main character's words made the rest of the students laugh. Everyone began to giggle, including the beauty Peng Jiaqi standing behind. The teacher became even more angry, and Liu became very interested in how the man knew his name if he did not check the composition of the group, convicting him that someone ordered him to target the hero. The man continued to shout, declaring that Liu Feng was talking outright nonsense, because what could he have against an ordinary first-year student? This whole situation was observed by the enemies of our hero. The students who had previously been beaten by him watched as the teacher scolded Dr. Liu. The second teacher decided to calm the situation and said that it was all just a misunderstanding and they should practice now instead. Still angry, teacher Jung Yun offered our hero a challenge to compete in his running and pull-up skills. One of the students did not like the teacher's proposal because it was unfair for an experienced soldier to compete with an ordinary freshman. The hero happily agreed with the teacher's proposal, but decided to set his own condition, and if he won, the man would be obliged to release him from training. Yang Shiwen and Peng Jiaqi were greatly surprised when Liu Feng added that if he won, the teacher should also give them full marks for the subject. The second teacher felt that Liu Feng's conditions were not fair because he was accepting an individual challenge, but was asking for grades for 2 more female students. The main character agreed to compromise and said that he would be honest if the soldier Zheng Yang took 1 more person as his assistant. The second man, who introduced himself as a first-class soldier of the artillery regiment Jia Long, agreed to help his friend and also compete with the main character. All the other students, including Ms. Yang, were extremely outraged by the conditions of the competition, because now there would be 2 experienced soldiers against a freshman at once. Liu Feng began to warm up and giggle, thinking that this was not a problem for him, and suggested starting, but one of the teachers stopped him. The soldier asked the protagonist if he dared to accept the bet, since he dared to challenge 2 experienced instructors alone. Jialong smiled ominously, looked sideways at Liu, and said that if he lost, he would have to take the documents and leave the university forever. Shiwen and Jiaqi couldn't believe what they were hearing when they heard this. They were very worried about the possible scenario in which Liu would have to leave the educational institution. It was clear from our hero that he felt excitement, and in response he asked the soldier what he would get if he, and not they, won. The teacher stated that if the protagonist wins, they will agree to any of his conditions, including the complete release of him and his 2 girlfriends from classes. The triumphant Liu Feng spread his arms to the sides and asked if everyone had heard that if they won, the teachers promised him and his girlfriends not to attend training. The guy's classmates decided to support him, saying that all the students had heard the teacher's words, and Shiwen would personally testify for his friend. The classmates standing behind also admired the protagonist's courage, shouting that they would support him even if he lost. The kind of support the careless student received from the other students put both soldiers in a stupor. They stood silently, wiping sweat from their faces. Smiling, Liu Feng said that he would not talk about his conditions for now, and would give them a surprise after his victory. The teachers were very angry because of the insolence of the main character. They shouted at him to stop talking nonsense, and suggested that he finally start. The teacher began to explain the conditions of the race, according to which the hero and his opponent would need to run 3 kilometers with a load of 30 kilograms. Liu Feng and his opponent were already ready to start. They had to run 7 laps around the stadium. They were wearing heavy backpacks to make the task more difficult. The second teacher gave the command to march, and both participants in the race immediately took off. At the start, the soldier lost to the freshman and ran behind. The students watching were amazed by the speed of the protagonist. They were sure that they could not run so fast even without heavy backpacks. Cheng Feng put his word in, shouting that it was not useful to run so fast in an endurance cross-country race, because at the end of the race, Liu Feng would lie down and breathe like a dog. The race continued. So far, the participants were only running the first lap. There was a distance of as much as 100 meters between Liu Feng and the soldier. Our hero was in the lead. The guy did not slow down. He continued to run quickly, so that on the second lap the teacher was as much as 200 meters behind the young man. Liu greeted his classmates when he managed to overtake his opponent by a full lap and was already running behind him, which made the man very angry. The female students were simply crazy about our hero. They looked at him with loving eyes and shouted to cheer him up. Zheng Yun, gritting his teeth in anger, did not give up. He tried his best to run, shouting that he was not going to lose to this brat so easily. The second teacher supported his partner from the side. He shouted to him that the teacher should not allow the student to lead the rhythm, otherwise his stamina would collapse. The first round of the competition at the Military University Stadium lasted another 4 minutes, after which the race ended. Liu Feng solemnly raised his hand and loudly announced to his classmates that he had won this round and would continue to win for the glory of the department. The hero stood firmly on his feet after a long run, and his rival, an experienced soldier, sat on his knees behind and tried to catch his breath. Our hero's classmates rejoiced. They shouted that Liu was the pride of their department, how they supported the guy, and how good he was. The instructor was breathing like a tired dog, having lost all his stamina, and Liu told him to get up because he had not even reached the finish line yet, and he had 2 laps left. Zheng Yong's partner decided to support him, offering the hero to replace him in the next round, in return allowing Liu Feng to rest for a few minutes. Our hero refused the rest, saying that he did not need it since he was fighting with beginners, and the instructor named the conditions for the next round, in which he needed to do 300 push-ups. The student thought the task was too simple, and he suggested that the teacher do 150 push-ups only on his left hand, and then 150 times only on his right. The man agreed without objection, but put forward the condition that the push-ups should reach the forearms and be at an angle of 90 degrees. Both competitors lay down on the lawn to begin. Liu's classmates surrounded them, and the first instructor commanded the participants to begin push-ups. Peng Jiaqi carefully watched the main character do push-ups. She counted out loud how many times he did it. Afterwards, she loudly announced that Liu Feng had already done 150 push-ups on his left arm. The guy showed no signs of fatigue, but his opponent was clearly exhausted. Our hero turned to his opponent and asked the instructor not to switch to the other hand yet, because he had only done 143 push-ups. The students noticed their teacher's tiredness and asked Liu Feng if he wanted to wait for the teacher to continue afterwards. The winner looked down on the loser, declaring that it didn't seem like much of an achievement to him, considering the instructor's poor skills. The teacher admitted his defeat in this round, but asked the hero not to forget that they were fighting in 3 disciplines, and there was another competition ahead. The race participants warmed up before the start. According to the conditions of the last round, the first one to run 1,000 meters will win. The instructor loudly gave the commands to get ready and start. His partner will participate in the last round again, and not Zheng Yun, who dropped out in the first test. Our hero rushed forward with all his might. The teacher was behind the boy at the start, but he also tried to win this race. Liu Feng's enemies watched the race from the sidelines and were sincerely surprised at the speed of the protagonist, demonstrating their dissatisfaction and envy. A few minutes later, the final round ended and the protagonist finished first, making him the winner of the entire competition. Brother Cheng Feng asked his friend Zixuan if he had timed the time it took Liu Feng to run the distance, and how long it took this guy to reach the finish line. The clearly dissatisfied blonde man, frowning, answered his friend that Liu Feng managed to break the world record by running 1,000 meters in 8.8 seconds. The hero's classmates were shocked to hear this time, and began to speculate on how he was able to reach such a level, because there is a limit to human capabilities. Shiwen was the only classmate of Liu Feng who did not believe that he had broken the world record, and believed that the guy had simply done something with the timer. The blonde student broke the timer in his hand out of anger when he began to list all the main character's achievements today, believing that this was simply impossible. The instructor was furious over the loss, so Liu Feng, surrounded by enthusiastic students, invited him to compete in the press swing. He winked and turned to his classmates, asking which of them would be willing to help Brother Feng and hold his legs while he did abdominal exercises. Peng Jiaqi immediately responded to the guy's request. She came closer and said that she was ready to help, her cheeks turning pink with embarrassment. Our hero settled down on the green lawn near the university building and began to exercise. Peng Jiaqi, as promised, held his legs. The instructor said that the one who does the first 500 times will win, and asked his partner not to stand like a pillar and come to hold his legs. The basketball player asked Zixuan if he was afraid of Liu when he said that there was no point in following the competition anymore, since Feng was clearly stronger than the teachers. The guy replied that as the president of the society, Sanda would still fight Liu Feng for the sake of his friend, but today he would not do so as a sign of respect. Our hero's classmates rejoiced when they saw that the guy had already done 500 times and won again, while the instructor still had 100 times left. The main character took Peng Jiaqi's hand and said that he was grateful to everyone who supported him and shared this victory with the girl who had just helped him. Young Shiwen, who was watching this, was simply furious. She understood that the scoundrel Liu took this opportunity to make advances towards the beautiful Jiaqi. The instructors decided to accept defeat and said they were giving up, adding that he and the 2 female classmates he had chosen would receive top marks in military training. Sticking out his index finger, the main character asked the teachers not to forget that they also promised to tell who asked them to target the guy. One of the students, picking up the phone, shouted that they needed to quickly make a post about how a freshman in the military training department had defeated 2 unscrupulous instructors. The teacher decided to admit that Sun Chengfeng asked them to make life difficult for Liu Feng for money. In return, the men would receive 2,000 yuan. Standing behind, Cheng Feng heard the man's confession. He immediately began to deny everything, declaring that he was not that kind of person at all. Our hero approached the guy. The false words that he was a good person provoked Liu Feng, and the student was seriously scared. In retaliation, the young man hit Cheng Feng's face with his hand so hard that his eyes rolled out of his head. After just one blow, the muscular guy fell backwards onto the grass and was unable to somehow respond to the main character. Other students watched all this. In response to the students saying that Liu Feng was beating Cheng Feng for the second time, the pink-haired heroine said that this was already the third time. The girl began to tell the students that the second time Liu beat the guy in a hotel was when they decided to have dinner with their group, and he showed up there. Wenwen was clearly proud of herself when the other boys recognized her as the beautiful stranger accompanying Liu Feng on the first day of school. Grabbing Cheng Feng by the shirt, the main character threatened him that he would hit him for the third time, but definitely not the last, so he should not come into his sight anymore. Afterwards, with joy on his face, our young hero approached his friends and said that they were all exempt from military training, so he invited them to go and relax. Young Shiwen immediately agreed to the guy's proposal, saying that now she would like to drink tea with milk. Peng also liked the main character's idea, and she suggested going to a tea restaurant, which is located near the university. The blonde student was furious and clenched his hand into a fist in anger that Liu Feng had taken away the most beautiful girls in his class. He asked his comrades to go and buy drinks and snacks for the whole class, because when he became a prefect, he intended to fight Liu Feng's leadership in the group. The two guys agreed to fulfill Xiao Lu's request, encouraging him with words that Liu Feng only knows how to fight, and the blonde uses his brain. A week later, the heroes were walking down the corridor. Yang Xuan was preparing for the election of the village chief, and Liu Feng was distracted by his phone when suddenly he received a notification. The main character looked at his smartphone and saw a message there that a certain target had arrived at its destination. The guy immediately rushed forward, leaving the puzzled girl behind, and finally wished her good luck in the election of the group leader. The man greeted Mr. Fei loudly and said that if he had known that he would arrive in person, he would have invited his grandson here too. Sun Jianye, the head of the Sun family, sat in the chair in front of the Mr. and began to talk about hopes for their possible cooperation. Mr. Fei replied that he did not like the hypocritical politeness of the Chinese and offered half of the Yang family's property if it was eliminated. The CEO of Gaoyan Group added that he would need a secluded place to carry out his plans and said that he had hired mercenaries to eliminate Dean's brother. The conversation between the two men was interrupted by our protagonist, who replied that China was a forbidden place for international mercenaries and they did not dare invite them here. Mr. Fei and the head of the Sun family immediately became alarmed. Like the rest of those present, they did not understand who was standing in front of them. When asked who he was, our hero replied that it didn't matter, and the only thing that mattered was that they were unpleasant to his eyes. Pei Daojia asked if Liu knew who he was if he spoke of hostility, to which the guy replied that of course he knew, adding that he thought that he would be a fat man. The head of the Gaoyan group got angry and ordered his subjects to beat this kid and put him on all fours to see how he would talk after this. The man's bodyguards immediately raised their fists in front of them, preparing to attack our protagonist. 3 men in suits began to surround Liu Feng, but he made a movement with his hand, releasing sharp needles into the bodies of the bodyguards. Pei Daojia blushed with anger, asking the guy not to be arrogant, and said that now the martial artist who was hired to kill the Yang family guard would deal with him. This amused Liu, because coincidentally he happened to be the Yang family's bodyguard, so he invited the master to play with him instead of standing on the sidelines. A formidable man with dreadlocks, dressed in a white robe, appeared in the hall. He introduced himself as Pak Yisheng and declared that he was ready to fight Feng. When the young man asked him if he thought he could win, Park Yisheng replied that he was confident in his abilities if he did not use unknown tricks. The guy said that he would give in to the enemy since he was confident of his victory, although he did not know what tricks Liu Feng would use in battle. The martial artist screamed in anger as he tried to throw a kick at our hero, but he dodged with lightning speed. Liu Feng immediately counterattacked Park Yisheng, the man becoming even more angry due to his opponent's obvious superiority and instructions from him to move faster. The man with dreadlocks tried to make another kick, but the guy crouched down, so the master was unable to hit him. Park Yisheng screamed heart-rendingly throughout the room when he suddenly received a kick from our hero right in the jaw. Screaming that he was giving Pak a chance to hit himself, the guy stopped giving in and began to deliver more and more blows to the enemy. Yisheng was lying on the floor, unconscious, When Liu asked Sun Jianye why he got involved with foreigners, because he should be a patriot, the head of the Sun family began to make excuses that it was Feng's fault, because he had repeatedly beaten his grandson, to which he received the answer that Liu was not obliged to help them with their family problems. The hero approached Pei Daojia, slapping his hand on his shoulder, and asked him to tell him a little about himself and the Gaoyan group, to which he was initially refused. The guy squeezed his hand on the man's shoulder tighter, and he began to scream in pain, insulting Liu Feng for actually breaking his shoulder. The chairman of the Gaoyan group continued to insist that he would not tell Liu anything since he was Korean, but then he screamed after another blow, this time to the leg. Having fallen, Pei began to accuse Liu Feng of cruelty, to which he was told that he himself was cruel, because he had just asked his boys to beat our young hero. The head of the Sun family decided to compromise and leave the Yang family behind, but Liu Feng began to talk about how Gaoyan group was closely monitoring the Sun family. The man was stupefied when he heard from the main character that Gaoyan group would not treat his family as equal partners. Walking away, the main character finally said that it doesn't matter to him what answer the leader of the Sun family gives now, because in the end, the guy will eradicate them all. Already standing at his car, the hero received a call asking where he had gone, after which he was informed that something interesting was happening near the Dongshan Hotel. At this time, a crowd of people gathered near the entrance to the Dongshan International Hotel, many taking pictures of a heart-shaped sculpture made of large pink roses on their phones. The performance was given by Lu Hao, who won the election for headman and told his classmates that he wanted to treat them today and confess his feelings to Peng Jiaqi. The rest of the students discussed how they supported Lu Hao in his action, and talked about the likelihood of whether the girl would agree to accept his feelings. Peng Jiaqi was clearly stunned by her classmate's unexpected action. She silently looked at the bouquet of roses with her palms out in front of her. The girl was very embarrassed when the blonde got down on one knee in front of her and declared that there was only one in his heart from the first moment of their meeting. Lu Hao's confession of his feelings was unexpectedly interrupted when the hero rushed into the square in front of the hotel at full speed in his car, crushing a composition of flowers with its wheels. The blonde student was discouraged, and his friends began to swear loudly when Leo's car stopped at the hotel and rose petals scattered in all directions. Peng Jiaqi was the only one who was not upset by this turn of events, and watched the scene in front of her with admiration. Getting out of the car, Lu Feng walked imposingly towards the guys and asked who was leaving flowers on the roadway. Lu Hao was furious that his declaration of love was interrupted by his boyfriend, but Peng was glad that Leo saved her from the awkward situation. The girl ran up to the hero and asked where he had been for so long, which is why Liu had to apologize, after which he invited her to eat. Wenwen started teasing Lu Hao with questions about whether he would continue to chase after Jiaqi, which made the blonde even more angry, and he told the girl to shut up. Lu Hao was distracted when he noticed someone driving up to the hotel in a white car. The blonde student's friends got out of the car, and Lu Hao exhaled because now with such help he can take revenge on our hero later. Meanwhile, the main character and his classmate, whom he saved from the blonde, were already relaxing in the establishment after a hard day. Another student also sat down next to the guy, but Yang Shiwen immediately asked her to stand up, since she should take the place next to the hero. Lu Feng told his friend that there were plenty of empty seats here, and she could sit anywhere, to which she replied that she would decide where to sit, and sat down right next to her guard. The conversation was interrupted by Lu Hao, who introduced the others to his friends, young master and property manager Lin Yu and Tisha logistics group master Bai Ou. The main character asked Shiwen if these two had any weight in the city, to which she replied that they were not very influential, but were quite famous in Donghai. With Lu Hao's arrival, Peng Ziqia's expression changed. She was clearly worried and began to bother Liu Feng, complaining that he was here again. Lu Hao then personally approached our hero, stating that he was a celebrity in their class, so he should introduce him to his friends personally. Lu Feng did not like the blonde's idea. He replied that there was no need for it, and he should not take up time from his classmates. Lin Yu and Bai Ou boldly approached the hero, bending over him, and began to ask why he was acting so self-confident and how influential his family was. Propping his face with his fist, the young hero good-naturedly answered the guys that he had neither cars nor real estate in Donghai. In response, the three guys laughed, shouting that Liu Feng had no income at all, but still dared to behave quite arrogantly. Suddenly, the hero surprised everyone around him by showing the black card of the Centurion Bank, because only world-class super-rich people have this. Liu Hao's friends were greatly amazed and could not believe their eyes, because it was impossible for a person without a car and a house to own such a card. The blonde thought that Liu just wanted to show off, and his card looked like a fake, to which the hero replied that they would find out after using it. The students' conversation in the restaurant ended with Yang Shiwen asking what the main character was up to. Afterwards, the guys went to a luxury car store, and Liu Hao and his friends were extremely skeptical that Liu could afford to buy something here. The blonde student asked the guy why he stopped, to which Liu Feng asked what Liu Hao was ready to do if his card turned out to be real. Lin and Bai, confident that Liu's bank card was fake, said that they were ready to eat all their clothes if he bought something. Jackie was very surprised and embarrassed when our hero suggested that she choose any car in this showroom, and the guy would buy it for her. With a wink, the young man said that Miss Yang didn't like driving, so he decided to buy a car for Peng, which made Wen very angry. Meanwhile, another action took place thousands of kilometers from Donghai, namely in an ancient castle somewhere in Europe. An unknown blonde scolded her subjects for not being able to deal with Falcon's mercenaries and doing nothing but fighting with each other. The girl asked herself where the boss had been missing for so long because he promised to return in a week, and because of this, everyone was too relaxed. Suddenly, a guy burst into the hall. He shouted to the blonde Irene that there was news about the boss who had just used the card in the city of Duhai. At first, Irene was incredulous at this news, but the head of the intelligence department, Luo Tengfei, assured her that it was true. The girl still believed the man, praising him for finally doing something useful, and then ordered the employee to book her a ticket to China right away. Thoughtful, she stopped her assistant and asked him to still book 2 tickets because she wanted to invite the devilish ghost with her. Turning to Master Bai and Master Lin, the guy asked if they were going to fulfill their promise because they were already convinced that the card was real. Trying to woo the hero, the guys began to fake smiles, arguing in a trembling voice that Liu Feng should forgive them and not be so petty. Our hero stood his ground and argued that he was not so kind as to forgive the dispute because they would not forgive him if the card turned out to be a fake. Liu Hao got angry when the young man said that instead of the masters, the terms of this dispute could be fulfilled by someone else, namely the one who turned the guys against Feng. Bai, Lin, and Liu Hao began to quarrel, trying to shift responsibility onto each other. The guys were convinced that it was he who should carry out the punishment. Liu Feng made an attempt to finally quarrel between his friends, saying that if a person cannot take responsibility and sets up his friends, then he should not be considered his friend. Masters Bai and Lin were furious. They shouted at the blonde, asking why he couldn't dare take the blame for this situation. The guys began to beat their comrade, and he shouted how dare they raise a hand against him because he is the heir to the influential Liu family in the capital. The main character became very wary and could not believe his ears when the surname Liu came out of the mouth of the fair-haired student. Liu Feng immediately began asking Liu Hao if he knew a man named Liu Yan. The blonde's mood improved. He immediately admitted that Liu Yan was his older brother, thinking that now he would be released. However, Liu Hao's expectations were not met, as the next moment he received a crushing kick to the stomach from Liu Feng. Our main character hit the guy with such force that his body flew back a huge distance. The rest of the students, who did not see what happened, were perplexed because suddenly they heard a strange sound. The name of Liu Yan infuriated our hero. He did not stop at one blow, so he pushed off from the ground, leaving a large dent behind him. His face showed contempt for Liu Hao and his entire family. Clenching his fists, the guy jumped forward to attack the blonde again. The students crowded around the dent in the floor, wondering how Liu Feng could make it, since the floor was made of durable brick. In anger, the young hero continued to beat Liu Hao, not paying attention to his pleas to stop doing this and his admission that he was wrong. Very worried about what was happening, Peng Jiaqi began to run towards the guys, shouting for Liu Feng to stop because he could kill Liu Hao. The girl ran up from behind and tried to stop the guy, but he did not pay attention to her, waving his fists, which is why Pan also got hurt. Liu Feng hugged her carefully, and asked if she was okay when he finally stopped beating Liu Hao. The young man tried to calm his classmate, convincing her that he had good control of his strength, and the guy would definitely not die from such blows. Lying on the floor, the beaten blonde began to say in a trembling voice that it was just a joke, and then asked why Liu beat him so fiercely. Looking at his classmate with contempt, Liu Feng said that he should blame fate for having such a damned elder brother. The guy started shouting that there was not a single good person in the Liu family in the capital, but his elder brother was a special scoundrel, which angered Liu Hao. The main character began to threaten the guy that he might die prematurely if the blonde did not leave the university and return to the capital. Liu Hao clenched his teeth in pain and could not answer when the main character pinned him to the ground, placing his foot on the guy's back. Angry even more, Liu Feng asked the blonde to convey a message to his brother that in 6 months, the hero would go to the capital to settle scores with him. A classmate tried to stop Liu Feng by telling him the news that Wei Zixuan was challenging him to a fight on the university forum. The students began to discuss Wei Zixuan, who won the university in games last year and is an extremely strong martial artist student. The girl showed Liu Feng the phone, which contained a message from Zixuan that he was challenging our hero to a fight, which would take place in the ring at the Sanda Club. When asked if he would accept the fight, Liu replied that of course he would, and would find free time within 3 days to fight him. Tired of the constant fighting, Shi Wen covered her face with her hand while the rest of her classmates cheered Liu Feng, believing in his victory. The next day, the action took place in a local hospital, where student Liu Hao ended up after yesterday's fight. Covered in bandages, he lay on a hospital bed and complained that he did not expect that after what happened in the capital, he would run into Liu Feng in Donghai. His friends encouraged the guy, saying that Liu Feng did not respect his family at all, and Liu Hao should tell his family about this. The blonde didn't like this idea because if he couldn't cope with our hero on his own, how could he fight with his older brother for the right to inheritance? At the friend's request, the student handed Liu Hao the phone, asking who he was going to call. The blonde guy rudely answered his friend that he shouldn't care who he calls, and he himself knows what to do. Meanwhile, studies at Donghai University continued. Our main characters were in class. Holding the keys to the new car, Peng was very worried, believing that she should not have accepted such a gift from Liu Feng because others might think that she was after money. Mentally, she tried to calm herself down, saying that she shouldn't think about it if such a good guy wants to court her, when Shi Wen interrupted her thoughts. Wen told the girl that her brother Feng was going to beat up a couple of people, which surprised Peng since her friend had just called Liu Feng her brother. She replied that it didn't matter now because if they didn't hurry, they would miss an interesting picture, and she began to run, grabbing Pan's hand. Students crowded outside the Sanda Club and loudly began to support Liu Feng, who was not afraid and still showed up to fight one-on-one with Zixuan. The main character began to wave to everyone present, thanking them for coming to support him. The guy told Zikia not to worry when she worriedly asked Liu if everything would be okay. Liu Feng asked his girlfriends to stay here while he went to the ring and fought his opponent alone. Suddenly, muscular guys in boxing gear jumped out of the hall and immediately attacked our hero, trying to simultaneously kick him. Brother Feng managed to dodge. He quickly grabbed his girlfriends in his arms and jumped up, avoiding the attack of the unknown people. The guy got angry because he agreed to a fair fight in the ring, but instead he was attacked by 2 people at once at the entrance to the hall. The 4 big guys began to explain that in order to fight the club president, the guy first had to demonstrate his strength in a fight with them. Liu Feng laughed when he learned that they just wanted to test his qualifications and asked if he would be as good as their president if he beat the 4 of them. While the girls stood behind, the hero loudly declared that he was going to beat the guys with just one hand, and immediately put his fist forward. The students watched as Liu Feng scolded his opponents for how their movements were too clumsy, and he easily dodged their blows. While jumping, he punched his opponent in the face, repeating that they were moving too slowly. The guy who missed the blow fell unconscious to the ground. Liu Feng apologized to him because he didn't know that he was so weak. The other 3 were still firmly on their feet. Liu Feng's insults offended them, and they decided to show where he belonged. Dealing with the muscular boxers was not a problem for our protagonist. He dealt a crushing blow to the guys in the air. Those, despite their strong physique and experience, could not fend off Liu Feng's attack, so the battle immediately ended. The students were amazed at how Brother Feng managed to knock out 3 of them with just one punch as the hero and his girlfriends headed into the hall. Already inside the club, the guy heard a call to fight with a new batch of fighters who believed that defeating 4 newcomers is not an achievement. More experienced students warned the protagonist that after the fight with them, Liu Feng would definitely no longer be able to stand on his feet. Smirking, Liu Feng came to the conclusion that the Sanda Club was made up of scum if they couldn't honestly hold a fight that they themselves had organized. The tough guys told the hero to shut up because their club has its own pride and Feng shouldn't blame them for bad deeds because he himself boasted. Making a pretty expression on his face, Liu Feng asked when he was boasting, to which they began to shout at him so that he would not behave so innocently. Zikia felt guilty because she was the one who spread the rumors on the forum that Brand Fang would come and defeat the entire Sanda Club, and Wen tried to cheer her up. With a smile on his face, our hero said that he came here to kick their asses so they won't recognize themselves the next time they look in the mirror. Threatening that Liu Feng would be finished, the Sanda Club fighters attacked the protagonist with their fists. The club leader did not allow this fight to happen. He came up from behind and told his subordinates that they were not equal opponents to Liu Feng, even if they attacked all together. Zixuan handed our hero boxing gloves, saying that in the Sanda Club you need to fight according to the rules, to which Liu replied that he just wanted to limit him. The blonde asked if he dared to engage in battle. The club leader was confident in his abilities because he had observed Liu Feng's movements and knew his tactics. The main character told his opponent that he was quite smart, but his intelligence and rules were nothing against absolute strength. Wade Zixuan asked Feng to stop talking nonsense and insisted that he put on boxing gloves and follow the rules. Our hero listened to the blonde and nevertheless put on gloves and then declared his readiness to start the fight. Club leaders Sanda and Liu Feng immediately began to fight, starting to attack each other with kicks and fists. Feng started yelling for the blonde to show what he could do when the club leader started using kicks. Zixuan persistently attacked our hero using various techniques, and then began to ask Liu Feng to hit back at least once while he defended himself. The blonde was amazed when the guy unexpectedly used a technique against him that few people knew. Feng began to lecture the puzzled Zixuan, saying that he had not perfected the Bai Yuan Tong Bei move and needed more practice. Calling on the enemy to look at how to do it, the main character began to demonstrate various techniques. The head of the Sanda Club was discouraged and scared. He did not believe his eyes, because behind Liu Feng he saw the silhouettes of various animals. Confident Liu Feng continued to skillfully demonstrate various martial arts techniques to his opponent in the ring. In response, Zixuan could only stand still, wondering if he had run into a master, because the enemy showed extraordinary skill. At that moment, the fight was suddenly interrupted. Someone in the hall shouted for everyone to remain in their places because the police had arrived. The club leader's face turned red with fear and tension, and he froze when Liu Feng almost punched him in the face. The men in police uniforms ordered everyone present to make way because they had arrived to arrest Liu Feng, who was accused of murder. The unexpected appearance of law enforcement forces did not bother our hero at all. He simply introduced himself and asked how he could help. The stern policeman pulled out the handcuffs and ordered Liu Feng to follow them to the police station. The guy broke free when they tried to handcuff him, asking if it was possible to arrest an innocent person. Yang Shaiwen was very angry, telling the police that they couldn't detain a person without showing any evidence. Peng Zikia and the rest of our hero's classmates also began to fiercely defend him, demanding proof from law enforcement officers. The policeman replied to those present that Liu Feng publicly harmed Lu Hao yesterday, and there were many witnesses to this. Liu Feng did not contradict the police and agreed to go with them, apologizing to Zixuan that the fight would now have to be postponed to another day. Ms. Yang immediately ran towards her guard, shouting that she would go to the police station with him. The guy replied that she didn't have to go with him, because she could get psychologically traumatized by what she saw later, but the girl stood her ground. Liu Feng was arrested and several police cars headed to the station to charge our hero. Peng Juki also followed the cars, sitting behind the wheel of her car, and wondered why the police were going to the suburbs. Shiwen noticed that Jiaki was following them and told Feng about this, but he did not pay attention to her because he was concentrating on the screen of his phone. He corresponded with a girl who arrived in China with the Ghost King, and then received an order from the guy to establish his coordinates and save him. A plump policeman sitting next to him tried to take Feng's smartphone away, saying that he was forbidden to use the phone. However, our hero did not listen to the law enforcement officer and boldly hit him in the jaw with his elbow. The guy said displeasedly that he had already agreed to go with them, the fake policeman, but now they were also trying to steal his things. Wen did not understand what was happening, and Feng explained to her that he immediately realized that the police were not real, since China did not use model 0537 handcuffs. The fake policeman sitting in front laughed and recognized Liu Feng's talent, because these handcuffs differ only in the length of the chain. The man said that all this did not matter, because they had already taken the guy to the most suitable place for the murder, an isolated place where there were no cars. Shiwen was shocked by what was happening, but the hero remained calm and began to joke that he would also choose such a place for murder. Pulling out a pistol, the plump man began to threaten Liu Feng that he would kill him right now for daring to hit him. The fat man was unable to make a shot because the hero grabbed his hand and in one movement broke it in half, and the weapon jumped out of his palm. Afterwards, Liu Feng grabbed the gun by the barrel and hit the man in the face with the butt, causing his cap to even fly off his head. The second fake policeman also pulled out a gun and ordered the driver to stop, saying that Liu Feng had taken the weapon. The driver immediately followed his partner's order and turned the steering wheel to pull over to the side of the road and stop the car. Men in police uniforms got out of the car and pointed a gun at Liu Feng, ordering him to leave the car as well. The second car also stopped behind, and 4 fake policemen got out, also pointing guns at our hero. Liu Feng told his friend that he had warned her not to follow him, and the girl was very scared, believing that now the prediction about her short life would definitely come true. Holding the plump man by the shirt, the guy got out of the car and said that Wenwen shouldn't be afraid of anything because she's with him. Pointing a gun at Leo, the man began shouting that the bullet would now smash his head because he dared to beat his brother. Our hero remained optimistic and warned the fake police officers to be careful because everyone who pointed a gun at him would eventually die. Liu Feng's threats did not frighten the man. He called on the guy to kill him since he now has such an opportunity, not believing in the superiority of our hero. The main character smiled slyly and decided to fulfill the man's request by snapping his fingers. At this moment, this fake policeman's eyes widened and a grimace of pain and horror appeared on his face. Suddenly, someone shot a man in a police uniform in the head, causing him to immediately drop his weapon and be killed. The second man, being on guard, continued to point his weapon at Liu Feng, shouting to the others that there was a sniper there. The guy called these lying cops idiots if they think they can pretend to be law enforcement officers and the guy can't get help. The men were shocked by the realization that Liu Feng was not alone. And somewhere nearby, there were snipers sitting in ambush who would now deal with them. When asked who he was, our hero replied that now is the time for them to answer questions. And if they do not do this, they will die immediately. The guy's insolence greatly angered one of his enemies. He shouted that he would kill Feng and then answer the questions of his ghost. Liu Feng said that he wanted these men to live longer, but their behavior made them killed immediately, and then added that he could see from their skills that they were soldiers. The surviving fake policemen felt fear of the guy and behaved modestly. They admitted that they were members of NUC and were undergoing military training. One of the police officers admitted that they worked as mercenaries in Southeast Asia and then became Liu Hao's bodyguards. The protagonist continued to interrogate the deceitful police officers, asking them what position Liu Hao occupied in the capital's Liu family. The guy in the police uniform immediately reported to Feng that Liu Hao was the 4th master in the 3rd generation of the Liu family and owned the smallest share of the wealth. Afterwards, Liu Feng asked how the other 3 masters of the capital's Liu family were doing. The 3rd master, named Liu Tian, was nicknamed the most foppish. He is famous for his cruelty and is ready to put a bullet in the forehead of anyone who offends him. The 2nd young master's name is Liu Tian. He has a business-like style and a strict, cold character, and works in government agencies. Then a young guy in a police uniform mentioned the 1st master, Liu Yan, the man our main character wants to take revenge on. The guy said that Liu Yan underwent military training as a child, practices martial arts and is highly intelligent, and works in intelligence. Liu Feng's questions did not end there, and he asked the men who was the leader in the capital's Liu family now. The leader and grand old master of the Liu family is Wen Yang. He is a major figure in the city and a great authority, although he is now retired. Liu pointed a gun at the guy. He got scared and began to beg not to kill him. In response, our hero asked to betray Liu's family in exchange for saving his life. The guy in the police uniform was terrified, so he immediately agreed to betray the Liu family rather than be killed. The man's words did not convince Liu Feng, since he hates people who can betray so easily, so he immediately fired a shot at the guy's head, and it shattered like a watermelon. When asked why Liu Hao came to Donghai, another man said with a trembling voice that it was because of a conflict with the Lin family. Brother Feng became thoughtful when he learned that Hao had to flee the capital because he stabbed a young master from the Lin family. Suddenly, one of the fake policemen, shouting "Die," pointed a gun at our hero and wanted to fire a shot. However, Liu Feng's snipers did not allow him to do this and immediately shot the man with a rifle. His lifeless body fell to the ground in front of Liu, and the other men raised their hands in the air to be spared. Next, Liu asked where Liu Hao was now, to which he was immediately told that the guy was in the 4th hospital, the 3rd therapeutic department. Brother Feng asked Ms. Yang why she got into the car again, to which she replied that she would never eat tofu again after such a sickening scene. Young Shiwen didn't understand what her bodyguard was up to when he stretched out his arms to pull her out of the car. She was speechless with surprise when the guy picked her up by the waist and said that he would carry her himself since she couldn't get out of the car. The surviving fake policeman couldn't believe that Liu Feng had left them alive, and the second one said that in the future they would need to avenge their murdered brothers. Suddenly, a blonde woman jumped into the conversation and asked the men if they really thought they would survive since her boss was gone. Hearing the stranger's voice, the guys in police uniforms turned around, not understanding who she was. In addition to the girl with blonde hair, they saw a tall and muscular man with long hair holding a gun in his hands. The blonde crossed her arms and asked the fake police officers to let her see them all die in this place today. Seeing the sign of the underground underworld, the men were shocked because, according to rumors, everyone who encounters it disappears forever. The fake policeman knelt down in front of the blonde girl and began to beg her for mercy, agreeing to join the criminal world. His face contorted in pain when suddenly the blonde placed her foot on his head. The man fell to the ground, unconscious, while the girl pinned his head with her foot, asking if they really thought they deserved to be part of the underworld. The big guy dashed the guy's hopes by saying that their fate was sealed when they pointed a gun at his boss. The guys in police uniforms were amazed when they learned that Liu Feng was Lord Hades, the man in charge of the entire underworld. Smirking, the blonde said that she was sorry that they found out about it so late, and then told the Phantom to quickly sort this out because the real police would arrive soon. The ghost clenched his hand into a fist and enthusiastically agreed to fulfill Irene's request, asking her to leave it to him. These were the last moments of the lives of the men in police uniform who survived the confrontation with Liu Feng. Meanwhile, our hero and his girlfriends were sitting in a cafe, when complaining about seeing something so terrible in such close proximity. While drinking hot tea, the girl recalled with disgust the moment when she saw Liu Feng shoot a man so that his brain flew out. Peng Ziqie looked at the protagonist and said that she had also witnessed this scene, concluding that many had died today. Before Peng could finish speaking, he had to shut up because then Liu Feng pulled out a long needle and leaned it against the girl's temple. Shiwen was shocked, not understanding what Brother Feng had just done to her classmate. Peng fell asleep instantly, and Liu explained that with the needle he had only erased part of her memories of the day so that she would not have bad memories of the university. Frightened, Wenwen warned that there was no need to erase her memory, to which Feng replied that he would not do this because she was different. The guy explained that as the daughter of the richest man in the East China Sea, she would still have to face similar scenes. Wenwen asked if he wanted to scare her or give her a compliment, to which the guy replied that she was a very unusual girl. Shiwen wanted to know more about her new guard and asked him to tell her at least some of his secrets. The main character carefully patted Mrs. Yang on the head and said that he could not have any secrets. At first, this confused the girl, but then he got angry and asked the bully to stop touching her head. Madame Yang demanded not to think of her as a fool, because the guy must have another identity since snipers, his assistants, suddenly appeared today. Liu Feng did not tell his secret so easily, answering that it would be better for Wenwen if she did not know some things. The student's conversation was interrupted when the protagonist's phone vibrated on the table. The blonde Irene was calling him. Picking up the phone, the guy immediately heard a scream from there. Irene asked her boss if he missed the girl. Wenwen's mood worsened when her friend said over the phone that of course he missed Irene, and then asked if she had completed the task. The girl even climbed onto the table to eavesdrop on the conversation when Irene said that she even managed to stop by the hospital and learn something interesting from Lu Hao. The blonde said that Lu Hao was in cahoots with Sun Chengfeng to deal with Liu Feng, and also tried to poison the girl whom our main character protects. Brother Feng was shocked when he heard that Lu Hao was somehow involved in poisoning Lady Yang. Irene continued that Lu Hao came to the city to demolish Ding Sheng Group and even contacted some Dr. Shu to poison Wenwen. Shiwen remembered that Dr. Shi was one of the specialists who assessed her condition, and the guy replied that her dad had been watching them for a long time. However, the hero does not believe that only Dr. Shi is involved in the poisoning of his girlfriend, because making such poison requires great skill. The conversation between Mrs. Yang and Liu Feng was interrupted when the girl unexpectedly received a call from an unfamiliar number. Worried, Wenwen screamed throughout the cafe when she heard the bad news over the phone that something had happened to her father. Shiwen cried and explained to Liu that her dad was now in critical condition in the hospital due to poisoning and could only live for half an hour. Our young hero immediately wiped the girl's tears and told her to come with him to sort everything out. It was already evening in the city of Donghai. The action took place in the local hospital, where brother Yang Ding was lying with poisoning. The heroes managed to rush to the hospital in 15 minutes. The Yang family's bodyguards greeted both of them and said that they were counting on Liu Feng's help. Worried, Yang Shiwen approached the guard named Uncle Dong and asked him what condition her father was in now. In the corridor of the hospital, the rhythmic clicking of heels suddenly became audible, and a woman approached the heroes. The brunette told Shiwen that she would go with him to his father alone, since even the best doctors could not help him, and she did not want him to be tortured anymore. Young Shiwen reacted extremely negatively to the woman's statement, pushing her and telling her to get out of the way. She started yelling at Aunt Ma that she should be the one waiting outside because she knew what she had done, and added that Liu Feng would go with her since he was not a stranger. Ma Xiaoyun looked at our hero angrily and forbade him to enter, and he looked at her, remembering that it was she who put the bug in Shiwen's pillow. The aunt made a pitiful face and said that this is only their family's business, and her brother only has 15 minutes to live, so she doesn't want the guy to bother him. One of the bodyguards supported Ms. Ma, saying that Liu Feng should really wait outside. The requests of Aunt Ma and her guard did not affect our hero. He stood on the fact that he could save Brother Ding, and he was not an outsider. The rest of the guards decided to come to Liu's defense and began shouting that he was not an outsider and was even the boss's future son-in-law, and Aunt Ma was an outsider in the family. Explaining his words about his son-in-law, the guard told Liu Feng that they saw the guy's car shaking one night, and they concluded that there was something between them. Madame Ma stood her ground with furrowed brows, arguing that even in this case, Liu Feng could not go to Brother Ding. The hero said that she should not stop him if she wanted him to survive, to which the woman replied that she loved him, so she would not allow anyone to bother him in the last minutes of his life. Feng was pretty tired of Aunt Ma's stubbornness, so he shouted at her and raised his hand to hit her and get her out of his way. The main character became wary when he saw that after a strong blow, the woman did not even fly to the side. When Ma Xiaoyun took a fighting stance and looked at our hero with a predatory gaze, he realized that she was a martial artist. Her guards also attacked Liu with their fists, shouting how dare he attack Chairman Ma, and that even Lady Yang could not save him now. Unlike Ma Xiaoyun, her bodyguards were not masters. Therefore, Liu Feng dealt with the strong men in suits with one blow. He ordered the Yang family's personal guard not to let anyone into the ward while he treated Ding, especially Madame Ma. The woman turned to Dong and Bin and asked if they would really kill her if she tried to go into her brother's room. The guards listened to Liu Feng's request and sternly told Madame Ma that she had better not move. Ma Xiaoyun immediately became gloomy. The words of the bodyguards deeply upset her, and she stood silently. Lowering her head down, she agreed with them and did not go to Ms. Yang's room just yet. Shiwen knelt in front of her dying father, holding his hand, while Liu Feng ran to him to begin treatment as soon as possible. The guy immediately pulled out a long needle and pierced a point in the area of the man's foot, which caused blood to flow from there. The doctors were concerned about the hero's actions. They told him to stop it and let them do their job. The doctors were surprised when Feng ordered them to step aside and let him continue his treatment, since he is the Yang family's personal physician. A tearful Shiwen began to bother her friend, asking if there was still a chance that her dad could be saved. Liu Feng was confident in his abilities and remained optimistic, repeating to Wen that the people he wanted to save could not be killed even by the Hell Reaper. Our protagonist immediately began the treatment, taking out a long strip of cloth while Brother Dean was still lying unconscious on the cot. The doctor was angry, still disapproving of Feng's actions, because the poison had destroyed all of Mr. Yang's internal organs, and acupuncture would only hasten the man's death. Having prepared a few more needles, the guy replied that he knew better what the patient's condition was now, so he didn't need their comments. The doctors were in a stupor when the girl approached them and asked them not to bother Liu Feng and let him do his business. Young Shiwen clasped her hands together and watched everything that was happening closely. She was very nervous about her father. Liu Feng continued the acupuncture procedure, inserting long needles into specific points on the dying man's body. The guy did it very quickly. His hands moved at lightning speed. More and more needles appeared on Mr. Yang's skin. The main character inserted as many as 4 needles into the head area of Dean's brother, but he was still lying in his bed completely unconscious. Shiwen was happy when she saw that her dad was much better, although he was still sleeping, to which the guy replied that his condition was indeed stabilizing. The man in the white robe screamed when he saw on the monitor that Mr. Yang's heart had stopped. He furiously yelled at Liu Feng, accusing him of killing Brother Ding, and now because of him, the doctors would be in trouble with the family's relatives. Shiwen cried again, asking Brother Feng if her father would survive. But the main character remained calm and smiled softly, confident in his strength and abilities. He looked at the girl with a smile and repeated that even death could not take away the person he intended to save. He put his palm on Shaiwen's face and asked her to calm down, because his dad's cardiac arrest was only temporary. The hero turned to the patient again and with a deft movement of his hand inserted a long needle into the area of the man's heart. The ECG monitor showed that Mr. Yang's heart was beating steadily again, and he was still alive. The doctors were stunned by what was happening. They could not believe their eyes, because Liu Feng had just managed to resurrect the dead. Soon, Brother Dean opened his eyes and came to his senses. The first thing he said in a trembling voice was his daughter's name. Mrs. Yang immediately hugged her father, who began to complain about how heavy she was. Liu Feng turned to the doctors and said that they did a great job and saved the patient, asking them not to mention anywhere that the guy helped them. The doctors blushed and giggled, saying that it was very awkward to receive praise from such a talented healer as our hero. Brother Feng then approached Yang and said that he needed him to cooperate with him, to which Dean asked what was required of him. Yang and his daughter looked at each other when Liu Feng made an unexpected request that the man would need to pretend to be dead for a while. Mr. Yang accepted Liu Feng's proposal with a smile and immediately agreed, saying that our hero can do whatever he needs. The main character left the room and, feigning grief, began to say that he did not have time because the man's heart was affected by poison, and all his internal organs were very weakened. The Yang family's bodyguards were stupefied by what they heard, and they looked at Liu Feng with their mouths open. Mrs. Ma started shouting that she was right, that she shouldn't have let Feng in, and asked him not to brag about his abilities anymore in the future. Despite the death of her brother, Ma was in high spirits, and then her subordinates invited her to the office, because now she has a lot to worry about, and she must lead the company. The woman began to feign sorrow for her brother, telling him that he should not worry in heaven, because Dongsheng Group has someone who will take care of the company. Ma Xiaoyun added that at the peak of its prosperity, the company cannot remain without a chairman, and many partners ask her to lead the company, so she will be the one to do it. Liu Feng turned to the woman, asking if she was going to take care of her guards that he had just beaten. Mrs. Ma ignored her bodyguards and, as she left, told the guy that he could do whatever he wanted with them because now she didn't need them. Dong was furious. He shouted to the woman that Mr. Yang had been kind to her from the very first day of their acquaintance, and he was treating him so meanly. Ma Xiaoyun turned around after hearing the voice of her deceased brother and was shocked when she saw Mr. Yang safe and sound in front of her. The Yang family's bodyguards shouted at him, not believing their eyes that he was alive, and Brother Ding looked at his beloved with disappointment in his eyes. Ma began to furiously scream at our hero, accusing him of lying because earlier he had said that Dean's internal organs were too weak and he could not survive. Feng was proud of himself, saying that in fact before his arrival, Brother Yang was practically dead, but his phenomenal abilities helped bring the man back from the other world. Upset that Mr. Yang was alive, Ma Xiaoyun asked Liu again if he had brought the man back from the other world. In anger, she began to scream at him that she would kill Dean over and over again until Liu Feng would one day be able to help him anymore. Liu asked Yang how he could get involved in such a relationship, to which he said that he guessed that she could poison him, but still fell into the woman's trap. Mr. Yang began to get angry at Aunt Ma, shouting that she failed the last chance, and now he intends to return everything he gave her. Shiwen spoke up, saying that she knew that Ma was a bad woman, and that she was unworthy of her dad. Suddenly, those who had been on the woman's side before approached Mr. Yang with a fake smile and said that they were very glad that he had recovered. The man's bodyguards immediately ordered the two to stop and not approach Dean, otherwise they should not be accused of rudeness. Our protagonist looked at the men who changed their minds so quickly and called them a bunch of idiots. When leaving, Ma Xiaoyun warned Liu Feng that she would not leave it just like that and would kill everyone who prevented her from achieving her goal. The guy wanted to attack her with his fists, but Yang immediately stopped him, asking him not to do this because she was just a woman. The chairman's words greatly angered our hero. He looked sideways at him and asked again, believing that Ma was not just a woman. Liu told Brother Ding that women are the most evil creatures, not believing that he could become the richest man with such an attitude, and then said that he needed to return to Pengjaki. Finally, Brother Feng decided to spare the previously beaten guards, repeating Ma's words that they would have to choose how to live in the future. One of the guards explained to the hero that Ma was not easy to deal with, because she was helped not only by bodyguards, but by another secret assistant who reported to her everything that was happening. The guy wondered who this person was who was Mrs. Ma's 6, and then he cursed and gritted his teeth in anger when he realized. The main character immediately ran out of the hospital and headed somewhere, swearing along the way and blaming himself for being stupid. He approached the car, the door of which was open. There was no one inside, and the guy felt the seat, concluding that the girl had been taken recently since it was still warm. While driving, Fung mentally turned to Brother Yang and apologized to him for not being able to just let this woman go. As he pulled out of the parking lot, the guy explained his intention to grab Ma by saying that she had done something she shouldn't have. Meanwhile, Peng Jiaqi was lying on the seat of the car with her hands tied. She did not understand where she was being taken or where she was. Mrs. Ma, who was driving, shouted at Peng not to move and not to blame her, because it was the girl's fault for making bad friends. The woman explained that she did not have the opportunity to kill Liu Feng today, so in order to carry out this plan, she had to kidnap an innocent girl. The frightened Jiaqi, with a trembling voice, tried to find out who she was, to which she received the answer that the woman was the one who would kill her today. Mentally, the fair-haired girl tried to calm herself down, convincing herself that Liu Feng would definitely come and save her. Ma Xiaoyun's car soon arrived at its destination. The car stopped at a mansion built in a traditional Oriental style. The lady was greeted by her subjects dressed in traditional outfits, to whom she immediately gave the order to pull the girl out of the car. The men grabbed Jiaqi and dragged her outside. She began screaming at them, urging them to let them go, and did not understand who they were. Ma shouted that Peng had better shut up, because the woman was supposed to take over Ding Sheng Group, and the company's land in Saudi Arabia would go to the Yakuza. Peng Jiaqi fell to the floor when the woman became very angry because her plans to take over the company were ruined because of the girl's friend. Crossing her arms over her chest, the brunette screamed that everything had gone to pieces because of our main character. Hearing his name, Peng's heart filled with hope that Brother Feng would still come and save her from being killed by Lady Ma. Xiaoyun advised the girl not to count on this guy, since she only left when Liu left the parking lot, thereby confusing her tracks. Jiaqi called Brother Feng with sadness in her eyes, and Madame Mai was in high spirits, imagining how Liu was now wandering somewhere. The woman added that her people were real Yakuza samurai, so even if the guy came here, he would certainly die. Aunt Ma greatly delighted her subordinates, saying that Peng Jiaqi now completely belongs to them, because they had not had contact with women for 6 months. Finally, Ma Xiaoyun said that the girl could still be useful and followed into the house. She left Peng in the yard alone with cruel men. The girl was tied up, so she could not help herself. She asked them not to touch her. The samurai looked at the helpless Jiaqi with hungry eyes, like wolves, and approached her, asking her to kiss them. The men were about to touch her when the girl began to resist to the last, shouting that Brother Feng would definitely not forgive them if they did this. The men were taken aback and turned their attention when they heard a voice repeating that it seemed that they no longer needed their hands. These words were spoken by our main character, who stood on the roof of the mansion, observing the ongoing situation from top to bottom. Peng Jiaqi was very happy when she realized that Brother Feng had finally come to save her. Liu Feng jumped from the roof of the building and in one movement was able to hit 2 men at once who tried to attack his girlfriend. The fight was short, and after a moment, the big guys working for Aunt Ma fell to the ground in an unconscious state. Ma Xiaoyun, dressed in armor, came out into the courtyard. She said that she did not expect to see our hero here so soon, and understood what he was up to. Liu praised Ma and said that she was not so stupid, but still the guy is smarter, because the woman brought him to her hideout and revealed her true identity. The woman replied that there was nothing wrong with revealing her true identity, because Liu Feng would soon become a dead man. The situation became tense, so the guy asked the frightened Zekia to leave and wait for him in the car. Urging Liu Feng to accept his death, the samurai jumped from the roof, katanas in hand, to attack the protagonist. The men skillfully wielded bladed weapons, trying to strike, but Liu Feng was much faster and deftly dodged them. The second samurai also entered the fight. He tried to attack Liu Feng, but the guy's movements were so fast that they left only streaks of light in the air. The hero managed to deceive the attackers and run out behind them without them even noticing at first. The guy had a sharp knife in his hand. Brother Feng approached Ma Xiaoyun and said that her Yakuza fighters were too weak, asking if there was anyone else who could come to her aid. Ma, seeing Liu Feng's skills, tried to lure him to her side, saying that she would pay the guy much more than the Yang family did. Liu Feng picked his ear and indifferently replied to his interlocutor that her proposal sounded good, but he was not at all interested in it. This angered Lady Ma, and she decided to engage our hero in battle, drawing her long, sharp sword from its sheath. The woman attacked the guy, holding the sword with both hands, shouting that in this case Liu Feng could go to hell. The hero was able to stop the tip of the sword right in his face. The weapon got stuck between his fingers. The guy said that he does not like to hit women, but now he will have to do differently. The guy's words made Mao Xiaoyun even more angry. She started screaming at him to stop talking such crap and tried to hit him with the sword again. The woman was confused when her opponent was again able to block her attack without much effort. Liu Feng prevented the woman from wielding her weapon using only 2 of his fingers, which made Ma Xiaoyun stupefied. She asked what he was doing, calling him a scoundrel, which puzzled the guy, so he replied that they were just fighting for their lives. The main character pressed his body against Ms. Ma, causing her to start screaming loudly, suspecting that the guy was trying to seduce her. Both were terrified when they suddenly began to lose their balance, Auntie Ma screaming for the guy to get away from her. Suddenly, the opponents fell to the ground. Liu Feng was on top, and by chance the woman and our hero kissed. The guy was horrified when this happened. He immediately stood up and began brushing his teeth with rage on his face after accidentally kissing Ma Xiaoyun. The woman blushed with embarrassment. She was furious, so she began to threaten the young man that she would kill him right away. Ma Xiaoyun put out her hand, and her melee weapon was pulled towards her like a magnet. The woman used her telekinesis skills for this. Grabbing the katana, she looked straight into the eyes of our hero with anger in her face and threatened him that now he would pay for everything he had done to her. The protagonist's eyes widened, and he gritted his teeth in fear when he saw that Ma Xiaoyun had such strong skills. The woman tried to hit the guy with a bladed weapon, but he blocked her blow with a knife, saying with a chuckle that she wasn't the only one who carried a knife. Ma was shocked and didn't understand what was happening when she realized that her opponent's melee skills were better than hers. The main character easily counterattacked his opponent, causing her to fly back several meters. Fang broke the woman's knife, and she was very upset since this was the weapon of the first female ninja, which her father gave him, and she did not think that the Chinese could break it. Ma Xiaoyun threatened the guy that the next time she saw him, she would definitely turn his life into a nightmare. Realizing that their strength was unequal, the girl began to run away, but Liu Feng did not intend to let her go, so he began to shout after her. Several guards in formal suits came to Ma's defense and pointed pistols at our hero. Luckily, they didn't have time to fire a shot, as the guy immediately neutralized them by shooting long needles into their foreheads from a distance. Worried, Brother Feng began to run around the mansion, wondering where Ma Xiaoyun had gone. He gritted his teeth in anger and began to run faster when the realization appeared in his head that Ma was most likely going to harm his friend Jackie. The white car parked outside Mrs. Ma's house where Peng Jackie was hiding was now turbulent. Ma Xiaoyun entered the car and started pestering the girl, who shouted at the woman to stop. When the protagonist ran outside to save Jackie, he saw that Aunt Ma had already gotten out of the car. The guy prepared a few more long needles and asked Ma if she thought she could easily escape from him. The needles hit the woman's shoulder, and she replied to the hero that, of course, she would not be able to escape if he continued to pursue her like this. She told Feng that his friend was poisoned with the same poison as Yan Ding, and in a 5-fold dose, so he would need to save her within 3 minutes. Liu Feng was furious at the woman's actions, but he had to let her escape since rescuing Peng Jackie was the priority now. The girl already felt bad after Ma Xiaoyun's manipulations, which she reported to Brother Feng in a quiet voice. When asked what the woman did to her, Jackie replied that she injected something into her body with a syringe. When Feng asked where the injection was made, the girl became very embarrassed and replied that the poison was injected into her buttock. The main character was stunned when he heard the words of his girlfriend, because now he will have to insert needles there for healing. The girl lay down on the ground so that the young man could begin the treatment. He asked her to be patient, because it would be painful, and Jackie at first wanted to dissuade him, because she was afraid of pain. Peng Jackie began to scream loudly in pain as the protagonist began inserting 8-inch golden needles into her stomach. The girl began to worry even more, believing that she would soon die, because now she felt a sharp pain in her stomach and whole body. The hero assures his friend that she will not die, but Ma Xiaoyun injected her with too much poison, so detoxification will be required. Grabbing the girl in his arms, he warned her that the treatment might be awkward because Peng would have to take off her skirt for the procedure. Peng Jackie was dumbfounded and very embarrassed because she didn't want to take off her skirt in front of the guy to cure her. After some time, the action was already taking place near the gates of Donghai University of Science and Technology. Liu Feng and her friend were sitting in the car. Peng thanked her friend for saving her, but asked her to keep today's incident a secret. The guy winked at his classmate and joked with her, asking what incident he was talking about. The girl was very embarrassed, because of which she could not look into the young man's eyes. She replied that he himself knew very well what incident she was talking about. The heroes got out of the car and the guy reassured his friend, telling her not to worry, and Brother Feng knows how to behave. The students were surprised when they saw Liu Feng, as the police announced the arrest of the guy, and the university management issued a decree expelling him from the educational institution. Our hero walked closer to the guy who was gossiping about Liu Feng's expulsion and asked him what he was talking about. In fear of Liu Feng, the student answered with a trembling voice that he had just seen the order from the academic office that the main character was expelled from the university. Brother Feng was angry because he didn't want to be expelled, so he threatened Tang Chengyu, the head of the higher education institution, that she would soon lose her job. The guy began to leave, finally telling Pan that she was still too weak, so she should return to the dorm to rest. Peng Jiaqi looked after the main character with loving eyes and repeated his name. Her cheeks were pink with embarrassment. Standing in front of a poster with a photo of our hero, the burly basketball player shouted to the surrounding students that Liu Feng had finally gotten what he deserved. The big man grinned and was pleased with the way things had turned out, mentally thanking his aunt for being able to eliminate Liu Feng so quickly. The student continued to turn the rest of the students against Brother Feng, saying that he would not have been arrested if he had not done many bad things in the past. Liu Feng quietly inserted himself into the conversation, played along with Brother Du, and said that Liu Feng probably broke into houses, engaged in theft and arson, with which the big man agreed. The hero came closer and reproached Du for lying, that he did not like to talk about people behind their backs. The student noticed that our hero was standing in front of him and began to make excuses. Brother Feng crossed his arms over his chest and in a calm tone asked the basketball player to first take down the poster with his photo. The tall, muscular student immediately began to fulfill Brother Feng's request, ran up to the poster, and began taking down the guy's photo. He rolled up Liu Feng's photo, walked up to the main character, and with a smile on his face began to ask him if everything was fine now. Our hero winked at Wen and gave her the poster, saying that he didn't like the look of this notice board because it was too ugly. Brother Du was angry when he realized that Liu Feng wanted to ask him to break the education department notice board, otherwise he would be in trouble. Accepting that he had no other choice, the basketball player crushed the notice board with one kick and it shattered into pieces, but in his thoughts he cursed Liu Feng for this. He turned to Liu Feng and smiled at him again, trying to woo him, and then asked if he was pleased with his behavior. The main character began to joke with Du, saying that he did not understand why he should be happy if it was the student himself who wanted to break this board. Liu Feng told the guy that he said that he just didn't like this board, but he didn't ask anyone to break it. Brother Du was furious. He clenched his hand into a fist and started shouting at our hero, asking how he dared to deceive him. With one blow, the young man made the careless basketball player fly into the air, and he began to scream heart-rendingly throughout the yard because of the pain. The student fell to the ground, hitting the floor with the ceiling, and then asked Liu Feng why he beat him again. The hero pinned the student to the ground, placing his foot on his face, and began screaming as he had the nerve to ask why Feng hit him. The big man Du glanced sideways at the guy, gritting his teeth in anger and pain, wondering if Liu Feng had already guessed everything. Liu Feng grabbed the guy by the legs, using a painful technique. He wanted to take revenge on him for making such a joke with the hero. And Du, flushed with pain, began to beg for mercy and ask for forgiveness. The fight was stopped by a blonde woman who told Liu Feng to stop and asked how he dared to come back here if he had already been expelled. Brother Feng realized that the head of the Department of Education, Tang Chengyu, was standing in front of him and told her that he wanted to ask why he was expelled from the university. The crying Brother Du began to shake his aunt's hand to help him, and Tang explained to Liu Feng that he was expelled for being arrested and bullying his classmates. An elderly man with glasses chimed in and said that Donghai University of Science and Technology had no place for students like Liu Feng. Our hero drew attention to this man and, with a cheeky smile on his face, asked him who he was. The old fat man introduced himself as the vice rector of the university named Zhang Xinjian, and then said that he had signed a decree expelling Liu Feng. In response, Liu Feng asked if the vice chancellor really thought that he could be expelled just because a man signed a decree to that effect. The vice rector of Donghai University got angry and started shouting at the guy that he had the right to expel him and was going to do it, to which the guy replied that Zhang's wish would be fulfilled. Liu Feng immediately called someone, saying that he was currently studying at Donghai University of Science and Technology and was about to be expelled, and asked to solve this problem within an hour. The guy removed the phone from his ear when loud questions began to pour in about how Liu Feng could survive if he was declared dead 4 years ago. The hero replied that the interlocutor's department could not know what he had been doing in the West for the last 4 years, and then again asked him to solve the problem with the exception. Tang Chenyu asked Brother Feng to stop pretending, because she had studied him thoroughly and found out that he was just a bodyguard for the Yang family. This was heard by the rest of the students, who immediately began to actively discuss the new news that Liu Feng was Yang Shiwen's bodyguard. Tang Chenyu began to provoke Feng, saying that he would never find a job and would go to prison if he dared to beat her now. The vice-rector of the university also provoked the hero into a fight, saying that as a teacher he should fight people like him, and added that Feng could hit him if he wanted. The elderly man's provocation worked, and the main character immediately dealt a crushing blow to his face, causing him to fly up and blood to flow from his mouth like a fountain. With his arms outstretched, Liu Feng said with a peaceful expression that there are always idiots looking for a fight, but he is not that kind of person. Meanwhile, the vice-chancellor of Donghai University lay unconscious on the floor, his teeth knocked out and his glasses broken. Tang Chenyu was horrified by what happened. She shouted that Liu Feng was crazy for beating the vice-rector of such a prestigious university. The rest of the employees of the higher education institution also stood up for the vice-rector, saying that they would report Liu Feng to the police and he would be arrested. Our hero replied that they could call the police if they wanted, but it would be a shame for Donghai University. After some time, a police car drove into the territory of the educational institution in order to understand the situation. 3 formidable police officers asked those present what happened and who called the law enforcement officers. Tang Chenyu addressed them, saying that she was the dean of the Faculty of Education of Dust, and began to tell the story of what happened. After finishing explaining the situation to the police, the woman looked at Liu Feng menacingly and told the police that they should arrest the guy. The man in the police uniform believed the teacher and asked Liu Feng to go with him to the police station. However, they were unable to arrest the main character, as unfamiliar men in suits intervened in the situation and began shouting that no one dared to detain Liu Feng. Both the dean of the Faculty of Education and the policeman were stunned when they recognized the man in the suit as the city's vice-governor. The dean looked at the vice-governor in fear, and asked Shun Xingxin why he came to their university so unexpectedly. However, Shun ignored the woman and walked up to our hero with a smile to shake his hand in greeting, and Feng replied that he did not expect him to react so quickly. The vice-governor friendly told the guy that he had to work hard to solve the hero's problem in 1 hour on vacation, so the young man would have to treat him to a drink. Brother Feng put his hand on the vice-governor's shoulder, saying that he could order whatever he wanted once they finished their business here. Looking at the university management, who intended to expel our main character from there, Shun announced that he would now get down to business. Xingxin appealed to the vice-rector, saying that he had information that Dust was negligent in the safety of students, and one of them was expelled without a good reason. Zhang Xinjin began to make excuses in a trembling voice that he did not know that the police who arrested Feng earlier were fake. Tang intervened, saying that they had indeed made a mistake, but Liu Feng had been expelled for repeatedly fighting and bullying students, and now the vice principal. Yang Shiwen began to fiercely defend her comrade, explaining that it was Lu Du who first provoked him, and then began to threaten him. The girl approached the vice-governor and asked Uncle Shun to be fair, to which he replied that all those guilty would suffer their punishments. The dean was furious, thinking that she would have been better prepared if she knew about Liu Feng's connections with the vice-governor. Wei Zixuan intervened in the conversation, saying that he would forgive Liu Feng if he joined his club, and even offered him the position of leader. The main character thought about the blonde's proposal, but Tang immediately tried to intervene, shouting that Liu Feng had no right to join the club. The woman was furious, shouting that Dust did not need students who entered through the back door, even if they had not committed any crimes. The dean of the Faculty of Education continued to stand her ground and not back down, because she knows that Liu Feng entered the university only because of his connections. Zhou Yi, director of the National Security Bureau, stood up for our hero, saying that the guy was the best student in the Chinese army and has the right to free study at any university. Hearing this, the students immediately surrounded our hero, admiring that he was the best soldier in China, and the guy replied that it was just a trifle. Zhou Yi told the governor that he had information that the vice-chancellor and the dean had conspired to use school funds for their own purposes, and asked the man to take on the matter. Tang Chenyu fell to her knees and covered her face with her hand when she realized that she had been exposed, and now the woman's career was over. After a while, our hero, Yang Shiwen, Zhou Yi, and Xun Xinxin were sitting in a cafe. The governor thanked the guy for keeping his promise and treating him. Shiwen told the guy that he is a man of his word, but he pays for it, after which the young man began to tease her, saying that she would never find such a good bodyguard as him anywhere else. The lieutenant governor laughed and told the director of national security that he was surprised that someone dared to show his love in front of them. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Vice Governor Xin Xinxin turned around and allowed him to enter. It was the deputy commander of the Donghai Artillery Regiment, Wang Jiming, who invited Liu Feng to join them as a guest. When Liu Feng asked what they needed, the uniformed man replied that their regiment was assigned military training at the Dukenai University of Science and Technology. The heroes were dumbfounded when the military man added that because Liu Feng challenged their soldiers, the regiment commander decided to choose the best one to accept our hero's challenge. Brother Feng showed his finger up and said that he agreed, asking him to tell the regiment commander that the guy would be met at the artillery regiment tomorrow. The military man was about to leave, but the guy stood up and stopped him, asking how the man knew that Liu Feng was here. Zhou Yi was not surprised that Liu Feng was found so easily, because that man would not have been appointed as a regiment commander if he could not find people. The military man, sweating from fear and embarrassment, immediately agreed with the words of the Director of National Security, nodding his head. The main character decided to end the meeting and told Shiwen that it was time for them to go home, and tomorrow he would take the girl for a walk to the artillery regiment. The vice-governor guessed that the idea to send Liu to the regiment belonged to Zhou Yi, to which he asked if Shun had heard about the Heavenly Sword detachment. Shun was alarmed when he heard about the Heavenly Sword because this is the most powerful detachment in China, where only heavenly fighters serve, and asked if they wanted to accept Feng there. Zhou Yi replied that our main character had already served in this unit, namely in its 5th generation. The Director of National Security explained that Liu Feng was the top assassin there, the Abyssal Dragon Sword, and the King of Murder. Zhou continued that the 5th Heavenly Sword Squad was defeated, and the 6th was in limbo all this time, so Feng would be invited there as an instructor. With a wink, the Director of National Security warned his interlocutor that this was absolutely confidential information, so he should remain silent if he did not want to lose his career. The next day, our heroes stood at the entrance to the territory of the artillery regiment, and Shiwen complained that they had not been allowed in for half an hour. The guy said that they would be allowed in a maximum of 5 minutes, to which the girl replied that he should not joke like that because they were in the army, and there was no point in creating problems with violence. Liu Feng turned to one of the soldiers, asking him to tell his boss that the guy was not going to wait any longer, so he should come in person. The soldier angrily shouted at our hero, asking if he considered the army a place where you can come and go at will. The serviceman's cap flew off when, after these words, the main character struck him in the face with his fist. Satisfied with himself, Brother Feng turned around and ordered Shiwen to start the car, because this soldier allegedly allowed them to enter the regiment's territory. The military man tried to attack our hero with his fists. He was angry that Liu Feng allowed himself to ignore him. In response, the main character hit the fist of the soldier guarding the territory of the artillery regiment with his fist. The soldier was in pain. He began to rub his arm and did not understand what happened because he never managed to attack Liu Feng. Young Shiwen showed her finger up and decided to praise her bodyguard, calling him a very strong fighter, albeit a rogue. The unfamiliar soldier decided not to retreat. He attacked the guy, shouting that he had previously served in the Northeast Tigers and now in a secret company and did not intend to lose. Liu Feng again managed to stop the soldier's fist with his hand, and then the guy admitted that he was sent here to test our hero for the position of instructor. The main character was discouraged. He was surprised by the guy's words that the artillery regiment was considering Brother Feng as an instructor. Feng immediately turned around and walked to his car, saying that he had his own business to do and did not want to be their instructor. The soldier did not stop him, but immediately contacted someone through an earpiece hidden in his ear and said that he had met Liu Feng, and he was fighting well. A man soon approached the hero's car and introduced himself as Fan Wei, the commander of an artillery regiment, and Brother Feng began to complain that he did not like the way he was greeted. Fan Wei didn't like the guy's rudeness, and he asked him to get out of the car if he wanted to show his character and prove that he has abilities. Liu Feng looked at the regiment commander with disgust and asked him if he really had the courage to fight our young hero. Fan Wei was stunned when he realized that the future instructor of the 6th generation of the Heavenly Sword Squad was sitting in front of him. The main character was puzzled and did not understand why the military man called him an instructor, which is what he asked the man. The military man's tone immediately changed. He began to smile at the hero, introducing himself as a cadet of the 15th Officer Training Camp. Feng also smiled when he remembered that this man was once his student, and said that he worked hard enough to become a regiment captain, even though he was not very bright before. Placing his palm on his cap, the military man formally addressed the main character and asked him to get out of the car to explain why they invited him here. The guy agreed to fulfill the request of his former student, got out of the car and stood in front of him to continue the conversation. Suddenly, a whole team of soldiers in black uniforms appeared in front of the men, clearly hostile to the heroes. The captain of the regiment was surprised to recognize the Heavenly Sword Squad in these soldiers, and told the hero that they were unhappy when they learned that the guy would be their instructor. Liu Feng explained that there were now 9 fighters in front of them, and at the entrance he was met by the 10th, which corresponds to the 10 famous swords of the Chinese tradition. The Heavenly Sword Fighters began to shout for Liu Feng to get lost, because he was the weakest of them, even though he defeated the 8th, and if this is not the case, then he must prove his strength with his fists. The hero agreed to fight with the guys and teach them a lesson today, but added that he did not want to be their instructor. One of the guys introduced himself as the 6th Abyssal Dragon Sword and stated that he alone would be enough to defeat Liu Feng. The fighter leaped upward and clenched his hands into fists to attack our young hero, shouting that this was the price for insulting the Heavenly Sword. Brother Feng managed to jump back so that the fighter's blow landed on the ground, causing shards of concrete to scatter in different directions. Taking a fighting stance, the main character declared that his opponent was not worthy of the name of the Abyss Dragon, and he should not insult him. The guy again tried to punch Feng, but he failed, and the hero successfully counterattacked the boy. The Heavenly Sword Fighter stood in a stupor when he realized that Liu Feng's skills were not as weak as he previously thought. The rest of the elite soldiers were also amazed by what they saw, because just now Liu Feng managed to evade Lao Qi's crushing blow and even almost kill him. Lao Qi did not give up on this. He urged the enemy not to be so self-confident, and stated that he had not even shown his strength yet. The guy began to strike at our hero, but he stood firmly on his feet with his hands out in front of him. Lao Qi looked at the guy in surprise as he jumped and stuck out his leg to attack the Heavenly Sword Fighter. The main character successfully hit the enemy and he, grouped, flew back several meters, leaving a flaming trail behind him. The rest of the fighters on the sidelines discussed how no one could stand a chance against their Lao Qi, since he is the main killer of the elite squad. After another blow, the guy was completely defeated. His body flew high into the air, and the others discussed how Feng had brought their soldier to this point in just a couple of seconds. Watching our hero's actions, the Heavenly Sword soldiers couldn't believe that Liu Feng had such enormous strength. Lao Qi began to fly down. He was still conscious and did not want to give up. The guy decided to take out a knife and stop showing mercy to the young man. Someone shouted that this was simply impossible when Lao Qi tried to plunge the knife into Brother Feng, and he easily stopped the blade by holding it between his 2 fingers. Our hero managed to snatch the knife from the enemy. At the same time, he simultaneously took out his bladed weapon. Lao Qi, left without a weapon in his hand, tried to escape from Liu Feng by jumping around the square in front of the artillery regiment building. However, a moment later, the boy found himself trapped when our hero pressed the blade of his knife against his neck, sneaking up from behind. The squad member, with the knife still at his throat, asked Feng if that last sword of the Abyssal Dragon was really there, to which he received the answer that it was in the past. The main character said that this guy is not bad, but because of his behavior and skills, he is not worthy of being the Abyssal Dragon Sword. Brother Feng explained that a soldier's duty was to protect the country and only kill enemies, and if Feng had not evaded now, Lao Qi would have taken his life. Then the young hero began to loudly scold the other soldiers, asking why they just stood aside when their comrade just needed help. Liu Feng was very angry with the new generation of the Heavenly Sword Squad. He began to explain to them the criteria by which each member of the squad could leave it. The young man continued, telling them that the first generation of the detachment lasted 3.5 years, the second 7 years, and so on in order. Brother Feng focused on the 5th generation, saying that they fought with a brigade of 10,000 people, destroying more than half of them, and only one of the squad survived. Liu Feng concluded that the fifth generation of the squad managed to complete such a mission because all its members were ready to lend each other a helping hand, unlike these newcomers. One of the guys thanked our hero, saying that he was the weakest of the group, but showed the best results in shooting. He added that he respects his predecessors, but still wants to compete with Liu Feng, to which the hero praised the guy's lack of arrogance and agreed to accept the challenge. The fighter took out a weapon and invited Feng to fight within a radius of 20 meters, each with 8 paintball cartridges. Liu Feng took the gun and loaded it, saying that he hoped his opponent matched the skill level of this place and would not disappoint him. The main character and one of the guys from the squad stood opposite each other with pistols in their hands. Someone started counting down. When the firefight began, the young fighter immediately fired a shot and flew to the side to dodge the enemy's bullet. Liu Feng was grinning because all the shots fired at him were completely missed, and he deftly dodged the bullets. The hero tensed when he realized that his opponent was still a good shot, and the next bullet could have hit his leg if he had not dodged at the last moment. The guy shot at the heavenly sword fighter again. His face was wary, and he was no longer as relaxed as before. He looked at the young man who so deftly dodged Feng's bullets, and thought that he quickly responded and did not even check his location, which indicated good marksmanship skills. Liu Feng again disappeared into the purple smoke trying to hide from the shots, but his opponent, having examined everything around him, found him with lightning speed. While jumping, he started shooting again, trying to hit Liu Feng with paintball bullets. The shootout ended the moment our hero managed to fire the first successful shot, hitting the guy in the shoulder. The rest of the sixth generation began to admire Liu Feng's skills, shouting that he was one step ahead of their team's best marksman. The hero stood and smiled. He was pleased with himself when he listened to the praise from the others about the fact that one of the swords could not cause him any harm at all. Scratching his head, the guy told Brother Feng that he lost, but promised to work hard to try to surpass him. Placing his hand on the young man's shoulder, Liu Feng encouraged him, saying that because of him, he now considers the sixth generation not so mediocre, and the guy needs to make an effort. Putting his hand to his head, the best shooter of the squad loudly asked our hero to become their instructor. The rest of the Heavenly Sword members also expressed respect for Liu Feng, saying that they were convinced of his skills and would like him to train the guys. Each in turn, among which Mo Shi Sword, Clear Sky Sword, and Kun Peng Sword, began to ask the guy to become their instructor. With a sad face, Brother Feng replied that he knew the future of the squad and did not want his disciples to die one by one, so he advised them to simply improve each other's skills. The captain of the artillery regiment was delighted with the young man. He exclaimed that after so many years, the guy was still a good teacher. Shaiwen also admired her bodyguard. She asked him how he managed to survive the battle against 10,000 fighters. When our heroes were returning home, the guy asked Wen if she believed in the legendary masters of China. Brother Feng said that this was impossible when she mentioned the movie craftsman who could stop a bullet with 2 fingers, but added that they could handle a hail of bullets. The heroine doubted that Brother Feng could survive when he was alone with 4,000 fighters, which she told the guy. The guy replied that he could not, but his master could, and it was, according to him, a miracle that cannot be repeated. He began to tell his friend his memories of how he was wounded 7 times, and he already thought that he would die, but suddenly his master appeared. The gray-haired man grabbed him in his arms and found the weak points of the enemies. In 3 hours, he managed to lead the wounded guy to a safe place. Shiwen admired Master Feng, calling him a god, and then said that it was no wonder that her father respected the hero so much. Unexpectedly, the guy mentioned Liu Jinglong, calling him just a scammer who could only deceive ordinary people like her dad, but not him. Brother Feng was dumbfounded when Lady Yang asked him why he suddenly remembered his uncle. He saw that someone was calling him and picked up the phone. From there, his subordinate said that she found Dr. Shi in a hotel called Dynasty. The guy immediately told Yang to go home because he had a meeting, to which he asked where he was going if he had an appointment with the girl's father. Shiwen stopped the car and Liu Feng got out without saying another word. She repeated the same question for a long time. Where did he go so unexpectedly? The girl with pink hair did not understand what was happening and where her bodyguard was in such a hurry. It was already evening. The action took place in the modern Dynasty Hotel, where our main character went. The guy was met by the blonde Irene, who had been waiting for him in one of the rooms for a long time. She told Feng that it took him a long time to get here. Liu Feng patted the girl on the head and told her to stop sulking, and then suggested that she get down to business. Irene stopped smiling. Her expression became serious. She agreed with Liu's proposal and asked him to follow her. The girl stood in front of the laptop, on the screen of which there was a video of Dr. Shi lying on the bed. Irene called him a dangerous guy. She said there were hundreds of poisoned needles hidden in the man's room in case someone tried to break into the room to grab him. Feng didn't understand what they were talking about when Irene asked, while monitoring the doctor on the laptop, if the guy thought he looked like someone. When Feng asked who this doctor looked like, the girl replied that he looked like a man on the blacklist named Shi Zhentian. Irene opened a photo on her laptop showing Shi Zhentian. It was a man with a hat and longer hair. Shi Zhentian is not just a doctor of Western medicine, as Brother Ding believed, but a well-known murderer in the Western world. Feng said that Shi had disguised himself quite well, and Irene even praised the man, calling him a true man of the Eastern Underworld. A sly smile appeared on Liu's face when he realized that he and Irene could make $100 million from him since he was a rank 5 assassin. The blonde giggled and replied that she didn't expect anything else from her boss. He, as usual, loves money very much. Scrolling through the search site, Irene suddenly came across a photo of her boss, telling him that someone had assigned $500,000 for his dollar. Such a small amount surprised our hero. With his face pressed against his hand, the main character didn't even know whether to be upset or not, knowing that his murder cost only $500,000. The guy said that simply no one knows that the King of Hell is called Liu Feng, to which Irene jokingly suggested that he place an advertisement that the King of Hell is him and is in China. The blonde girl got scared when she saw that someone had just accepted an order to kill her boss and reported it to him. Liu Feng immediately ordered his subordinate to immediately find out who agreed to carry out the order for his liquidation. Irene, holding a laptop in her arms, said that this man is not bad if he uses a special program to hide his location, but against the best hacker in the world, it is useless. After spending a little time at the computer, the girl who is the best at hacking other people reported that everything was ready. Liu Feng asked the girl to put this matter aside for now and better see what their Dr. Shi is doing now. They saw a man pouring himself a glass of wine, and then Feng asked Irene in which room the man was hiding. Irene began to flirt with Feng and also invited him to bed, but he asked her to stop clowning around and not make him angry, or better yet, in which room is Dr. Shi. The blonde girl was offended by her boss, but immediately said that the man was hiding in room 903. Feng motioned for Irene to be quiet as he walked out into the hallway, and she followed him, urging the guy to wait for her. Irene and Liu Feng noticed how an unfamiliar girl with long white hair knocked on the door where Dr. Shi was sitting. This pleased our hero because it turned out that Shah was not going to sleep, but was waiting for a woman, which means he is now in a state of minimal vigilance. Irene began to flatter the guy that he would have managed it on his own, even if there was no woman, and Liu asked her to stop doing that. Already in the room, the stranger asked Shi what kind of incense he lit and why she felt so hot, to which she received the answer that it was rosemary. Our hero watched with interest what was happening in that room, but mentally turned to them, thinking that he did not have time to watch their entertainment all night. Irene complained to her boss that the incense also made her feel hot and she needed to cool down. A moment later, the long needle had already pierced the blonde's shoulder. Feng decided to help her lower her body temperature. Frowning, Irene sat down and began to complain about how bored she was, because Feng had not chosen the way to cool off that she had dreamed of. Dr. Shi lay unconscious in a white robe on the bed of his hotel room. He immediately came to his senses when he realized that he was not alone in the room. The man opened his eyes and asked who was standing in front of him. He recognized the guy in front of him as Liu Feng and asked what he was doing here so late, to which he received the answer that Shi would not receive a reward for killing Liu Feng if he did not come. Dr. Shi was stupefied when our young hero corrected himself and said that he was not Dr. Shi but Shi Zhentian. The man began to make excuses that Feng simply made a mistake, because Shi Zhentian is his older brother, and he is Shi Zhengen. When Dr. Shi revealed himself, Liu Feng immediately began interrogating him, asking why he poisoned Yang Shiwen, and who else was involved besides Liu Hao. Shi did not answer the guy's questions. He said that Liu knew his older brother, so he could not touch the man. Irene didn't let Shi Zhengen finish. She took out the green sign of the underground underworld, showing which clan they belonged to. Dr. Shi couldn't believe his eyes, because the underworld is a superpower in the Western underworld, and they are prohibited from visiting China. Seeing the sign, the man nevertheless spoke, saying that he collaborated with Liu Hao, and he with the Gaoyan group, and if the Yang family was destroyed, the man would receive a third of their property. Shi Zhengen added that under the terms of cooperation, he would also take possession of Yang Shiwen personally after the defeat of the family. Fang realized that since Shi wanted to take Shiwen, it means he has an antidote for the poison for 9 days, which the man confirmed. The angry protagonist thanked the doctor for the information and said that now he could die. Zhengen was shocked with horror and could not move when someone brought a sharp knife blade to his throat. Under pain of death, the man began to answer the hero's questions. He said that the Gaoyun group is just a pawn, and the behind-the-scenes mastermind is someone else. Dr. Shi named the American oil tycoon Robinson, adding that Liu Feng had no chance of defeating him unless the King of Hell himself came out of the underground world. In response, Feng ordered Irene to kill Shi, but he began to shout that his older brother would not let our hero go if he died. The blonde looked at the man furiously and was about to swing a knife to eliminate Dr. Shi. In one move, Irene killed the doctor, saying that the King of Hell himself wanted him dead, and added that Guo Fengren would soon come to accompany the man. When Feng asked who Guo Fengren was, the girl said that he was the one behind the poisoning of Yang Shiwen and was Guo Lao's brother. The hero was furious because Dr. Shi may have had something to do with Guo Fengren and they could have interrogated him about this, but now he is dead. Irene calmed the guy down, saying that she would soon discover Guo Fengren, to which he asked her to get rid of the corpse in the room and tell the ghost that for now they would remain in China. The next day came. The heroes went to Donghai University of Science and Technology again to continue their studies. Feng sat on his desk and chatted pleasantly about something with his friend Peng Jiaqi. They giggled, while Shiwen sat silently behind, as if lowered into the water. Wenwen was clearly offended by her bodyguard because he did not return home last night, and now, as if nothing had happened, he was flirting with her classmate. Someone said that Liu Feng and Peng Jiaqi were a good couple. Shiwen turned to look at this person and asked him who he was. In front of her stood a young man who introduced himself as Dongfang Wuhen and said that although he had been away from school before, today, on the first day, the girl's beauty struck him. Shiwen was embarrassed by such compliments and asked the guy if he was going to court her. The guy said that his family owns the Oriental Group, which produces Qingwei meat, and added that they are a good couple. The girl looked at her new classmate with delight, noted his self-confidence, and said that she liked such men. Shiwen told Wu Hin that he would first have to go through Liu Feng, since he is very domineering and forbids her to communicate with other guys. While Liu Feng and Jiaqi were having a nice conversation on the side, Wu Hin approached them and asked our hero to give him a couple of minutes to talk. The main character rudely answered the guy, saying that he was busy, and if he wanted to chat, he should get in line. The heir of the Oriental Group immediately became furious at Brother Feng's boorish behavior and challenged him. Liu Feng looked at his new classmate indifferently, asking if he was going to challenge him. The rest of his classmates started laughing at Wu Hin, because he still doesn't know that Brother Feng's strength is explosive. The blue-haired guy's courage disappeared somewhere, his voice began to tremble, and he corrected himself that he just wanted to compete with Feng. At the end, he blurted out that he wanted to compete with Liu Feng to see who has the most money. The other students started taunting the newbie again, thinking he was crazy for going to compete with someone who had a black gold card. Brother Feng agreed to accept the newcomer's challenge and asked how much wealth he owned. Raising his index finger, Wu Hin began boasting that his family's company, Oriental Group, had 2 billion in assets. The guy's boasting angered our hero. He shouted that he shouldn't even have opened his mouth if it was not his money, but his family's assets. The heir of the Oriental Group's face turned red with shame. He was sweating with embarrassment and fear and could not find the right words to answer Feng. At the same time, another action took place in the area of the abandoned factory. A strong middle-aged man with a long mustache asked his subordinates to check if they had come to the right place. The subordinate replied to Master Guo that the radar on Lu's phone showed that he was somewhere nearby, so they were definitely not mistaken. With anger on his face, Master Guo announced, looking ahead, that everyone who dared to touch a member of the Lu family would die a painful death. It turned out that these men were being watched from the roof, where Irene was sitting, holding a sniper rifle in her hands. When one of the guys received a bullet in the forehead, everyone present realized that a sniper was now following them. The second fighter fell to the ground after Irene shot him in the forehead, and Master Guo shouted for everyone to quickly hide inside the plant. Someone standing on the roof turned to the master to make sure whether the big man Guo Fengren was standing in front of him. It was a ghost working for our main character, who then told Master Guo that he had already waited for him. Guo Fengren confirmed that it was him and said that Ghost should bring Master Lu here now. Taking out a huge cannon with 6 muzzles, the big man shouted to the man that first they needed to fight in a fair duel. Guo Fengren began to run away, shouting to his partner to try to get around the ghost and attack him from behind. A guy from Liu Feng's team began firing numerous shots from his huge machine gun, which destroyed the place where Guo and his guys had just stood. The ghost looked and saw Master Guo jumping at him, shouting that the foreigners who dared to enter their territory must die. The men engaged in hand-to-hand combat, standing on the roof, the ghost shouting to the enemy that it was worth seeing if he had the ability to kill him. Guo Fengren immediately received help in the form of one partner who ran holding a sharp trident in his hand. He was unable to help Guo, as Irene immediately jumped from above with a sword in her hand, saying that she was his rival. The guy with long hair was confused because he thought that he was dealing with the Chinese Liu Feng, but then some foreigners appeared. Irene asked if the guy in front of her was number 15 on the Western criminal killer list, to which the man asked how she knew him. Smirking, she replied that she knew all the people in the underground Underworld, and their strengths were unequal, so the guy had better surrender now. Grabbing a smoke bomb, the criminal replied that they would still see if the girl could force him to surrender. Having told Irene to go to hell, the guy threw a smoke bomb, and his silhouette disappeared behind a cloud of smoke. The blonde was clearly frightened when she began to choke due to the smoke and lose visibility, and then saw a sharp trident in front of her that was about to plunge into her. After receiving the distress message from his teammates, Liu Feng immediately said goodbye to his new classmate, saying that he did not have time for this. A textbook flew into the blue-haired guy's face as he started shouting at Brother Feng that he would do anything to prevent him from staying at this university. Feng made the excuse that his hand simply slipped and said that they would compete later, and then he took Xiwen with him and left the office. The student was sitting on the floor and was very angry with Liu Feng. He could not believe that he dared to hit him in the face. Blood was even flowing from the guy's nose. Suddenly, the voice of a stranger in a black hood reigned in the classroom, asking Wu Hen if he wanted to take revenge on our hero. Wu Hen replied that, of course, he wanted to take revenge on the offender, and dreamed that he would live in suffering. The stranger extended his hand to the guy so that he stood up and offered cooperation, saying that they had already assembled a combat-ready team to take revenge on Liu Feng. Meanwhile, Irene managed to successfully escape from the smoke trap and even hit the enemy with her long, sharp blade. On his deathbed, a guy from Team Go grabbed his cutthroat and tried to ask Irene who she was. Finally, the blonde told the criminal that she was sorry because she was going to let him go. But because of his vile action, he had to be killed. Then she heard a cry for help from the Phantom, who called the girl, saying that this old man was not so simple. The girl ran, holding a knife in her hand, shouting that Master Guo would go to the Underworld today. The old man did not give up and continued to tell the guys that they would never leave the lands of China if they did not surrender now. A moment later, the blonde managed to cut the man's hand, and he was distracted by her. The ghost was angry when the man stopped fighting him and shouted that he wasn't done with him yet. The guy tried to hit Guo with his knee, but he blocked the blow. The ghost began to shout that all those serving the Liu family must die. The man was distracted by the Phantom, so he did not notice how Irene managed to sneak up from behind and attack him with a cold weapon. He began to scream when the blonde plunged a blade into his back, saying that the King of Hell was calling him to the Underworld. Afterwards, Irene asked the wounded Master Go if he thought that he could disobey the order of the King of Hell. He lay on the ground with a blade stuck in his back, and with a trembling voice tried to pronounce his last words before death. The ghost finally told the man that he had good kung fu skills, and he would like to fight him again if not for the task. Tied to a chair, covered in abrasions and bandages, Lu Hao was sitting in the middle of the workshop in an abandoned factory when he heard the door creak. The guy came to his senses and hope settled in his heart when someone shouted his name. He saw Liu Feng and his classmates in front of him, who greeted Lu Hao and said that he had come here to save him. The blonde asked if the guy really came to save him, and the girls couldn't believe their eyes that they were seeing Lu Hao in front of them. Peng Jockey was amazed by what she saw. She immediately began to anxiously ask the headman what he was doing here. Xiwen approached the blonde and ironically began to ask why he was sitting here and not treating his injuries in the hospital, and then began to untie him. Lu Hao remained wary. He did not believe in the sincerity of our hero's intentions and tried to find out from the guy what trick he wanted to pull this time. With a smile on his face, Liu Feng began to say that he realized that he was too impulsive with him, and then he learned that the blonde man had gone missing, so he decided to save him. Despite the protagonist's explanations, the fair-haired guy still didn't believe him. He was expecting some kind of trick from Brother Feng and was very worried. Realizing that Lu Hao did not trust him, Brother Feng suggested that the blonde walk home. The expression on the group leader's face immediately changed. He began to beg the hero to take him away from here, because he still needed medical attention. Feng agreed to do this, but added that he hired more than 100 private detectives to find Liu Hao. He approached the student and said that his search had cost him more than $1 million, so the guy needed to return this money first. When asked how much he owed, Liu Feng replied that the guy owed him $20 million and showed him a smartphone for transferring funds. The sun was already setting behind the horizon. The heroes went to the Donghai People's State Hospital. Shiwen sincerely did not understand why Liu Feng decided to save her enemy Liu Hao, to which the guy replied that he had ideas where he could be useful. The hero reassured the girl, saying that not only Liu Hao, but also Gaoyang Group will soon get what they deserve. Shiwen sighed and looked away, remembering the Korean Gaoyang Company, which was bent on destroying her family. It was already late evening. The action took place in the Yang family's family villa. Liu Feng wasted no time and spent his leisure time in the gym, practicing punches on the punching bag. The guy was forced to pause his workout when he suddenly heard a melody coming from his smartphone. The main character made a final, strong punch to the punching bag and walked away to answer the call. From there, he heard a voice insisting that Liu urgently needed to go to Shilichun if he wanted to save Jockey, but the hero immediately recognized the caller as Dongfang Wuhen, his new classmate. Wuhen replied that he did not care about the consequences and told Liu Feng not to call the police or tell Shiwen anything, otherwise something irreparable would happen to Jiaqi. In response, Feng only laughed, realizing that Wu Hin's level of intelligence was much lower than he expected, since he dared to provoke him like that. However, the hero agreed to come to the city of Shilichun, and after some time he was walking along the street of a small town. The hero saw a crowd in front of him and ironically asked them if they were going to attack the lonely, handsome guy with weapons. In front of Liu Feng stood a whole crowd of strong guys in white t-shirts, who looked at him, clenching their fists. The big guys took the long metal guys, the leader shouted that it was time to finish the guy off, and the whole crowd rushed at our hero. With a peaceful expression on his face, Brother Feng began to flex his fists, complaining that killing simple bipods was very boring for him. The guy put his hand in front of him, and all the metal sticks with which they tried to hit him bent after an unsuccessful attack. Finally, Feng asked the hooligans not to blame him, since they themselves asked for a fight, and with one punch he knocked out 3 guys at once. Liu Feng made a high jump up. The fighters could only look at him in amazement, their mouths open. The guy began to swing his legs in the air, his blows knocked down more and more fighters. Those whom Feng had not yet reached only watched in shock, as their friends flew off in different directions after the blows of our hero. From the window of the building, Wu Hin and Cheng Feng watched what was happening. The guy with blue hair complained that his comrade's plan did not work. Cheng Feng didn't understand how much longer Liu could continue if there were 300 people from the Sun family alone, as well as more than 200 from Shilichun. The blue-haired boy couldn't believe his ears when he heard that there were 500 people fighting against Feng, and Cheng Feng replied that he didn't believe that Liu couldn't be killed. The Sun family young master ordered his bodyguard to have the fighters use knives and not show any mercy to Feng. Our hero's fight against 500 fighters on the street continued. With kicks, he hit everyone in turn, leaving no one a chance. The amazed Wu Hin and Cheng Feng looked at this, gradually losing their last hope and already thinking that this idea would end badly for them. Cheng Feng's mood improved when he took out a gun and said that there was still hope because they could use weapons. He looked at the tied-up Peng Jiaqi, who was sitting nearby, and added that they had the last card left. The guy shouted that at a critical moment, they could use the girl hostage to threaten Liu Feng. Wu Hin also cheered up, agreeing that it was worth using this girl because it was not in vain that he spent 10,000 yuan to bribe his neighbor and steal Jockey. A wounded guy burst into the room, said that things were bad for them, and Liu Feng managed to beat up absolutely all the fighters. The embittered Cheng Feng ordered his fighter to all gather here, and since it came to this, then Liu Feng must be killed. Peng Jiaqi was left alone with the guy's bodyguards. They threatened her with weapons to keep her quiet, otherwise they would shoot her. Suddenly, she heard some rustling in the other room, thinking that it was definitely Liu Feng who had come. Overjoyed, the tied-up girl began loudly calling for her friend to come and save her. Brother Feng entered the room, asking the girl if she was waiting for him. In his hands were the bodies of 2 strong guys whom he had just killed. The guy began to boast and joke that a hero in golden armor had arrived to save the beauty, meaning himself and the girl. Cheng Feng responded by asking Liu not to be so self-confident, because they have weapons, and Jiaqi is also a hostage, so he will definitely die today. Wu Hen began to egg on his comrade, asking him to shoot at Feng, joyfully repeating to the hero in his voice that the time had come for him to answer for everything. The Sun family's young master became angry when Wu Hen kept telling him to shoot Liu Feng now. Saying that he himself knew how to do his job, Cheng Feng ordered his bodyguards to open fire on our hero. Liu Feng began to deftly dodge the bullets that flew towards him, one after another, his hand reaching for his pistol. The guy pulled out a gun and pointed it at the bodyguards, shouting that now it was his turn to shoot. The guards began to let out death rattles as Feng successfully hit their bodies with bullets. Our protagonist did not even spare young master Cheng Feng, and he was the last one to receive a fatal bullet to the body. Standing surrounded by lifeless bodies, Wu Hen could not believe how this could happen when he was the only survivor of the team. He looked dumbfounded at Liu Feng and his girlfriend, who were chatting pleasantly on the side as if nothing had happened just now. The hero handed Peng Jiaqi a glass of wine and told her that now was the time to rest and relax, for which the girl thanked him. Afterwards, Feng turned to the terribly frightened Dongfang Wu Hen and asked if he had anything to say to the guy in his defense. The blue-haired young man immediately fell to his knees and began banging his head on the floor, screaming and begging Brother Feng to forgive him. Feng didn't like the guy's argument that they were classmates and blamed Wu Hen for not thinking about it when he kidnapped Jiaqi and intended to kill him. With tears in his eyes, Wu Hen admitted that he was wrong and begged to spare him, because there is only one heir in the Dongfang family. Liu Feng mockingly looked at the guy who was kneeling in front of him and asked him to give him a reason why he should not kill him now. Hysterical, Wu Hen frantically began to come up with a reason, saying that he would treat Liu as a grandfather and could also give him the amount of 9.9 million. Sipping from a glass of wine, our hero grinned as he asked whether the life of the Dongfang heir was worth only $6.9 million. The guy replied that his pocket money was 6.9 million, so he couldn't give more, and Liu asked his friend if she had a mobile bank. The hero ordered the student to first transfer this money to Peng Jiaqi as moral compensation. The girl wanted to refuse. Brother Feng insisted on his own. Smiling, the guy also handed Liu Feng his VIP hotel card, which he treasures so much, and the main character told him to get lost. Overjoyed, Wu Hen began to run away, respectfully bidding farewell to Liu Feng and his girlfriend, calling her his daughter-in-law. Jiaqi was embarrassed when she was called daughter-in-law, and Liu Feng asked her if she trusted him since they might face more dangerous situations in the future. The student replied that she trusted the guy more than anyone in the world, to which Feng replied that in the future she would have to remain silent about what she saw and not ask questions about Liu's past. Zakia agreed to fulfill her friend's request, and then Liu Feng, grabbing a bottle of wine from the bar counter, suggested that she leave from there. Going outside, the main character launched a bottle of alcohol high into the air. It began to spin around its axis. A few seconds later, the glass bottle broke, leaving traces of blood on it. When the heroes went out into the street, it turned out that it was restless outside. Feng grabbed his friend in his arms and said that nothing would happen to her. Gun bullets were flying at the guys. Holding the girl in his arms, the main character concentratedly fought off the enemies, shooting at them with his pistol. With just one shot, the guy managed to hit a man in a black suit who was waiting for the hero, standing on a roof nearby. Afterwards, Liu Feng discovered another ill-wisher, who was also watching him from above, and eliminated him with one shot. The fair-haired student was scared when she saw a white minibus rushing towards the heroes at full speed. The young man reacted quickly, grabbed the beauty in his arms, and jumped high so that the car passed under them. Liu Feng landed on the roof of that white car, the frightened girl obediently lying in his arms. The guy pointed the gun at the roof, at the place where the driver of the car was supposedly sitting. The hero fired a shot, and the short-haired guy sitting behind the wheel let out a death rattle when the bullet hit the top of his head. The second man, sitting in the passenger seat, told him not to die and to stop the car first. Liu Feng ran away, holding his girlfriend in his arms, when the car of ill-wishers flew into the wall and crashed, exploding. On the road, our hero saw the lifeless body of a fragile girl in a pink dress, on whose hip there was a holster for a pistol. Next to her lay a broken phone, on the screen of which was a message that the mission had failed. It was addressed to Ma Xiaoyun. The guy took the phone and immediately realized who was behind this attack, saying that they could continue to send killers. Throwing the phone into the flames, the hero thought that even if they didn't come for him today, he would come for them tomorrow. He was lost in his thoughts and addressed Ma and her henchmen in his head, saying that when he came for them, it would be too late for them to do anything. Liu Feng did not understand why Jiaqi was inviting him to the hotel, and the girl explained that in this way the guy would have an alibi. The next day came. Our main characters spent their free time in one of the city's shopping centers. Crossing her arms over her chest, a dissatisfied Shiwen asked her friends if they had stayed at the hotel the previous night. Jackie immediately began to make excuses so that Wen would not misunderstand her, explaining that Liu had saved her, so they were forced to hide in the inn. Offended, Shiwen asked her friend again if they really just slept in the same bed and nothing happened between them. While drinking tea, Liu Feng asked the girls to stop talking about it because they still had one person to find and deal with. Upset, Peng asked Brother Feng not to touch her because she was still her neighbor, and from now on she would just ignore her. The main character did not agree, because the neighbor Zekia took the money and helped kidnap the girl, so she must be held accountable for what she did. Shiwen completely agreed that the neighbor needed to be dealt with, so she asked Jiaqi to go with her to the dormitory. The heroine with pink leg hair opened the door to the school dormitory room and started screaming furiously, asking who Li Fu was here. In the room, she saw a frightened red-haired girl who was already packing her suitcase to leave there. The girl's face was burning with shame and fear of Wen. She began to say, spreading her arms to the sides, that she did not know what she needed from her. Before she could finish speaking, neighbor Peng Jiaqi received a strong slap in the face from Yang Shiwen. Rubbing her cheek, the girl began to scream at Wen because she could not believe that she allowed herself to hit her. Ms. Yang didn't answer. She again struck her friend's neighbor's face with her palm, causing her mouth to bleed. The student furrowed her eyebrows and angrily asked Wen to stop fighting. Otherwise, she would start to fight back. However, Miss Yang was unstoppable and kicked the traitor in the stomach with all her might. Finally, the girl shouted to the student that if she had already finished packing her things, she should get out of the room right now. Tasting victory, Shiwen solemnly declared that from today on she would live in this dormitory and even become its headman. Ms. Yang walked up to her friend and hugged her tightly from behind, saying that she would protect her from now on. Jackie thanked the girl, to which she said that now Liu Feng would also protect her, because they would live together, and Feng would always be next to Shiwen. The main character, meanwhile, was thinking about Shiwen, because she had shown that she could not only be hot-tempered, but also cruel when it came to protecting the people dear to her. Realizing that now his girlfriends would live together, he concluded that now he too would have to prepare to move into the dorm. 3 days passed and our young hero was standing on the street when a long black limousine pulled up next to him and several bodyguards got out. Chang Feng's father approached him and asked Liu to bring the guy out of his vegetative state, because he is the only one who can do this. The hero began to explain why he did not want to do this, because earlier Chang Feng had set 500 people on him and tried to kill him. Mr. Sun bowed to the guy and said that he understood everything, but was even ready to give his life in exchange for help in treating his son. Hearing such conditions from Mr. Sun, Feng looked at him with a smile and called the man quite smart. The guy agreed to treat Chang Feng and told the man to take him to see how the guy was doing. Young Master Chang Feng was in a vegetative state, where our hero had introduced him earlier. Now he was in the Sakura Club. The guy was lying on the bed unconscious, and Liu Feng asked his father to do what he said now to make his son feel better. The man was puzzled when suddenly, in return for his help, Liu asked him to rewrite the Sakura Club in Feng's name within an hour. Noticing that the man hesitated, the guy asked if he had any problems with this, to which he received the answer that Sun would take care of it right away. The hero looked after him and mentally addressed the man, saying that he warned him not to get involved with the young man. The green-haired woman was furious at Mr. Sun's request. The Sakura Club belonged to her, and she wants to kill Liu Feng rather than transfer the property to him. The man explained that this needed to be done to cure his son, and then he would make sure that Lady Yun Meihui received all her property back. She agreed to transfer her property to Liu Feng, but only on the condition that Sun would make sure that this guy would die today. Exactly an hour passed, and Mr. Sun entered the room where Liu Feng was to give him the documents confirming the transfer of the Sakura Club to him. Liu Feng agreed to bring Chang Feng out of his vegetative state, walked up to him and kicked the student's thigh with all his might. Mr. Sun was shocked when he saw the treatment method our protagonist chose and tried to find out what he was doing. Feng explained that his son was hit by his bone-eating needle, so he needed to break his limbs so that the flow would stop so the needle could be removed. The main character added that all limbs need to be broken within a minute, but 40 seconds have already passed, so it would be worth stopping asking questions. The man gritted his teeth in anger. He was offended for his son, but he still respectfully asked Liu Feng to continue the procedure. Mr. Sun covered his eyes with his hands to avoid looking at it, while Liu Feng was breaking Cheng Feng's legs and arms. The man suspected that he was being deceived when Liu said that, although he was a miracle doctor, the procedure for breaking bones would last another half hour. With a sly smile, the guy said that maybe this is so, but he is the one who is treating his son now, so let him come up and hit Feng if he dares. Sun looked at Dr. Feng with anger and rage in his face and did nothing, realizing that he was now in an unfavorable position. Meanwhile, our protagonist continued to try to bring Cheng Feng out of his vegetative state by manipulating his body with his hands. The guy inserted the last long needle directly into the student's forehead, and this completed the treatment procedure. Satisfied with himself, Liu Feng looked at the needle, from which drops of blood were dripping, and told the man that his son would wake up soon. After a short period of time, Cheng Feng came to his senses. He opened his eyes and screamed heart-rendingly throughout the room. His father asked the hero if Liu would help him cope with the pain, to which our hero replied that he would rather help take him to the hospital so that he would be in more pain. Feng immediately grabbed the student's arm and rushed out of the room to take him to the hospital as quickly as possible. Mr. Sun tried to stop the doctor, shouting that he could take his son to the hospital himself. Smiling, the young man refused, explaining that he was in a very good mood today so he could do it himself and it was better not to stop him. Cheng Feng screamed in pain when Liu Feng grabbed him by the tail with his hand and dragged him along. The head of the family did not like this, and he furiously shouted after Feng that now he could not leave so easily if he did not leave his son alone. In response to Sun saying that he would have to stop being polite to the guy, Feng replied that the man had never been polite before. The man blushed and sweated from the realization that he had been discovered. He asked Liu Feng how he understood everything. Liu Feng explained that the stone in front of the club had Yamamoto Kaiten written on it, so it was not Sun's property, but another man with whom he conspired to kill our hero. With a smile on his face, Liu announced that he would leave this house in 5 minutes, and if anyone tried to stop him, his son would take the first blow. Mr. Sun immediately grabbed his phone and told someone that the operation was cancelled and all their people needed to retreat. The man clenched his hand into a fist in anger when Liu Feng said that time had already run out, and it was time for him to leave. Holding Cheng Feng by the neck, the guy went out into the street and met several fighters in red masks who were holding katanas. The head of the Sun family ran out into the street after the guys and began shouting the name of his son, who was now in great danger. A woman with green hair was screaming at him over the phone, accusing Mr. Sun of deciding to betray the Yamaguchi clan because he had recalled his people. In response, the man shouted to the woman that she did not dare touch her son because he was now in the hands of Liu Feng, and if something happened to him, he would kill her. The lady accepted the challenge, saying that her clan was much more powerful than the Sun family, and she was unworthy of Yamaguchi. Meanwhile, Liu Feng had already dealt with 3 fighters, plunging their own weapons into their bodies, and Cheng Feng was lying on the floor, writhing in pain. Afterwards, the main character adjusted and turned on the small earphone that was hidden in his ear. At that moment, the masked girls, with machine guns in their hands, intended to attack him, but the guy replied that if they touched him, Sun Cheng Feng would die first. The guy corrected himself, telling them that it didn't matter anyway because they wouldn't have a chance to shoot. The girls with machine guns looked at Liu Feng with wide eyes when suddenly bullets flew into their heads from nowhere. A woman with green hair watched the entire situation through binoculars and cursed. She was at a loss, not understanding why some Chinese was being protected by snipers and who he was. Speaking into the earpiece, Liu Feng ordered someone to clear out the area, kill all the bad guys, and leave the good guys behind. He then announced that the Sakura Club was now under his name and it would become their base in the East China Sea. Meanwhile, Irene and Ghost talked to Long Jianfei, who arrived with the magistrate's team, and asked him to stay with them, but he did not agree. Lun explained that the underground world is too big an organization, so it cannot be left unattended, and in 2 hours he will fly to Europe, and the team of judges will remain with the guys. Finally, the guy told them to tell the boss that the land in Arabia would be taken under control. Thereby, Liu Feng would become an oil tycoon and get the Yang family out of trouble. The main character was simply walking surrounded by nature, when suddenly his attention was distracted by a message suddenly received on his phone. He saw a message there that the mission was completed, and his subordinates could make the Sun family disappear from the East China Sea at any time. The calm atmosphere around was immediately disrupted when a white pickup truck rushed along the road straight towards our hero. The car crashed into a tree where the guy was standing, but he managed to jump up and avoid the tragedy, concluding that someone else could not calm down. Inside were two men in black suits who did not understand where Liu Feng had gone after the blow or whether he was even alive. In horror, the men inside began to cry out to God for help when suddenly Liu Feng tore the roof of the car and scared them with his unexpected appearance. Soon, both bodyguards were lying on top of each other on the ground and screaming in pain. Liu Feng realized that these people were sent by Sun Jianye and said that such antics would only speed up his destruction of the Sun family. What happened was noticed by the police, and a car with flashing lights promptly drove up to the scene of the traffic accident. A policewoman got out of the car, ordered Liu Feng not to move, and asked him to explain what was happening here. Liu Feng looked at the woman kindly, saying that she was just in time, because these two were the bad guys that he now had under his control. The police only became even more angry. Not believing the hero's words, she took out handcuffs and accused the young man of mass beating. The main character was in a stupor and did not believe that now he would have to go to the police station. Liu Feng had to listen to the law enforcement officer, and after a while he was already obediently sitting on a chair in the interrogation room. The policeman with glasses asked the hero to stop being so arrogant and answer questions if they were asked to him. The hero was surprised when the police officer asked the guy his name, but then he let it slip and said it himself, making it clear that he already knew him. The man came closer, asking Brother Feng why he thought the policeman had no way to control him. The behavior of the law enforcement officer completely angered the guy. He said that he would kill him if he took another step in his direction. The seriousness of the hero's intentions and self-confidence terrified the policeman. He trembled with fear and silently looked at the arrested young man. Afterwards, the main character took off his amulet and began to use it as a hypnotic pendulum, trying to suggest something to the policeman. The guy succeeded, and the police officer immediately fell into a state of hypnosis, spellbound and mindlessly watching the movement of the pendulum. Crossing his legs, Liu Feng began to mock the policeman, forcing him to perform ridiculous dances through hypnosis. When a fair-haired policewoman who entered the office noticed this, she was dumbfounded, because he was saying nonsense and showing strange movements. The girl walked up to her partner and punched him in the face, asking what he was doing there. The guy with glasses came to his senses after the blow and came out of the influence of hypnosis, and then asked Liu Feng what he did to him. The hero replied that he simply suspected the policeman of colluding with the Sun family, so he decided to test him using hypnosis. The policeman began to threaten Feng that he would beat him to death, and his blonde partner became wary, taking the suspicions of the arrested guy seriously. She grabbed the guy by the shoulder to stop him, and he started yelling at Duanma Hitomi, asking why she wouldn't let him beat up Liu Feng. Realizing that her partner was behaving too aggressively, the police decided to neutralize him using a technique. The policeman, lying on the floor, burst into tears. He asked the girl if she knew who his father was since she allowed herself to hit him. An angry Hitomi replied that she knew very well who his father was, but in this station she was the boss, and a man was not allowed to behave like that here. Kicking the guy so that he flew out of the office, the girl shouted and ordered him to write a report about what happened and how it relates to the Sun family. The policewoman looked sternly at the hero and said that from her police experience, Liu Feng is also associated with bad people. Smiling, Liu Feng assumed that the girl had great connections, since at such a young age she managed to become the head of the police. The guy's words angered the girl even more. She shouted at him to shut up, otherwise she would beat him. Brother Feng accepted all the policewoman's anger with a smile, answering her that you shouldn't be angry so often because you might get sick. Shouting to the entire office, the police officer once again ordered the main character to shut up and put her foot in front of her to hit him. She was embarrassed and blushed when, with a smile on his face, the young man easily stopped her leg and grabbed the girl by the thigh. After the awkward incident, the girl still continued to threaten the main character, asking if he wanted to be beaten. When she tried to punch him, he grabbed her hand and respectfully replied that her pulse was not normal right now and the girl was really sick. The police officer shook her head, denying her ill condition, because she had been checked at the hospital many times, to which Feng asked why she went there, since she was healthy. The girl was stunned when suddenly Liu Feng asked if she constantly felt pain in the Jiangmen point, which is located on the right side of the abdomen. The policewoman looked down, blushing, and decided to lie to the guy by answering no. Feng immediately grabbed her in his arms, saying that he could not be wrong, so she needed to be examined more closely. The girl began to resist. What was happening in the interrogation room was overheard by two policemen. One of them was worried about Commander Hitomi, but the second replied that with her kung fu skills, she could handle even 10 men. The police were very scared when they heard their partner screaming in the office. The young guy wanted to rush in to save the commander, but an older policeman immediately stopped him. He asked his partner in a whisper if he had heard of this before, meaning that Commander Hitomi was fine. Patting the policeman on the shoulder, the man with the mustache told him to get back to his work, convincing him that the girl could handle it on her own. Meanwhile, Fung was examining Hitomi's stomach. When she screamed, he asked if it was a pain that lasted from the stomach to the back, to which he received a negative answer. Tears of pain appeared in the girl's eyes, and Fung asked her to stop denying that in addition to the Jiang Men point, she also had pain in the stomach area. The policewoman could no longer physically resist the main character, but still screamed and asked him to stop doing this. The young man friendly asked her to be quiet, because others in the station might think that they were doing something inappropriate. Suddenly, the guy moved closer to the police officer and asked if this could really be normal for her, to which she continued to beg to let her go. Liu Feng said that in return, the girl should let him leave the station, and if she does this, he will cure her, because this disease will lead to kidney failure in 6 months. Hitomi was still suspicious of our hero, but he said that he knew that she had already conducted an investigation regarding his skills earlier. The blonde girl finally agreed to trust Feng to heal her, but asked him to let her get up first. The guy did not allow her to get up, took out a needle, and said that this was not necessary because the lying position was ideal for using acupuncture. Having prepared the needles, the hero asked the girl to bear with the itching for a little while, which would come from this acupuncture procedure, but this would allow her to strengthen all the meridians. The head of the police began to moan in pain as Liu Feng inserted more and more long needles into her body. The police, who were standing outside the interrogation room, dropped the papers from their hands in shock when they heard strange sounds coming from there. The young police officer whispered to his partner, embarrassed that the sounds coming from the office did not sound like Hitomi interrogating a suspect. A concerned policeman with a mustache knocked on the office, asking if the girl needed help, to which she replied that no one should enter there without her order. The police put their hands to their heads and agreed to carry out their boss's order not to bother her anymore. After the procedure, the policewoman said that she felt much better, but Liu Feng should not expect gratitude from her. Commander Hitomi allowed our hero to go, but said that she could not accompany him as she still felt weak. The guy replied that it was not a problem and told the police officer to stay here and rest for another half hour without getting up. After leaving the interrogation room, Liu Feng wiped the floor off his face, saying how tiring it is to serve this fierce girl. The police officers standing nearby were stunned. The evil policeman with glasses appeared in the corridor again, who began to shout that he would not let Liu Feng go, and if the guy tried to escape, he would shoot him. Smirking, he looked at the guy and said that even his commander ordered Feng to be released, so the policeman did not have the authority to detain him. Taking out the handcuffs, the police officer replied that Hitomi's order was no longer valid because now Chief Yi wanted to interrogate the guy. The policeman wanted to grab the guy to detain him, but Liu Feng began to resist, trying to remove his hand from himself. Liu Feng punched the police officer in the face until his teeth flew out of his mouth. Covering his mouth with his hand, the guy who fell to the floor began to shout whether Liu Feng wanted to die since he allowed himself to attack the police officer. The young man explained that he had not done anything wrong, and the police had no reason to detain him, so he suspected that he was in cahoots with someone. The policeman laughed and cracked, admitting that someone had ordered him to catch the guy and put him in Yuemingshan prison. Meanwhile, in the general's office, an elderly man asked a subordinate how everything went, to which he received a positive answer. General Shu was pleased that everything went according to plan and asked the man if he remembered correctly that there was a death cell in Yuemingshan prison. The short-haired man was scared when the general mentioned death row because very violent criminals live there. The elderly man gave the order to throw Liu Feng on death row and watch what would happen to test the guy's abilities. It was deep night. The action took place on the territory of Yuemingshan prison. Our main character walked surrounded by several military men who showed him his new home, called a prison. Approaching one of the cells, a man with a cap with large scars on his face opened the door and invited the guy to come inside. When Liu Feng walked inside, the others said that fresh meat had arrived, and there were many tough and scary-looking criminals inside. The hero picked up a cigarette along with a long needle and said that he usually doesn't smoke, but now he would like to ask for a light. One of the prisoners threw him a lighter and said that smoking a cigarette upon arrival in the cell is an important tradition for all death row prisoners. The prisoners carefully watched the guy and mocked him, believing that with such a frail body, the young man would not last even half an hour here. Lighting a cigarette, Liu Feng asked the men to stop talking nonsense and tell him how much they were paid to deal with him. This angered the prisoners, and they began to shout that money had no value for them here, and he should not underestimate it if he did not want to die. In response to the rude behavior of strong men on death row, the guy simply remained silent, lowering his hand with the cigarette down. A moment later, that cigarette had already flown into the mouth of one of the prisoners who had shouted at Liu Feng earlier. The man began to clear his throat and try to cool his tongue from the burn when someone shouted why the prisoners had not started yet. The guy in the prison uniform answered his boss, who was lying against the wall on the bed, that this was nothing, but received the answer that they needed to show what they were capable of. The blonde man with rose tattoos began to flex his fists, announcing to Liu Feng the start of the death row initiation ceremony. A muscular man with a sly smile on his face looked at our hero and asked him to come closer to him, beckoning with his index finger. The blonde prisoner screamed in pain as the guy walked up and simply broke his finger with one movement of his hand. The man got very angry with the guy and started calling him a bastard who broke his finger when they just wanted to challenge him to a fight. The prisoner made an unsuccessful attempt to hit Brother Feng, but he dodged and clenched his hand into a fist to counterattack the enemy. A moment later, Liu Feng punched the man's solar plexus with all his might, so much so that he went a little crazy with pain. The rest of the inmates were amazed by Liu Feng's abilities, not understanding what just happened, and some praised his skills. A bare-chested man with a tattoo on his back, holding a long iron stick in his hand, then approached Liu Feng and announced the second part of the ceremony. The men with knives and sticks in their hands surrounded the young man. They shouted that he should go to hell and were about to attack him. The big man with the rebar in his hand failed, because a moment later Liu Feng had already hit his face with his knee. The prisoners were amazed when they saw that the young hero managed to instantly knock out two men at once. One of the inmates called on the others not to stand and attack the guy because they cannot allow him to beat them all to death here. None of the death row inmates managed to attack Liu Feng. He cut down one after another with lightning speed, leaving them no chance. He then hit the prisoner in the jaw, who had previously thrown a cigarette into his mouth, and he then incited the others to attack Liu Feng. The bald man groaned in pain, and tears immediately poured out of his eyes when the main character knocked him down, striking him below the belt. The military man silently watched what was happening on the video surveillance camera. He watched without emotion as the main character easily dealt with everyone. After catching his breath, Liu Feng said that it took him a full minute to deal with them all, and believed that either they were good or he was too soft with them. The winner sat on a mountain built from the bodies of beaten prisoners and complained about how tired he was, and one of them shouted to get off them because they were not soft toys. The guy allegedly accidentally stepped on one of the inmates, apologizing for not noticing, and he began asking him not to do it. A long-haired man intervened in the situation, who had been watching from the side all this time. Sitting with them in the cell, he asked his comrades when they became such insignificance. The beaten guys began to shout to Gracie's boss that it was not their fault. It was just that Liu Feng's strength was too abnormal, and began to beg him to help them. The man with scars on his face looked ahead and no longer scolded his cellmates for their inability to defeat our hero. Instead, he turned to Liu Feng and asked, calling him a novice, if he knew what the consequences could be after not following the rules. The hero confidently answered that he sets the rules in the Western Underworld and always follows them, and he himself wondered where he had met the man in front of him before. Rising from the bed, Gracie's boss came closer and said that he admired strong people but did not like braggarts. The man announced that the welcoming ceremony would now continue and swung his fist at the guy, trying to hit him, but Brother Feng prevented him from doing so. Meanwhile, the prison guards were discussing while watching this that Liu Feng was indeed very good, and it was no wonder that the Sun family was asking to kill him. The uniformed man with long blonde hair replied that on death row, if Gracie took over, Liu Feng's power would no longer help him. The second guard called Gracie a monster when he recalled how the Chinese authorities tried to catch him, and several teams of special forces were called in to do it. The prisoner raised his hands up and jumped to try to attack the main character again while he stood on the floor and looked at the enemy. In response to such an attempt to attack the hero, Brother Feng only grinned and jumped to the side so that they could not hit him. Gracie realized that the move was unsuccessful when he slammed his fists onto the concrete floor of the prison cell, sending stones flying in all directions. The man began to curse, not understanding where Liu Feng was hiding as he hung on the wooden ceiling directly above him. The guy smiled playfully, looked down at his opponent, and asked if the prisoner was looking for him. A moment later, he jumped from the ceiling and landed with his foot right in Gracie's face, while the boss's stunned subordinates watched. The strong man shouted furiously that Liu Feng would not live when he left a large dirty mark on his face with his sneaker. Boss Gracie was in the air again and crossed his legs trying to catch Liu Feng, who was also hovering above the floor. The man managed to grab our hero's leg with his shins so that he could not escape from this grip. His fellow cellmates were delighted when they saw their boss use a deadly scissor leg move on Liu Feng. The main character was trapped, and the prisoners began to compare Gracie's legs to a snake that never lets go of its prey. With a grin, Liu Feng said that he could only dream if he wanted to grab him, and managed to get out of the scissor legs trap. The young man grabbed the big man by the neck and pulled his hand back, using a painful technique, after which he immediately asked him to stop and talk. Liu Feng agreed to just talk and let the man go. He was trying to catch his breath after they tried to strangle him. The guy called Gracie invincible in the Underworld, and said that ordinary police would not have been able to catch him, and added that he would not have had problems if he had not killed people in Yangcheng. Gracie didn't understand how the guy knew what happened to him, to which he asked if he remembered the soldier who hit him in the face 3 times with a handle. The man looked down at the floor and admitted that he could not defeat Liu Feng now, just as he could not do it 5 years ago. The main character praised Gracie for her intelligence, which flattered and pleased the man, and he expressed regret that he had lost his freedom forever and ended up here. Meanwhile, at the girls' dormitory, Shiwen and Jiaqi tried to contact Liu Feng by sending messages to his phone, since he had been missing for more than 2 days. Peng asked her friend what they should do, because Feng had not been in touch for 2 days, to which Wenwen replied that she intended to contact her father so that he could find him. Peng Jiaqi was very worried about her friend. She mentally wished for Brother Feng that he would be okay and that everything would work out. Madame Yang was also deep in thought, and the thought occurred to her that those 2 foreigners, meaning Irene and Ghost, knew something about Liu Feng. At this time, the main character was having a chicken dinner with Gracie. Brother Feng even invited the man to work for him in the future. While taking a bite of the chicken, Liu Feng promised his fellow cellmate that he would help him escape from prison so that they could begin to cooperate. Suddenly, a guy with tattoos approached the hero, who was chewing a chicken bone, asking why he was going to get Gracie out of here without asking him. In front of the young man stood a tall, strong guy with blonde hair. The other prisoner shouted that it was Brother Fan. The hero also immediately recognized the guy, saying that it was Liang Bufan, the legendary soldier who suddenly disappeared 4 years ago. Brother Fan was surprised that he was recognized, to which he received the answer that there was no person who had not seen his best guide to individual combat in the field. Wary, Liang Bufan asked the main character if he was one of the Heavenly Sword Squad. Without waiting for an answer, the prisoner immediately raised his fist, furious because Liu Feng belonged to this squad. Sticking his fists in front of him, the young hero accepted the fight and shouted that the elder was being too rude. A brutal fistfight broke out between 2 elite Chinese army soldiers now on death row. When the elder tried to hit Liu Feng, he even had to step back several meters, landing on 1 knee. The prisoners were amazed that our hero could fight on equal terms even with such an invincible fighter as Brother Fan, and Gracie said that Liu Feng was not an ordinary person. The battle between Liang Bufan and the protagonist continued. This time, Liu Feng swung his fist, and his opponent was ready to defend himself. The guy with the tattoos managed to grab one of the hero's arms between his shin and thigh and blocked his blow with his elbow. Afterwards, Brother Fan, who was focused on the fight, jumped up to deliver a crushing punch to the heavenly sword fighter. The main character managed to jump away in time, and the blonde hit his fist right on the floor so that pieces of concrete scattered in different directions. Liu Feng began to praise Brother Fan, saying that he was worthy of his fame, because he led the elite Huaxia Special Forces for 20 days and challenged the strongest European teams. Gracie, who was watching this, said that Liu Feng should not be underestimated, because there are very few who can resist Brother Fan for so long. The young hero tensed when it became difficult for him to dodge the blows of the former elite soldier, and realized that his opponent was quite fast. Brother Fan attempted to strike our hero with a strong fist, but he put his hands in front of him and blocked it. Realizing that Liu Feng had good hand-to-hand combat skills, the blonde guessed that he was the Abyssal Dragon Sword. The guy was surprised that Brother Fan recognized him as the Abyssal Dragon Sword and asked him how he knew who he was. The blonde replied that even though he was on death row, he still had connections with government officials and received news from the outside world. He added that it might seem like he was locked up here, but in fact the country was protecting him in this way, and then asked Liu why he was here. Feng said that he would stay in prison for a maximum of 2 days and let him finish in the army, to which the blonde praised his fortitude and offered to teach him something. The main character tensed when Fan grabbed the bottle and threw it right at him, but he managed to dodge at the last moment. The large green glass bottle flew away and broke into small pieces. The guys fought again, and Brother Fan began to explain to Feng that he was very strong, but his breathing must be combined with his internal one during practice. He continued that the internal breath should always be available when the body is moving, and the guy needs to learn to control it. Meanwhile, another action took place at the Sakura Club, which is now called the Fengyun Club under the leadership of our protagonist. Blonde Irene sat in a chair and asked someone where this person got her contact information. Shiwen and Peng Jiaqi were sitting in front of her. The pink-haired girl replied that Liu Feng had left her Irene's phone number earlier. Concerned about the disappearance of Feng's brother, Jiaqi asked the blonde why they couldn't contact him since, according to her, everything was fine with the guy. Irene replied that there was definitely nothing wrong with Liu Feng. It's just that during important missions he always turns off all means of communication. Shiwen became alarmed when her father called her and said that Uncle Dong had received information that Liu Feng was now in Yuemingshan prison. The ghost immediately began to yell in rage that he would raze this prison to the ground. But Irene hit him and told him to slam shut because no one could put the guy there if he didn't want it. Irene smiled friendly at the girls and said that she knew her boss too well, so he probably just wanted to experience prison life. Young Shiwen was not happy with this state of affairs. She began to be indignant and say that she was not going to wait. Angry, she stood up and grabbed Peng Jiaqi's hand, saying that they would immediately go to the prison to get Brother Feng out. Meanwhile, the prison guard was resting in his observation room. He put a book on his face to take a short nap. The man was greatly frightened when an elderly man burst into the room screaming, asking why he, under the orders of the Sun family, dared to put someone behind bars without approval. The officer tried to calm his boss, but he began to pull his cheek, shouting that the richest Yang family had now demanded the release of that prisoner. Placing his palm on his cap, the warden immediately admitted his mistake and said that he would immediately release Liu Feng. An angry old man with a long gray beard ordered his subordinate to hurry up, otherwise he would deal with him. The main character and Brother Fan were spending time in prison training when suddenly someone outside the door addressed our main character. The warden smiled good-naturedly and told the guy that he had a good rest these 2 days and it was time for him to leave prison, but Brother Feng refused. Liu was then approached by the prison director, who called his arrest a misunderstanding and asked him to leave his cell and then discuss all the issues together. But Feng stood his ground and demanded that those people who put him on death row be punished first and that the young man be given an explanation. The old man grabbed our protagonist's cheek and began to explain that he was just the warden of the prison and he had no authority to do what he was asked to do. Fan continued to teach Feng, telling him that he should try to make his breathing longer and more natural. Another prison officer ran up to the death row and began shouting to the warden that they were in big trouble. The blonde told the old man that Mayor Long and the bureau chief were now in their reception room and he demanded a meeting with Liu Feng within 10 minutes. The news angered the prison director and he once again demanded that Liu Feng leave the cell, otherwise he would not be able to accuse him of rudeness. In response, the main character just laughed impudently in the old man's face and asked him to try to force him to leave here. 2 big men in uniform appeared behind the short, elderly man, whom he ordered to immediately drag Liu Feng to him. The prison staff intended to attack our hero with their fists in order to force him to leave his cell because Mayor Long was waiting for them. In response, the guy grabbed one of the men in uniform by the neck, shouting that since they attacked him, they would definitely not leave the cell on their own. At this moment, Mayor Long and the head of the bureau entered the cell. The prison director asked them why they personally came to such a place. The city leader became angry and told the old man that he would not have had to come here if he had hurried up and brought Liu Feng earlier. The mayor of Donghai respectfully addressed our hero and introduced himself, saying that he hoped that Liu could come with him to settle all his issues. The prison director was confused, not understanding what Liu Feng's background was if the mayor and the bureau chief personally came for him. At the same time, when the sun had already set below the horizon, a plane landed at the airport in Donghai. The guest was greeted by a delegation who informed him that it was a great honor for the city of Donghai to meet a legend of the investment community here today. A tall blonde man in a suit, whose name was Mr. White, came down the plane. He greeted Governor Duan and said that he had come to inspect Maya Ventures on behalf of their company and then praised the city's investment environment. The blonde then added that he also expected to see Liu Feng here because he had previously been promised that he would come to meet him. The governor began to wipe the sweat from his face from tension, making excuses that Fung was a little busy right now, and they would definitely be able to meet tomorrow. Mr. White replied that it didn't matter if our protagonist was busy, he still intended to meet him in person tomorrow. The blonde was forced to answer the phone, asking his boss why he wasn't resting at such a late hour. The governor was confused, not understanding why he called the woman on the phone the boss, because the head of May Ventures is a man from Spain. Mr. White turned gloomy when he received the new information from his boss and said that he would immediately cancel the inspection in Donghai and withdraw all investments in this city. The blonde began to shout in rage that he was carrying out the boss's orders, and if he had known earlier that the Honorable Liu Feng was imprisoned for no reason, he would not have come to the city. The governor began to make excuses that it was just a misunderstanding, and as soon as the mayor found out about what had happened, he immediately personally went to the prison to rescue Liu Feng. Mr. White replied that he wanted to personally pick up the main character from prison, but the man replied that a person with such an honorable status was not supposed to visit such places. Looking into the eyes of the governor, the investor replied in a calm voice that there are things that are not a secret in Western high society. He said that one day an Asian man appeared who invested 50 billion euros in their company and bought a fifth of the company's shares, and it was Liu Feng. The guy stunned the governor by adding that his boss calls Liu Feng the boss, so White's personality is no more noble than our heroes. Our main character, meanwhile, was still in the Yuemingshan prison, surrounded by high mountains. The guy was very bored, and he whiled away his time by yawning on the bed on death row. Liu Feng was surprised to notice that all this time his sleep was personally protected by the head of the prison, who slept sitting on the floor next to his bed. The old man began to court Liu, putting sneakers on him. He said that Ye Zhiqiu would be arrested, as Feng wanted, in order to persuade him to still leave prison. While getting dressed, the hero said that he would only come out when he saw with his own eyes that Ye Zhiqiu was serving his sentence in prison. At that moment, the strong iron door to the death chamber opened. The main character looked to see who had entered. He was a tall and strong elderly man with a beard and mustache, who looked at the young man and called him by name, asking if he had had enough fun in prison. The main character was amazed when he saw who was standing in front of him, because this person was very familiar to him. Liu Feng told the old man that he did not want to go out yet, because he had not fulfilled all his conditions. The elderly man gave the hero a choice: go with him now or stay in the cell for a long time with Brother Fan. The guy sighed and followed the old man, saying that he could not stand being around Liang Bufan for long. As a sign of farewell, he waved to Bufan and said that he would not forget how he helped him break through to the transformation level. In response, the blonde just smiled and, without opening his eyes, waved back to his youngest as he lay peacefully in his bed. Meanwhile, Mr. White, the governor, Shiwen, and Jiaqi were waiting for Liu Feng in the reception room of Yuemingshan prison. Jiaqi exclaimed when she saw Liu Feng in front of her, and young Shiwen waited for her friend for so long that she fell asleep on the girl's shoulder. She immediately woke up and was delighted when she saw the freed protagonist in front of her. The girl jumped up from the sofa and wanted to run to her bodyguard to ask if he was okay. However, Mr. White did not let her do this. He was the first to approach the guy and respectfully greeted him, saying that he was glad to meet him again. Irene also came to meet Liu Feng from prison, calling out to her boss and approaching him. White asked her why she didn't call him to meet her, and then asked when she had time to arrive here. The mayor of Donghai and the governor were surprised when the blonde called Irene the boss, because they believed that Maya Ventures was run by the Spanish royal family. Mr. White decided to introduce his boss to everyone, saying that Irene is a princess of the Spanish royal family and the owner of the company. The governor cordially said that he was glad to welcome her to the East China Sea, but Princess Irene ignored him. The blonde girl threw her arms at Liu Feng, asking him to stop playing in China and return to Europe with her. The guy pinched the girl's nose, and she said that if Feng decided to stay here, she could move to China with him if he wanted. Liu Feng's eyes widened in surprise when the blonde suddenly pressed her lips to his to kiss him. Irene smiled and told her boss that she was even willing to marry him to become a Chinese citizen and stay here. The mayor and governor were amazed that Liu Feng was in a relationship with the owner of Maya Ventures and was raising the profile of China internationally. Young Shiwen was upset by what she saw. She sat dejectedly on the side, thinking that Irene was not only beautiful, but also had a high status. Peng Jiaqi was also saddened when she realized that Liu Feng was dating a girl from the royal family. Irene continued to hug Liu Feng, and he tried to reject her, asking what she was doing and had she forgotten how to read the atmosphere. Officers entered the room and loudly addressed our hero, saying that Ye Xinshu had come to apologize to the guy. An angry Irene looked at Ye Xingqiu and asked him if she understood correctly that he was the one who tried to frame her boss. Lu Feng reassured the policeman that he did not need to take the blame, because he promised that he would arrest his son and did so he is a worthy police officer. The officer fell to his knees in front of the hero and said that he was still guilty, because yesterday he grabbed his son, but then he could not stand it and still let him go. Brother Feng asked if he thought about the consequences when he did this, to which he received the answer that Ye Xingqiu would resign as police chief and be punished. Then the main character turned to Mayor Long to give his opinion on the current situation. The mayor put his hand on the shoulder of the police chief and said that he had acted very recklessly because for the sake of his untalented son, he had destroyed his own future. After Liu received an unknown message on his phone, he changed the direction of the conversation, asking if Zhao Jiyin was Ye Xingqiu's godson. The police chief replied that he had cleared Zhao's father's name a few years ago, and Feng said that Jiyin was his classmate, so he decided to forgive Ye Xingqiu. Ye Xingqiu was overjoyed when he realized that Liu Feng had pardoned him and began to thank him loudly. The guy asked the police chief not to thank him, because this is not the end, and he intends to take revenge on his son, who arrested him. The mayor of Donghai intervened in the conversation and said that he had heard that the arrest of our hero was connected with a certain family. The police chief urged the mayor not to worry, saying that a lot of evidence had already been collected against the Sun family, and soon her network would be closed. At the same time, another conversation took place right on board the plane, which was flying to the territory of the East China Sea. An unknown guy with long pink hair asked his interlocutors if he could get Princess Irene, who is now in China. One encouraged Mr. Lon, saying that he would definitely succeed, and the man with glasses said that Irene had gone to Donghai to see a certain Liu Feng. Mr. Lon replied not to worry, because if Liu Feng allowed himself to joke with him, he would be crushed like a bug. At that time, a sports convertible was racing along the highway on land. The speedometer indicated a speed of more than 180 kilometers per hour. Two strangers were driving towards the East China Sea, and one of the friends complained to the other that she was driving too fast and they might not get there alive. The brunette reassured her friend, saying that she would definitely be fine, and they needed to get to the place as quickly as possible to complete the task of the Liu family. The sun had almost set below the horizon. After prison, our main character was relaxing at the Yang family's villa. Feng talked with the general, who did not understand why he, despite the proposed conditions, still did not want to become an instructor of the new generation of the Heavenly Sword. The old man suggested that the guy be given the rank of major and added that his only task would be to train the future king of Chinese super soldiers. The main character winked at his friend and did not immediately refuse, but said that he needed to think about this proposal. The general stood up from his chair and raised his tone, saying that Liu Feng was nothing without an army and doubted that he could take revenge on the Great Triad for the destruction of his comrades. The guy looked at the man with anger in his eyes and got angry with his old man. He began to ask what he was talking about. The general asked the young man to think about how the Triad became aware of their location during a secret mission, and the guy did not understand what he meant. The elderly man asked Feng if it had ever occurred to him that the defeat of the 5th generation of the Heavenly Sword was connected with betrayal. The main character became gloomy and immediately began to demand that the general tell him the name of the one who was involved in this. The general replied that nothing was known for sure yet, but they suspected the Capital 4, and without a top-secret unit, it would be impossible to find out who was behind it. Realizing that the guy had a chance to avenge his murdered comrades, he immediately agreed to become part of the army again and pay back whoever was involved. Mayor Long, investor Mr. White, and other heroes at this time spent their leisure time on the territory of a luxurious 5-star international hotel. While Mr. White was having a nice conversation with the head of Donghai City, a guy with pink hair walked up to them and introduced himself as Lan Ting Yu. Mayor Long knew this guy and decided to introduce him to Mr. White, saying that he was a very big shot in the capital, managing 3 companies. Mr. Lan first asked Mr. White that he had heard that Miss Irene was in this city and asked him to introduce her to him. The blonde apologized, saying that he couldn't do it because Irene was spending time with the Honorable Mr. Liu Feng today. When Liu Feng and Ghost entered the hall, everyone immediately began to loudly greet our hero, calling him the star of the evening. Mr. Lan was not happy to see the guy. He immediately told his subordinates to go there to make Feng a laughingstock today. Liu Feng came over to greet Mayor Tong, saying that he only came here to have some fun. A waiter stood next to them holding a tray of wine. and Lang's subordinate allegedly accidentally pushed him so that he dropped the glasses of alcohol. The ghost immediately covered his boss with his back, urging him to be careful, and took the blow so that all the red wine ended up on the guy. Mr. Land's subordinates started shouting that everything was fine and it was not the waiter's fault. The main character immediately realized what was going on and said that some bastards seemed to sneak into the party to ruin everyone's fun. Hearing this, the man working for Land became angry and put out his hands to use the mantis technique against Liu Feng. The man failed to attack the main character because the ghost immediately stood up for the boss, pushing his ill-wisher in the face with his hand. The ghost began to mock Land's subordinate, using the bull rides a duck technique, because of him the guy ruined an expensive tuxedo. The strong guy sat on the man with all his weight, so after a while his back was broken. Mr. Land's second subordinate, who saw this, put on spiked brass knuckles and threatened our heroes that now it was the end for them all. The bodyguard of the guy with pink hair tried to attack the phantom, but the blow hit the air because the guy dodged. He grabbed the careless guard by the jacket and lifted him into the air, doubting his sanity, and the man with glasses immediately began to ask to spare his life. Mr. Land was angry. He couldn't believe that someone was going to kill his subordinate in broad daylight while complaining to the mayor that his city was not hosting guests properly. The main character turned his attention to the guy with pink hair and told him that he heard that his name was young Mr. Lon. He asked if Lon knew these intruders who had just tried to ruin the party at the hotel. Lon's self-confidence in front of Liu Feng disappeared somewhere, and he disowned his subordinates, saying that he did not know them. The bespectacled man screamed in pain as Phantom broke his spine in two with his knee. The hero turned to Lon, asking, who invited him to this party because it was organized for him and Princess Irene. Having straightened his hair, the guy replied that a person with such a status as his did not need an invitation. Liu Feng replied that no one invited the guy, and no one was happy to see him here, to which he said that he was not going to leave anywhere. The main character grabbed Lon by the neck and arm. He began to shout that the young man had no right to touch him just like that, but Feng intended to send him out. A minute later, Liu Feng was already standing on the balcony parapet, holding Mr. Lon's ankle with one hand, his body hanging over the abyss, and the guy was screaming in horror. A man with pink hair tearfully begged our hero to put him on the ground. In return, he agrees to leave the party. The protagonist was still holding his leg over the abyss, saying that Lon, as a rich man, should be sincere in his apology. Mr. Lan understood what the young man was hinting at and began shouting that he would pay him in exchange for mercy and asked how much money he wanted. The hero smiled contentedly and immediately released Lon to the ground, put out his palm and said that he wanted to receive 1 billion yuan in return. The guy with pink hair, when his life was no longer in danger, sighed with relief as he lay on the floor. Princess Irenel appeared at a party in a 5-star hotel, and everyone immediately began to loudly greet her and praise the girl's beauty. The girl noticed that 2 men in black suits were lying unconscious on the floor and asked how this happened. At that moment, our young hero approached Irene and said that those men were simply struck by the beauty of the girl. A brunette woman also appeared at the party and greeted Mr. Lon and asked if the men lying on the floor were his bodyguards. Liu Feng heard this and asked Lon why he lied that he didn't know them, and why he sent bodyguards to bother the main character if there was no enmity between them. The main character's questions angered Mr. Lon, and he rudely responded to the guy not to lift his nose too high. The pink-haired man decided to hastily leave the party, but finally shouted that Liu Feng did not dare to humiliate him. And this was not the end. An unfamiliar brunette in a red dress approached the hero and invited him to talk, to which Feng asked what the conversation would be about. The girl replied that the conversation would be about him, because she specially came from the capital to Donghai to meet the guy. The hero said that he believed that they had nothing to talk about, but still he was curious whether the girl had to go all that way to meet him. The stranger answered in a friendly manner that she had heard a lot about our hero, so she decided to meet him in person and introduced herself as Wen Huan. Brother Feng put the girl in an awkward position when he responded to her words with complete indifference. She continued that she had come to Donghai on a mission, and it would fail if the girl failed to kill Liu Feng. These words interested the hero, and he decided to find out in more detail what kind of mission we were talking about. Wen Huan said that she really intended to kill him, but the guy still had a chance to survive if he agreed to go with her to the capital. The girl set the conditions that the hero needed to let Lu Hao go and go with her, and if he did not do this, he would be surrounded by enemies in the East China Sea. She added that she knows that Feng will not agree to this, but she still intends to do it because this is the only way she can refuse the marriage with Lu Xun. Afterwards, the girl said that if the guy agreed to fulfill her conditions, then she would repay him and help him again in the future. The hero replied that she should understand what the Liu family would do to her if they found out that the girl was helping Liu Feng. Huan came closer to the guy and whispered in his ear that she intended to show him her sincerity, and he would not regret if he followed her. The girl took the guy by the hand and led him along, while the other guests of the party were discussing how amazing Liu Feng was for getting along with the new young lady so quickly. The main character was surprised when a new acquaintance led him to the door leading to the toilet room. Liu Feng insulted her when he jokingly asked if the girl liked to chat in such a place. The beauty turned to him and replied that they had come here because she intended to show the young man her sincerity. The hero wondered what Wen Huan was up to, and why she decided to show her sincerity in the toilet room. Walking inside, our young hero said that the aroma in this room made him feel a little hot. Huan immediately attacked the guy and pushed him against the wall, to which he said that what she did could not be called sincerity. The brunette started making a cute expression and calling our hero Brother Liu, declaring that she would be done soon. She ran her hand along the main character's neck, and a long, sharp needle jumped out of the ring on her finger. The girl's mood immediately changed, and she tried to sharply strike with her fist right in the chest of our hero in order to kill him with a sharp needle. Huan had a cunning expression on her face, determined to complete her mission and eliminate the enemy. Stopping the girl's fist, the guy asked if this was her sincerity, and Huan did not understand how this was possible because the fog in the toilet room was supposed to poison Feng. He took into his hand the needle with which the girl intended to kill the young man, and asked whether that fog should have made him so excited that he could not control himself. The hero grabbed her hands so that she could not move, and began to ask how a girl from a famous metropolitan family could offer herself to someone so voluntarily. He explained to Huan that the psychic paralytic that she tried to use here against him was absolutely ineffective against such a miracle doctor like him. When the hero grabbed her hands, she screamed for him to let her go, but Liu Feng was determined to achieve the sincerity she promised him. Terrified, Wen Huan asked Brother Feng what she had to do to get him to agree to let her go. In response, the guy grabbed her by the waist and asked her to figure out for herself what she needed to do in exchange for mercy, removing his hand. Huan shouted that if he did this to her, he would be persecuted by both the Wen family and the Liu family at the same time. The guy asked her not to worry, because he would not kill her, since the poison she used against the guy was not fatal. The hero added that if the girl had dared to use deadly poison, she would now be a corpse without any warmth. Brother Feng raised his tone, shouting that Huan had greatly miscalculated when she thought that he would be so easy to deal with that she even sent someone to Lu Hao at the same time. Smiling, the guy expressed regret that it would also not be easy for those people who went to free Lu Hao, and advised the girl not to underestimate her enemies anymore. Liu Feng listened when he noticed the phone vibrating in the girl's dress. Wen Huan also took out a pink smartphone from her dress, but did not dare answer the incoming call yet. The guy showed the girl a thumbs up and said that he didn't mind, and she could pick up the phone. While Huan was trying to kill our hero at a hotel party, another action was taking place in the central hospital of Donghai City. The girl received a call from her friend, who, holding a gun in her hand, said that she had made a mistake, which is why Lu Hao was still in the hospital. She broke the bad news that all the mercenaries and people from the Liu family who arrived to free Hao were destroyed, and the girl miraculously survived. Huan was shocked and couldn't believe her ears. She asked her friend how this was even possible. The friend on the other end of the line called Huan a little demon and advised her not to go alone against Liu Feng, since they underestimated him. The main character intervened in the conversation, saying that it was not they who underestimated Liu Feng, but simply overestimated themselves. After pestering Huan, the guy continued by turning to the girl on the other end of the line and introducing himself, saying that her friend was now in his hands. The pink-haired girl immediately started screaming, trying to find out from Liu Feng what he had done to her friend. He snatched Huan's phone and replied that he hadn't done anything to her and they were just talking about life in the bathroom. The girl looked down and became gloomy when she realized that they were in the place where Wen Huan was supposed to kill our hero. The guy pinched the girl sitting in front of him on the leg, which is why she started screaming and complaining that she was in pain. Her friend, hearing this, began to shout into the phone that if Liu Feng even laid a finger on her, she would not be able to withstand further consequences. In response, the young man hoped that they were smart enough to understand that they would face intolerable consequences if they continued to persecute Liu Feng. After giving Huan her phone, the hero said that he wanted to give the girl another chance, adding that he was not a bully, but just wanted to see her sincerity. Wen Huan began to explain that she was given a mission to come to the East China Sea, free Lu Hao, and kill our hero. The information received did not satisfy the guy because he already knew all this, so he continued to interrogate the girl. Reluctantly, Huan continued that the Liu family believed that she alone was not enough to complete the mission, so they hired several more specialists from abroad to eliminate Liu Feng. She said that she could definitely confirm that they arrived in the city at the same moment she arrived in Donghai. The interrogation did not end there, and Liu Feng was determined to find out who the woman she had just talked to on the phone was. Putting a finger to her chin, the dark-haired girl said Rainey's name with sadness in her voice. She told the main character that Rainey is her bodyguard, best friend, and more. Some time passed, and the party at the 5-star International Hotel was already over. Liu Feng and Irene were returning to the car. The guy was wondering where her dress had gone, to which she said that she was uncomfortable communicating with slippery people in it. The hero shared with his friend the news that the Liu family had decided to make a move, inviting foreign masters and even the legend of Chinese martial arts Guo Fengxiao to capture the guy. Irene asked if the guy meant the master who is the brother of the famous Guo Fengren. Liu Feng confirmed the girl's guess and replied that Guo Fengxiao has been practicing martial arts for many years and is considered an excellent master. The Phantom, who was driving, intervened in the conversation and apologized to the boss for distracting him. He shared the news that just now, some people from Korea tried to break into the Yang family's mansion, but were caught by Ghost's team. The hero was provoked by the fact that Gaoyan Group decided not to wait for Liu Feng's move and to act proactively. The guy suggested that his team prepare, because after this mess, the people of the Gaoyan Group will most likely go on the defensive. Irene grabbed Liu Feng's hand and said that she had done a good job, so she offered the hero to reward her in return.